In the United States, there are approximately 554,000 homeless people, or about 0.17% of the total population. By comparison, Russia has approximately 5 million homeless people, or 3.4% of the population, and Germany has 800,000 homeless, or 0.5% of the population. While Russia tops the charts on homelessness for first world nations, the true chart topper is Egypt, with between 1 and 3 million homeless children alone. But have you ever wondered what it would be like to be homeless? Well, wonder no more as we dive into another special challenge episode of the Infographics show, and once more put our favorite guinea pig to the test for your scientific curiosity and task him with going homeless for 72 hours. Day 0. Okay, I probably should have been more prepared for this by now, but this challenge definitely caught me out of the blue. I've done, I think, maybe 20 challenges by now, and I should definitely have seen this one coming. Homeless for 3 days? Part of me is kind of excited because at least it's not a disgusting challenge, and, well, it kind of feels like an urban version of man versus nature, right? There's a reason why there's so many of those wilderness survival shows on TV. I think deep down inside, we all crave to know if we could really make it out there. Now, the urban landscape isn't exactly the wilderness, but I know for a fact it can be pretty rough. I used to work security in Las Vegas for a little bit over a decade ago, and I had to deal with the homeless population pretty frequently. Once we even had one homeless woman stab another homeless woman through the eye for apparently infringing on her territory because she was turning tricks at the casino I worked at. So yeah, I'm pretty well aware of the potential dangers of homelessness. When your survival comes down to working a turf of your own, well, it's no different than in the wild when prides of lions kill each other over the best hunting territory. Whether you're begging for loose change or turning tricks, holding and securing the ideal turf and protecting it at all costs can literally be the difference between life and death. Still, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'm kind of excited to give this challenge a go. I have wilderness survival training from my past in the military, but there's a difference between a jungle or forest and the city streets. In a way, it actually seems more dangerous in city streets than it would ever be in the wild with a bunch of wild animals. I definitely trust wild animals more than I trust humans. So for this challenge, I'm going to do the real deal. I'll be leaving home with no money in my pocket and will be dropped off way on the other side of Los Angeles because I feel I should be in unknown territory, but also so I won't run into anyone I know. I'm taking the clothes on my back, 2 other changes of clothes in the backpack, and a bottle of water. I didn't want to take my phone with me, but the girlfriend begged and pleaded to take it just for emergencies, and I agreed. But I'll keep it turned off unless I run into an emergency I really can't handle on my own. I won't be taking a sleeping bag or anything like that. I'll have to scrounge for shelter, and with no money in my pocket, I'll be looking for ways to make some cash or, I guess, find some food. There's gotta be about 1 billion legal liabilities regarding this whole challenge, but then again, this is the same show that made me not take a shower for a month and forced me to watch YouTube videos for 24 hours straight. I'm pretty sure the Allies sent a ton of Nazis to the gallows for similar inhumane experiments on concentration camp victims. I'll be updating at the end of my experience, but keep track of my days for later on pen and paper since I won't be taking a laptop, just a notebook and a few pencils. This challenge officially starts tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. when I'll be getting dropped off near downtown Los Angeles to begin my life as a homeless person. Wish me luck, and I'll see you in 72 hours. Unless I get stabbed to death with a rusty shank. End of day 3. This is the end of my first and hopefully last bout of homelessness. And what an experience it's been. I don't want to get ahead of myself because I feel a million thoughts rushing up, so I'll just start back at the beginning. Like I planned, I got dropped off at 5 a.m., very near to downtown Los Angeles. But I didn't get breakfast and hadn't eaten since the night prior. Seemed only fair to start this challenge off with my first task being securing food. In case you don't remember, I didn't bring any money with me, and I had to figure out a way to feed myself. Well, I pretty quickly got a chance to do just that when I was walking past a 7-Eleven not far from where I'd gotten dropped off at. They were loading in pastries for the morning breakfast rush, but the truck driver and the 2 employees were inside and had left 2 racks of treats waiting to get pulled inside by the back door. Now, I consider myself a very honest person, and I've never so much as shoplifted a candy bar. I think stealing is a pretty glaring moral shortcoming, to be honest. But I reminded myself that I'm temporarily living a new life, and had to start looking at things from the perspective of someone who didn't know where his next meal was coming from. Mostly because, I didn't know where the hell my next meal was coming from. So I pried the plastic aside and swiped 2 donuts. Took like 3 seconds and I was well on my way down the block by the time anyone stepped out of the store. One thing they teach you during survival training is to exploit literally any advantage or windfall that you can. And I realized that after my donut heist, I started looking at the world in entirely different ways. I wasn't just a pedestrian walking along minding my own business anymore. I was actively watching my environment and looking for things I needed: food, water, shelter. The more time I spent on the streets, the more keen this instinct became, and eventually I realized that I was behaving the same way I'd had years and years ago in the middle of a northwest forest during survival training. Our regular lives are so insulated from the actual necessities of life, the things we need to keep ourselves safe and biologically alive, that when it's all stripped away, it's kind of a refreshing but extremely jarring experience. So my homeless strategy was to try and gradually make my way over toward the eastern half of Los Angeles from downtown. I thought that starting at downtown would be my best initial exposure to the whole homeless lifestyle, because I got dropped off literally just a few blocks from LA's infamous Skid Row. This is a few blocks of downtown city streets that are completely awash with the homeless and some serious crime, and I wanted to experience what life was like there. But I wanted to keep on the move because it's probably not safe to hang around too long in Skid Row without knowing all the street rules. I spent most of the first day around Skid Row, and I could already tell that trying to scrounge or even panhandle for money would be an absolute no-go here. There's just very little local traffic that isn't other homeless people or gang members, and anyone driving through is doing so with windows rolled up and car doors locked, and with very good reason. I wanted to stay on the move and not get wrapped up in any potential trouble, especially because I was drawing a lot of attention. I stupidly realized that I was drawing all this attention because I didn't look homeless. I was too fresh, my clothes too clean. I was standing out like a sore thumb, and believe me, that's not something you want to do on Skid Row. So I ducked into the nearest alley and rubbed my hands on the ground and then rubbed dirt on my face, hair, and clothes. I tore my jeans and shirt up a little bit, not much, but enough that it didn't look any more like I was wearing frequently laundered clothes. The trick worked, and I quickly stopped getting stares and looks, which was good because not long after I ran into a group of 3 guys shaking down other homeless people. They stared me down at first, but I guess I was too young and in too good a shape for them to figure I was an easy mark, and they ignored me, moving along to 2 other homeless men. They kind of dug through their assembled, well, what would be normally trash to you and me, but to them was all their belongings. But I guess they didn't find anything valuable and quickly went on their way. I had already learned the first rule of being on the streets: the strong shake down the weak, and the weak band together to fend off the strong. I've watched a ton of nature documentaries, and it was amazing how similar to wild animals people really are. The first day I got really lucky and ran into a mission that was serving out hot meals at night, which was good because I'd gone totally bust on finding food all day. I'm not naive, and I knew that getting into what is essentially a survival situation means doing what it takes to survive, but the problem is that in this area there's no restaurants, supermarkets, nothing where you might be able to scrounge for food, and with no foot traffic, panhandling was not an option. I got offered a place to stay the night at the mission, but I declined it and figured somebody in poorer health or older could probably use the place more than me. There was certainly not a lack of people in really bad shape. I struck east at night and ended up on the outskirts of downtown. I jumped a fence into an office park and managed to sleep for a few hours in an alcove by the loading dock to one of the buildings. Since the next day was Saturday, I knew nobody would be showing up for work. I've slept in the wilderness a ton before, sometimes without a sleeping bag, but knowing how close I was to Skid Row and everything I'd seen during the day, it was hard to get any sleep. The next day I was practically starving, having only eaten 1 bowl of soup and 2 donuts the day before. Also, my water was out. Finding a public restroom to refill my water bottle was easy enough, and I made up my mind to find a supermarket to go scrounge for food at. When I was a kid, one of my first jobs was at a supermarket, and I know for a fact that they throw away a ton of food still wrapped up and perfectly good for eating. I found 3 different supermarkets, but all of the bins were practically empty. And then I realized it was just too early in the day. Typically, food gets thrown out around the afternoon. I didn't feel like waiting that long to eat, so I decided to answer a question that I've always wondered about. Just how much can you really make from panhandling? I found a promising spot with a lot of foot traffic and set up shop using a can I found in a dumpster. I made a grand total of 35 cents before a police car pulled up on the street in front of me and just sort of looked at me disapprovingly. I got the message and honestly didn't feel like adding a night in lockup to this challenge, so I left and moved on. Next, I found a spot right on a freeway off-ramp because I'd seen homeless people set up at spots like this all the time. It worked like a charm, and in an hour I had already made $3.50. Not exactly a king's ransom, but I was getting closer to be able to afford food again. Then 2 homeless guys started cursing and yelling at me because apparently I had taken their spot. Remember what I told you about being territorial? I left because I didn't want any trouble. But I'm going to be really honest with you here. If I were actually homeless, I know I would have stayed. I would have stood my ground and defended that spot with violence if I had to, because I had made over 10 times as much money there in an hour than I had at my previous spot. When you don't know where your next meal is coming from, prime real estate is a critical commodity. It also made sense why two guys worked that spot, with one working while the other rested, but also so that the two of them could better defend it against anyone intruding. Again, it's amazing how similar we are to wild animals. My good luck continued when I set up shop near the drive-thru to a fast food joint, and one of the employees actually called me over to the drive-thru window when they're not busy and gave me an entire meal in a bag. Now, I've done my fair share of small kinds of deeds in my life, but I guess you never really appreciate just how much impact even something as small as buying someone a sandwich can have, until you're on the receiving end. I was absolutely starving by then, and I had barely $4 to my name. That meal was a godsend. In the late afternoon, I made my way to the previous supermarkets but found other scroungers already there. I guess they'd figured out the schedule a long time ago, and I didn't feel like getting into another confrontation, so I skipped the first two supermarkets and hit the third one where there was only one other guy. With 3 dumpsters back there, we agreed he could have the one on the far left, I'd take the one on the right, and the one in the middle we'd split. I managed to find a Subway sandwich tray completely sealed in plastic that had been tossed, and after seeing that the expiration date hadn't yet come due, I honestly couldn't tell why it had been trashed in the first place. With a pretty substantial meal in hand, I let the other guy have the middle dumpster and what was left in mine, and he thanked me. As I sat eating, I thought about 2 things. The first being that I couldn't figure out why this perfectly wrapped up Subway sub tray had been tossed, and it wasn't the only thing. There were several other food items in that dumpster that were completely wrapped up and in perfectly fine shape, but all had gotten tossed. When you picture homeless people dumpster diving for food, you probably think that they're eating gross stuff that's slimy and moldy and covered in unmentionable grime. But the truth is that the food you bring home from the market is exactly the same stuff that they eat. Yet some of it is expired, but expired definitely does not mean that most of the food is even close to starting to rot. It's an arbitrary date that I believe the FDA helped come up with. Most of the food, though, isn't anywhere close to the expiration date, but it might have some kind of unwanted visual blemish. For instance, it took me a bit, but I finally realized why my tray of sub sandwiches had been tossed. The top part of the plastic case had a large dent in it, and then it all made sense. How many times have you been at a supermarket and ignored the plastic tray of food because it had an unsightly dent in it? We all do it literally all the time, and with so much selection available to us, why take something so unsightly when we can get a tray that's perfectly unblemished instead? It's kind of insane, and from now on, I've vowed to not overlook food items just because the packaging isn't perfect. The second thought I had was the difference between the homeless people I kept running into. The guy behind the supermarket was kind and polite, but the ones by the freeway off-ramp had definitely been aggressively protecting their territory. I guess it's about survival, but we're not all truly like wild animals. Some of us retain our humanity and cooperate, even help others. One guy I ran into on my second night, for instance, showed me where to refill my water bottle after all the places with public restrooms had closed down. He showed me where to get safe, clean water when I'd been planning on drinking the sprinkler water that is clearly labeled not for drinking. They do that so homeless people won't get sick. But you know what? When it's been a 100-degree day and you don't have many options available to you, you have to risk it sometimes. I managed to reach a rail yard on the second night, so I spent the night under a train car. I've read stories before of homeless people being crushed to death by moving train cars while they slept underneath them, so I made sure that this cart was totally disconnected from anything else and was on a piece of sidetrack that was just out from the main line. Other than a train whizzing by in the middle of the night and scaring the piss out of me, almost literally, my night was pretty uneventful. By my third day, I managed to reach East Los Angeles, and that meant that the neighborhoods were nicer, and so was the general look and demeanor of the people. I learned from my first day and got up early enough to find a local 7-Eleven. Sure enough, an hour or so before sunrise, a truck showed up and started offloading pastries to sell to the morning breakfast crowd. Again, I'm no thief, but I was living temporarily in a different world, and when you're in a survival situation, there's only one rule: survive. Maybe it was because I was a lot hungrier than on the first day, or maybe because I finally knew how difficult finding food was and that I wasn't guaranteed a meal that day, but instead of snatching 2 donuts, I snatched as much as I could carry without being caught, then just slipped away. I was 100% breaking the law, but I was also in survival mode, and to be honest, it was a little exhilarating, but mostly I was just hungry. The nicer neighborhoods meant nicer people, and I made over $10 in about 5 hours of panhandling, which gave me almost $15 total, or the ability to buy 1 meal. That's kind of discouraging, especially if you consider having to do this every day for weeks or months, or even years on end. It makes sense why homeless people are so protective of the good panhandling spots though, and it really becomes hard to judge the two that chased me away a day before. Once more, this is about survival and I totally understand. My day was uneventful and mostly just boring. I made my way steadily eastward throughout the day, stopping at a fast food place to get a bite to eat. I ran across a library for the first time in decades, and I went inside to spend a few hours just reading their books. I got looks from people, and honestly, it soon got really annoying. It wasn't just the library though. Throughout this experience, normal people have been giving me looks like I was untrustworthy or like I was up to no good or even a potential threat. It was really dehumanizing at one point, and the irony that in reality I'm a productive member of society that regularly pays his taxes and has a nice apartment only made things worse. These people literally knew nothing about me and had no idea that I was secretly one of them, but they treated me like I was basically a criminal. For the third night, I decided that I wanted to sleep a bit easier than I've been because by this point I was getting physically exhausted. So since I knew where I was in town, I made my way to a very fancy cemetery in the area with a big tall iron fence and security patrols inside the property. Civilian security is a joke, and I know from my experience in the military that even secure facilities have a weakness. So I just worked my way around the fence line into the tree line until I found a drainage ditch. The fence crossed the ditch, but because of flood risks had a small metal gate that swung outward at the bottom. So during heavy rains, branches and other debris could flow out and not back up at the fence and eventually bring the whole thing down. Even though Los Angeles hadn't had a major rain in over a year, the gates had been, of course, left open, so it was simple enough to just crawl through them. Several thousands of dollars of cameras along the fence line and 2 full-time security patrols completely defeated because some guard had been lazy over a year ago and never closed the drainage gate. Like I said, civilian security is a joke. I kinda kicked the gates closed to keep anyone else from following in and then found a pretty peaceful spot to sleep undisturbed until morning. Sadly, no ghosts or zombies appeared, but I did sleep until well into sunrise and realized that I was supposed to call the girlfriend at 5 a.m. on the dot to let her know where to pick me up and that I was safe. When I turned to my phone, it was already well past 7, and when she picked up the phone, she was furious and also completely distraught. I guess I don't blame her. Last time she saw me was 3 days ago on the outskirts of Skid Row, a place so dangerous they literally make documentaries about how you should never go down there. Then she hadn't heard from me at all. When she finally picked me up an hour later, she told me she had nearly called the cops and yelled at me for not calling at exactly 5 like I promised. In between yelling, she cried. I guess these 3 days were as nerve-wracking for her as they were for me. What did I learn from my experience on the streets? A lot. Too much for this episode, and experienced a lot of things that honestly don't quite fit into the more family-friendly aspect of our show. The biggest thing I learned though is how far small gestures of kindness really go. So when you do one of these gestures for somebody in need, don't ever undervalue just how much that really meant. Buying someone a meal may set you back $10. Not a big deal for the vast majority of us, but for someone hungry who doesn't know where their next meal is coming from, that's hot food in their belly and the stress of finding something to eat relieved for the next 12 hours. You can't put a price on that. The other thing I learned is that living on the streets is dangerous and some people are predators, but a lot of other people aren't. I saw homeless guys giving other homeless guys their spare change or parts of their food. Some kind soul helped me find a drinking source that wouldn't make me sick. Lots of people on the street are looking to take advantage of others and prey on them, but many more are willing to help others out. And underneath that dirt and grime, there's a real person that isn't plotting how to hurt you or steal from you, and that you shouldn't be scared of. Sometimes simply treating them like a normal human being and giving them a little respect is the biggest charitable act you could do. We're back at it again, subjecting one of our staff writers to your most pressing questions, and this time it's one that's been asked hundreds of times. What happens when you don't sleep for a week? During our preliminary research, we discovered that the effects of complete sleep deprivation can be pretty severe. So instead of complete no sleep, we're letting our writer and guinea pig get 3 hours of sleep every day, well below the recommended 8 hours of sleep a night every person should get. Ever wonder what lack of sleep does to the body? According to the American Psychological Association, only 20% of adults get a good quality sleep each night. Yet in 1942, only 8% of people reported getting only 6 hours or fewer of sleep a night. But in 2017, almost 50% of Americans are getting less than 8 hours of sleep. Clearly, we have a serious problem in our society. But how badly is it affecting us? Day 1, 10 a.m. Today I start the No Sleep 1 Week Challenge, or Little Sleep I suppose, since no sleep can be pretty dangerous, even outright fatal. During my preparation for the challenge, I read about American and Soviet sleep deprivation interrogation techniques, where CIA and Soviet Gulag prisoners would be sleep deprived for days on end, in order to break down a tough prisoner's mental defenses and extract critical information. Apparently the brain can be so badly affected, however, that information can be unreliable, or just completely made up, which kinda begs the question of just how effective these techniques really are. I guess I'll find out. In order to test the effectiveness of CIA and Soviet sleep deprivation interrogation techniques, I've struck a deal with my girlfriend. I will hide her laptop somewhere, and she has until day 7 to extract the location from me. Without the laptop, she won't be able to watch Netflix or mess with her Pinterest, and she hates doing work emails from her phone because the screen is so small, so she has a huge incentive to try to get me to break. I guess we'll see if she can. 10 p.m. Last night I had a full night's sleep, so I'm not feeling too rough. It's about 10 p.m. now, and I'm tired, but I've definitely done longer stints without sleep during my years in the military. Working on my laptop, and girlfriend asked if she could borrow it, but I told her that would violate the terms of our challenge. She rolled her eyes and started watching Netflix on her phone. I'm not noticing any side effects so far, but it's going to be tough to stay awake when nobody else is up. I downloaded a few PS1 games to play through the night and keep me busy though. Day 2, 10 a.m. Slept my 3 hours. Then I woke up when girlfriend was getting ready for work. Waking up was pretty tough, but again, nothing I haven't experienced before. I'm not really hungry though and haven't eaten yet. And I remember this as a symptom of not sleeping from my time in the military. We used to take Adderall to power through days and days of little sleep. It's basically an amphetamine and jolts your system awake by giving you a ton of energy, but the side effects are pretty terrible. This time, there's no Adderall to cheat with, but from what I've read, the symptoms of no sleep can be just as bad. Guess we'll see. 10 p.m. I wasn't that tired last night, but this time I'm really tired. I brought in a patio chair to sit on because I'm afraid that if I sit on the couch or lay in bed for too long, I'll fall asleep. In the military, it was easier not to sleep if you were active and had something to do, but with nothing really to do, it's a lot harder. I took Dog for 1,000,000 walks today, and we'll probably take him on at least 2 more tonight just to keep active. Girlfriend asked me where the laptop was. Didn't tell her. Not writing it here either, just in case she steals my laptop when I'm not looking. I think watching YouTube and Netflix on her phone is getting to her more than my lack of sleep is getting to me. Research I read up on says that one of the first effects of sleep deprivation is the inability to show positive emotion on the face. Even happy people can't show it on their face with a smile. I asked my girlfriend if she felt that I was being this way, and she said I laugh less and don't smile as much, but I just seem normal, just really tired. Research also said I'd crave junk food as the body looks for sources of energy to keep itself going. That's definitely true. I drank one of those huge 16-ounce Cokes a little bit ago, and will probably drink another later tonight to help me stay up. Sorry, washboard abs, you're gonna have to wait at least 1 more week. Day 3, 10 a.m. I woke up after 3 hours, and it literally felt like I had just gone to sleep a moment ago. I can't describe how tired I am, not hungry at all. Going to try to keep busy today working on other scripts to pass the time. 10 p.m. Definitely an advantage to have something to keep you physically active and alert like in the military, as opposed to just doing nothing. Tried to keep occupied with video games, but the action is getting harder to track. Tried to work on scripts to pass the time, but just too hard to concentrate. Been zoning out a lot, missed an entire conversation after girlfriend came home from work. Research says this is the brain trying to force a rest period even with your eyes open. You literally just check out mentally. It's called microsleeps and is supposed to happen less than 30 seconds. Pretty sure I microslept for a full 5-minute conversation. Girlfriend grilled me about her laptop. Didn't tell her, she'll never break me. Day 4, 10 a.m. I feel like I haven't eaten in a long time, but I'm hungry. Girlfriend brought me a bunch of nutrition bars yesterday because I haven't been eating much regular food. She left them all over the house, so there's always one in reach. Sometimes I eat one and then forget I just ate one, and then reach for one only to find the empty wrapper, and I realize I just ate one. I think that last sentence makes sense. Getting harder to concentrate, but trying hard. Girlfriend had to shake me awake when the alarm rang after 3 hours. She said she's concerned and thinks this is stupid, and she's not going to wake me up again, so I have to set 3 alarms just to make sure I wake up. 10 p.m. I feel physically ill, like nauseous all the time. I walked the dog earlier and zoned out for I don't know how long. Guess I microslept in the middle of the sidewalk. Definitely not smiling or laughing much, also making a lot of spelling errors in this document. Hard to concentrate. Research says lack of sleep increases stress hormones because the brain can't rest and balance out your hormone levels. I definitely feel stressed. Girlfriend asked if I was ready to tell her where her laptop was. Didn't tell her. She said my job is dumb and I'm dumb and that she doesn't really need her stupid laptop anyways and went to sleep. Day 5, 10 a.m. Back in military days, when we used to go with little sleep for days, there was a point you hit where you weren't really tired anymore even though your body was exhausted, like your brain tricking your body. I feel like that a lot now. Research says that your brain dumbs down when you don't sleep. I have to agree. To test myself, I tried to do a math quiz online and did horrible. I don't even feel like trying to write today. 10 p.m. Girlfriend asked for a laptop a bunch. Didn't tell her. She said no sex then. Joke's on her. Research says you lose your sex drive without sleep because your hormones are out of balance and lack energy. It's a Mexican standoff, but she's got no bullets in her gun. I win. Day 6. 10 a.m. Today is Saturday, but I forgot. I only realized because girlfriend didn't go to work today. Days sometimes blur together because I don't have the regular 9-to-5 job, but definitely affected by lack of sleep. Typically go somewhere on Saturdays, but no energy to do anything. Really trying hard not to sleep. Played all of Final Fantasy VII this week to keep busy. Great game, but guess what? 6 is better. You could suck an internet, but 7 is inferior to 6. 10 p.m. I'm pretty sure I fell asleep a few times today, but don't remember. Girlfriend insists I didn't, so either memory is completely falling apart or I slept with my eyes open. Research says that severe lack of sleep disrupts a brain's ability to form memories properly. Coupled with poor nutrition, this can cause serious memory problems and definitely have not been eating right. Too much junk food. But I guess, like research said, just the body trying to energize. Really hard to type these entries. Keep making a lot of mistakes and having to rewrite, plus sentences that don't make sense. I had to start setting alarms every 30 minutes on my phone to make sure I didn't fall asleep accidentally. Girlfriend also tried to get the location of the laptop from me, driving her nuts to not have it, specifically since it's the weekend. She warned me that experiment ends in one day, but lack of sex could last much longer if I didn't tell her. Not even the CIA is as evil as she is. They should put her in charge of interrogating terrorists. Day 7. 1 p.m. I don't know when I fell asleep last night, but I woke up 10 minutes ago. Definitely overslept the 3-hour limit. When I woke up, girlfriend was on her laptop, and when I asked her how she found it, she just kept smiling and saying she got me. I honestly don't remember telling her, but no way she found it on her own. I'm not convinced she didn't borrow a laptop that just looks like hers, so I would do my entry and right here where I hid her real laptop after I fall back asleep. Research says that's paranoia. Lack of rest rewires the brain and makes the irrational seem rational. Screwed up with the sleep, but going to try to stay up anyway. 10 p.m. I feel like I could stay up more, but I'm not going to. All day I've been spacing out, really hard to concentrate on writing entries, but not as irrational or hard as I thought it would be at the start. Keep reading and rereading sentences and hoping they make sense though. Been seeing things the last 2 days, like shadows moving in the corner of my eye. Research says extreme lack of sleep leads to hallucinations, and I agree. Will be sitting by myself and suddenly think I saw a figure moving at the edge of my vision. Knees also have been giving out on me and almost fell twice today from absolute exhaustion. I think I maybe accidentally told girlfriend where the laptop was, but forgot that I did that. Research says that it can happen with prisoners. They give up info and have no memory of it, or they make up false info because their brains are scrambled. But maybe she just borrowed the laptop, still trying to make me think I gave up the location, so I'll just say or write down where the real one is. She did show me pictures on it though and her login. That's pretty convincing, but I thought what if she just downloaded the pics and set it all up? That's definitely paranoia. So I think I'm going to officially call it here. Dear Internet, a week without sleep makes you grumpy, paranoid, makes you want junk food but not normal food, kills your sex drive, makes you fall asleep with your eyes open, and annoys your girlfriend. You've seen him take on the hottest pepper in the world, or at least the hottest we could conveniently get shipped in the mail. You've seen him survive 3 days homeless on the streets of Los Angeles. You've seen him live for 24 hours trapped in a bathtub and give a poor delivery driver trust issues. Now we're turning over our fourth from the bottom most important writer to you, the fans, and leaving him to your mercies. Today, we're putting him in a survival challenge situation that comes straight from the viewers. 72 hours alone in the forest. Okay, so before I get into my experiences with this challenge, I just want to be upfront and state that this might be my last challenge episode. The Infographics show pays me well for the sometimes dangerous situations I get myself into. But after this challenge, I had to step back and really think about if I want to continue with these challenges. As you'll find out, I ran into some serious trouble out there, and things could have gone bad multiple times, and I think I just need to reevaluate things going forward. Unfortunately, I lost my journal during one of these incidents, so I'll have to work from memory on retelling my wilderness survival experience. When I first got the challenge, I was kind of excited. Truth be told, one of the reasons I do these challenges is because I like pushing my limits. I hate sitting at home being comfortable all the time, which might sound weird, but I guess I've accepted that it's just who I am. It definitely drives the girlfriend crazy who would prefer I live a perfectly safe, normal life. 3 days and nights alone in the forest, and not just the backyard woods. We're talking real forest. For this challenge, I actually went up to NorCal because SoCal isn't so well known for forests. Plus, we're entering fall, which means that the few mountain forests that are here are going to get very, very cold and possibly even snowed on, which would very quickly make this challenge extremely dangerous. For a solo challenge with no support, I'm not willing to risk it. I went up north enough to hit the rainforests of the Pacific Northwest. The show's lawyers have warned that we shouldn't give out any specific locations so that nobody's crazy enough to try to go up there and repeat our experiment. This is also a perfect opportunity to state the obvious. Don't do this. Seriously, don't. I know it sounds easy to do some silly challenge, but the fact is that wilderness survival is pretty serious business. I have training courtesy of the US military on how to survive in various wilderness environments, and years of experience putting that knowledge to the real-world test in very stressful situations. You may think you're ready from watching a bunch of YouTube prepper videos, but believe me, you're not. This isn't some weird flex. It would honestly devastate me to find out a fan decided to go out there and try this for real and got themselves hurt or worse. If you're interested in survival, take some local classes or join the Boy Scouts. Get out there into the woods in a supervised environment and build the fundamentals. Matter of fact, I recommend it to everyone. You never know when some basic survival skills will come in handy. Now back to the challenge. For this challenge, I'll have only a survival knife, which, by the way, is not a fancy Leatherman or anything like that. It's literally a folding knife, and that's about it, though it's pretty wicked sharp. It has a reinforced grip and the bottom of the grip is blunted so that you can use it to smash things, but that's about all the utility you're getting out of it. I'll also have the clothes I wear, which will be underwear, thermal underwear, hiking pants, t-shirt, sweatshirt, and poncho. Sadly, I can only take the socks I get to wear, which do not estimate the necessity of fresh socks in a survival situation. The moment your feet go bad, your odds of survival plummet dramatically. That's about it, except for 4 packets of energy gel, a map of the local area, and a compass. The energy gel is for emergencies only, and the map and compass so that I can navigate my way back to my pickup at the end of 3 days. I'm going to only briefly peruse the map so I'm oriented before heading in, but I will be scouting out the wilderness myself to find sources of water and food. No cheating by pinpointing the locations of lakes, rivers, or anything like that beforehand. I originally wanted to take a crew member with me to document things, as I thought it might be fun for you guys to see them more than just animation, but sadly hiring out professional crew is pretty expensive. And then there's union concerns over the nature of this challenge, as well as insurance, which adds up to a pretty whopping figure. Basically, until the Infographics is a TV show, I would count this possibility out. You know what to do, fans. Start writing to the big TV studios. I got dropped off at 5 in the morning on my first day by friends I have from my time in the military who live in the local area. We mapped out a general area which I would try to stay inside by using some easily identifiable boundaries, such as a set of cliffs and a river. And then we picked 3 different rendezvous locations for pickup. This way, if I got injured, there would always be a pickup location nearby that I could get to no matter where within the area I wandered. Also, it would give any search and rescue parties places to start their efforts at. Planning is extremely important for wilderness survival. When you're in a survival situation, you have to immediately prioritize and then work on your needs in order of priority. My first need was to find water, as I could easily survive the 3 days with no food, but would get into trouble really fast if I couldn't find drinkable water. I'm near the coast, but hopefully everyone watching knows that drinking seawater is an absolute no-go. One big benefit though is that early in the morning mist blows off the sea and saturates trees and bushes with water droplets. My problem was that I had no container to store water in, so I decided to take a risk and take off my poncho to turn that into a makeshift water bag. When you're in the wilderness, staying dry is very important because being wet can very quickly lead to hypothermia, even if the outside temperature is not that cold. Water is really good at leaching heat from your body into the environment, so it's important to stay dry as much as you can. However, being wet is also a really good way for bacterial and fungal infections to take hold, and can absolutely devastate your feet. Once more, if your feet go bad, your odds of survival fall dramatically. Go image search trench foot and see why it's important to stay dry. Just make sure you do it on an empty stomach. I gathered the corners of my poncho to turn it into a makeshift bag, and then I took my shirt off while putting back on my sweatshirt. and I used the t-shirt to wick up moisture off tall grasses and tree leaves. Then it was as simple as wringing out the water into my poncho bag, and pretty soon I had a decent amount of water stored up, enough that I felt safe looking for a more permanent solution. With water temporarily taken care of, I started looking for a place I could set up long term. If you can find a cave, that's the most ideal place to take shelter, though you have to worry about animals who are thinking the same thing. And this typically means mountain lions and bears here in the US. I was too far from the mountains in the distance to risk trying to find a cave, so I decided I could pretty easily build a lean-to shelter from all the fallen tree branches and dead leaves. Location, though, is important, so I surveyed my environment to figure out where to build my shelter. I was very near the coast, probably only 2 or 3 miles from the beach, and the terrain sloped slowly upward to the distant mountains to my east. There was another stretch of mountains north of me, which told me that I was in a very broad valley, and that's very good news, because if I followed parallel to the coastline, the odds of finding a small stream or full-blown river were really good. All that mountain snow has to run off somewhere, and it would either pool into lakes between the sea and the mountain cul-de-sac I was in, or it would run as streams. I hiked for a few hours as the sun started to rise and evaporate all of the mist. If you're relying on condensation from mist for water, you want to collect it very early in the morning, because as soon as the sun rises, it's going to start evaporating. Shortly before noon, I hit a small creek winding its way through the middle of the woods, exactly as I predicted, so I decided to set up shop near it. You might be tempted to build your shelter right there next to the water, but that can be a bad idea for several reasons. First of all, heavy rain or other events further upstream could cause the water level to suddenly rise, which could wash away your shelter. Second, animals like water too, including predators. It's important to note though that even herbivores can be very dangerous, and yes, deer can and have killed people before. I decided I'd build my lean-to about 20 minutes from the water and got ridiculously lucky when I found a large overturned tree that had collapsed onto another tree. With the 2 trees acting as a wall and a roof, I simply got to work sawing off large branches and laying them down over both trees. Then I covered the leafy branches with dead leaves and a bunch of grass, covered that in turn with a layer of dirt, and once more another layer of leafy branches and grass. Thankfully, there were plenty of bushes around, and by the end of it, I had a pretty decent little lean-to built. Even better, I found a bunch of grubs in the dead wood, and as long as you avoid the little nasty pinchers some of them have, they make for a great snack. Grubs may be gross, but they're jam-packed with protein and fat. Generally, the grosser an insect looks to you, the better it is to eat. The only bugs you should avoid are any with a hard shell such as roaches or grasshoppers. You should eat those only if you've roasted them in a fire because of parasites. You can still get parasites from plenty of other things, but you always want to mitigate your odds of danger as much as possible. Survival is risky business, plain and simple. I decided the next thing I needed was tools, and the very first thing I needed was something for self-defense. This being fall, the odds of running into a bear were lower than normal, but because most bears would be looking for a place to hibernate by now, this leaves only the bears who didn't pack on as many pounds and were desperately trying to add weight. These bears are far more dangerous than they normally would be, and this fact would come into play very soon. I decided I'd use the knife to make a spear and hunted around for a long, decently thick branch I could use. It took a bit more time, but I managed to find a nice hardwood branch with good length on it. But instead of sharpening the tip to a point, I decided that the branch was stiff enough to simply splint the top of it into a cross shape. In an emergency, I could jam the open knife into the tip deep enough to stay firmly secure, and I'd have myself a pretty efficient and deadly spear, far deadlier than a sharpened stick. It would probably only last a few jabs into a big animal, but that should be enough to drive it back. Next, I set about working on a way to contain and transport water. Notice again that I'm more worried about water than food. I really can't stress enough how important water is. This being a Pacific Northwest rainforest, I knew I couldn't rely on the poncho forever, as I'd eventually need to stay dry myself. I tried finding discarded tree bark, hoping I could fashion a few pieces of bark into a rough bowl shape, but I actually got even luckier than that. I found a white plastic bag. Normally, I hate people who litter, but in this case it ended up being exactly what I needed, though you still shouldn't litter. Water is good, but water safety is also very important. So next I worked on a way to help make the water from the creek safe to drink. I found tree bark which I could rip off, and I managed to get a large curved piece which I could bend just slightly into a very shallow bowl shape. It wouldn't hold much water and I'd be reduced to basically taking sips at a time, but it was the best I could do. I need a fire to make the water safe though, and this proved far more difficult than anything before. It actually took me until just a few hours before nightfall to get a fire going. Starting a fire with no tools has always been one of my weak areas, and it didn't help that most of the wood I could find was pretty humid thanks to how wet the Pacific Northwest tends to be. Without tools, the best way to start a fire is to gather some kindling. Dry pine needles work like a charm, and a piece of large soft wood. You can typically find soft wood in the large branches of living trees, or just split a very young tree in half. The wood from dead trees is hard and no good for this. But it is good for the second thing you need, a stick of very hard wood. Basically, you create a channel down the middle of the softwood and you put your kindling at the bottom of it. Then with your hardwood stick, you rub it up and down the channel over and over again, repeatedly, for hours, until you finally cause enough friction to actually light the kindling. Now, I've seen people do this in just 15 minutes, but it took me hours to get going. Like I said, not my strong suit in the survival game. Eventually though, I had a small fire just outside my lean-to, and I gathered up some large flat rocks so that I could eventually cook on them. For now though, I had spent my entire day setting up shelter, building tools, and finding water, so there wouldn't be much food to eat. Instead, I heated up one of the large flat rocks in the middle of the fire, and then pulled it out with sticks. I immediately placed my makeshift bowl on the hot rock and filled it with as much water as I could manage, which wasn't very much. Tree bark makes for terrible bowls. Boiling water was going to be out of the question without metal tools, but if you can heat water up enough, it can destroy harmful bacteria. It's an imperfect solution, but like I said before, survival comes with risks, and your job is to simply mitigate, not negate, those risks. With a decent little camp set up, I returned to the creek as the sun started to set, hoping I could score some water critters for dinner. I didn't want to be away from camp when night fell, so I wouldn't accidentally get lost, so I didn't spend much time looking. Sadly, the only thing I managed to score was some edible lichens, which wouldn't do much to curb my hunger after not eating all day. That's alright though, because I had water to drink and that was far more important. Dealing with hunger is easy as long as you're hydrated. That night, I planned out my strategy for day 2. I dried my clothing over the fire and dried my feet off by holding them close to the fire. Water was nearby and plentiful, and I figured with only 3 days out here, I could risk getting sick by drinking without treating the water, because trying to sterilize sips of water at a time just wasn't going to work out long term. I knew I was only a few miles from the coast, so I planned on following the creek to the beach to find mussels and other edibles. The coast can be a bonanza of stuff to eat if you don't mind the gross taste. All in all, my situation was looking pretty good. I even managed to keep embers going in a small pit inside my lean-to when it started to rain outside. Then things took a turn for the weird and the very dangerous. I don't know what time of night it was, but I woke up to the sound of, I don't know, it almost sounded like human screaming, but more high-pitched. The sounds were coming from a few miles away, and I have to admit, it had me really spooked. I'm pretty familiar with the sounds of the American wilderness, and this was no screeching owl or bellowing elk or wounded animal of any kind. The sounds changed between short, high-pitched screams and then long, very deep howls. Sometimes they would come from one direction and there would be a reply from a completely different direction. I've never been around wolves in the wild, so it might have been a wolf pack for all I know, only I'm pretty sure there are no known wild wolves in the Pacific Northwest. The howls and screams came pretty intermittently, maybe once or twice every 10 minutes or so, but lasted for a long while. I wasn't going to risk sleep with an unknown animal out there so close by. Maybe it was one or two weird or wounded elk. They can actually bellow pretty loud. I've just never heard that scream in this style before. Either way, wounded animals are dangerous. It was lucky that I stayed awake because at some point, again, hard to tell the time without a watch, after the howls and screams settled down, I heard heavy breathing, grunting, and shuffling in the woods nearby. I already had my knife wedged into my makeshift spear shaft, and honestly, I felt my blood go ice cold. Because I was pretty sure I knew exactly what was lumbering my way. These were sounds I recognized. A black bear lumbered through the trees, just a few dozen feet away. I held perfectly still, hoping it wouldn't decide to investigate my makeshift camp. But it probably spotted my lean-to and thought the same thing I was thinking when I built it. Dry shelter in the rain. The first thing I did was carefully observe the bear. It was definitely not full grown and was a fair bit on the lean side of things. This meant two things: an inexperienced juvenile that had not done a very good job of fattening up for winter. On one hand, it could make the bear desperate for food, and humans make good eating. On the other hand, it was likely weak, and if it had been so outcompeted for food, then it was likely a bit of a pushover. I also tapped into what I know about predatory animals. They prefer to ambush prey or launch hunts on their terms. Predators are notoriously shy animals and can have a very low confidence when confronted. This is because if a hunt goes awry, they can suffer an injury, and this could impact their ability to hunt and possibly lead to starvation. This is why you never run away from a predatory animal. It's usually better to simply back away confidently. Running triggers the hunt instinct, because you confirm to the predator that you're weaker than it and scared. I decided to take a huge gamble, and I ran out of my lean-to straight at the bear, shouting and yelling, thrusting with my spear. All things considered, I was basically trapped inside the lean-to, and a bear could easily outrun you. It was a risk, but remember what I said about wilderness survival being risky? The bear immediately reared up on its paws, which is bad news bears, pun intended, because it might mean that it might try to fight back. Luckily for me, yelling and stabbing in the air in front of it like a wild man did the trick, and the bear lost its nerve and scampered back. I've been in close calls with wild animals, but I have never faced off a bear standing on its two hind legs. It's not something I care to ever repeat again unless I'm packing a 45 on my hip at minimum. The bear lumbered off, but I knew it wasn't safe to stay where I was. Any minute the bear could change its mind, so I packed up what few things I had and I immediately took off into the pitch-black rainy woods. Normally, you never want to move at nighttime, as it's really easy to lose your bearings. If you have to, use the stars above you to pinpoint a single direction of travel and to stay in a straight line. That way, in daylight, you can retrace your steps and reorient yourself from more familiar ground. I walked for about 15 minutes and had to wait out the rainy night under a thick pine. Luckily, the rain abated after a few hours, but I didn't get a lick of sleep that whole night. The next morning, I made my way back to my old camp, and sure enough, the bear had returned and trashed the place. I made the right call. Luckily, days 2 and 3 were far less eventful. I relocated my shelter to the other side of the creek, and it didn't rain for nights 2 and 3. I changed my sleep schedule, though, to sleep during the day and stay up at night in case of wandering bear again. Also, I won't lie, those weird howls and screams had me on edge, especially after my encounter with the bear. On the coast, I managed to find edible mussels pretty easily, and I ate some raw, which I immediately regretted, and then I roasted the rest in their own shells. Mussels are great for energy, but you have to be careful if you're low on water because they can add a lot of salt water to your system. If you aren't peeing regularly, the salt in your body can add up dangerously. By the way, they taste like mermaid boogers when you eat them raw. I also managed to find some edible flowering plants. With flowering plants, you want to pluck the actual flower off because the sap in the stem can be really bitter and unpleasant. The bud of the flower and the petals, though, make for good eating in a pinch. And dandelions typically grow in most places. If you really don't mind the bitterness, you can eat the roots of most flowering plants, which are chock full of minerals and nutrients. Though be careful, never eat a flowering plant whose flower is umbrella-shaped. Those are poisonous and may not kill you, but will have your stomach twisted up in knots. Lichens and bugs made up most of the rest of my meals. Grubs were pretty plentiful in rotting logs. I couldn't remember which mushrooms are edible and which aren't, so I stayed away from them, better not risk it. Also, mushrooms don't actually pack a lot of energy, so don't waste time trying to look for them unless you have no other options. Same goes for trying to hunt. Wilderness survival is a numbers game, and your job is to waste as few calories as possible while gaining the most possible from what you eat. Hunting can burn a lot of calories, so forget trying to catch anything larger than a squirrel or a rabbit. And even then, only go after them if you can make some rough traps and snares, or happen to find a burrow or warden. I made it through my 3 days pretty alright, but very much on the hungry side. My encounter with the bear, though, definitely left me a bit shaken. That was a very serious situation which could have gone very badly. The girlfriend wasn't happy to hear about it, and we both talked for a long time about those challenges. They have definitely started to ramp up in risk, and I guess I have to think about if I really want to keep on taking some of the risks I do. I love reading some of the feedback from you guys, and I'm happy that they're entertaining and sometimes even enlightening, but I guess this whole bear experience is just making me reconsider. Hello Infographics fans, it's time for another awesome challenge, all in the name of science. We're concerned with your hygiene because we hate to break it to you, but despite all the go natural fads out there, you should definitely be taking time to give yourself a good scrub once in a while. As usual though, we want to find out what happens to your body and mind over the long term. So once more, we're tasking our favorite, or least important anyway, staff writer with another awesome challenge. All in the name of finding out what happens if you stop showering for a month for science. Day 1. Okay, I have a confession. I didn't tell the girlfriend about this challenge because I'm 100% sure that would not go down well at all. Hygiene is kind of important in a relationship, especially when you share a bed and are as physically active as we are. But also, there's the fact that she's been less than happy with previous challenges. That would be putting it mildly. Also, though, there's the fact that she's leaving for a film shoot in 4 days, and she's going to be on location for the next 3 weeks, so she's going to pretty much miss the entire challenge. This literally couldn't have played out any better. I think she's been getting suspicious though. Typically, I get a few weeks between these challenge assignments to rest and recoup, and also because if I didn't, I'm pretty sure my girlfriend would single-handedly destroy everyone in the Infographics staff. She's a trained stunt woman and can box. She's kinda scary. Anyways, she knows that right around now is when I should be getting a new challenge assigned, and I think she's suspicious that I haven't brought anything up yet. Maybe I'll just tell her there's a production delay or something. By the way, if you're wondering, we obviously don't do these challenges all back-to-back in real time. By the time you get to watch these episodes, the challenges were already completed a while ago to give us, or me I guess, time to do more. So I'm just not gonna say anything until she gets back, which will be about the time the challenge is over. As usual, I did my research and it turns out not showering can lead to everything from acne to infections. But turns out that showering all the time is actually pretty bad for you as well. That's because your body naturally produces a layer of protection on your skin against outside infection, and all your vigorous scrubbing destroys this layer and leaves you prone to getting sick or infections. That's why some health shops sell probiotic sprays to help you grow your healthy body bacteria while making you smell nice, which by the way is complete nonsense and does not work. So stick to real science, not pseudoscience. It'll be cheaper in the long run. Just limit how long you shower each day, and instead of scrubbing your entire body with soap every time, just do your stinkiest areas, groin, armpits, and butt, and rinse off the rest with water. Your body will thank you. Of course, I won't be allowed to do even that much, and I'm not looking forward to this. See, I've already done the no shower challenge in my life during my time in the military, and it was absolutely not pretty. Luckily, everybody was in on it as well, so everyone stank equally. In fact, we pretty much just smelled like gunpowder, dirt, and sweat. Though we did sometimes have the opportunity to take what we called baby wipe showers, where we used a case of baby wipes to wipe down our vital areas. By the way, if you know anyone deployed overseas to a forward location with no facilities, forget about sending cookies or books or anything like that. Just send baby wipes. Your very smelly and grateful military will thank you for it. So I worked a baby shower clause into this challenge, and every 3 days I'll be allowed to wipe groin, butt, and armpits with baby wipes because, you gotta have some hygiene in life. For the rest of me though, not a drop of water will touch my skin. And since it hardly ever rains in Los Angeles, that's a guarantee you can count on. See you in 7 days, YouTube. Day 7. The girlfriend was definitely suspicious. Is suspicious, I should say. She left without asking what, if any, challenge there was now. But she did say that I was smelling a bit ripe when she kissed me goodbye at the airport. She's been texting me, asking what the challenge is, and I didn't want to lie to her, so I just told her that she didn't want to know. Thankfully, she's filming 12+ hours a day, so she's typically too exhausted to push the issue. It won't surprise anyone for me to say this, but I smell. It's interesting though, because at first you really do smell quite bad, but then suddenly it's like your body achieves some sort of smell equilibrium, a smellibrium, or maybe I've just gotten used to the smell myself. I've decided that this month the only days I'll exercise are the days I'm allowed to take a baby wipe shower, and I realize that's kind of cheating, but hey, I still do have to leave the house and run errands or meet with people, you know. Of course, deodorant and cologne go a long way in those cases, and I've definitely been doing more handshakes than hugs lately. Not much else to report, to be honest. Day 14. My girlfriend's best friend came by the house today, quite unexpectedly. She said that she was here to borrow something from her but was really vague with the details and just said that she'd been told it was in the hallway closet. I was immediately suspicious because A, my girlfriend is an evil mastermind and it doesn't matter how busy or far away she is, if something is up, she has to know what. And B, my girlfriend really is an evil mastermind, I'm not joking. I saw through the transparent ploy and it didn't help that the friend kept looking around the house as if expecting to find some freak show that was part of some sadistic internet challenge. I'm also lucky that today was a baby wipe shower day, so my secret is safe. I sent the girlfriend a text telling her to stop spying on me, and she just sent back and I quote, suspicious face emoji. I catch whiffs of myself sometimes when the wind turns outside and I smell. I mean, definitely not good, but not awful. I am incredibly itchy though, especially in the groin. That's no surprise, given that sweat tends to accumulate there a great deal, followed by infection if you're not careful. I wonder if my baby wipe showers are going to be enough to keep things under control down there. I gotta tell you, I'm feeling pretty gross and really limiting the amount of time I spend out of the house. Luckily, Skype is a thing and I can reschedule almost all of my meetings to Skype calls. Thank you, technology. Day 21. Another of girlfriend's friends came by the apartment 2 days ago. I didn't let her in. I just peered out of the front blinds like some very smelly criminal as she knocked on the door until she quit and walked away. Even hundreds of miles away, the girlfriend is persistent, but not nearly sneaky enough. Okay, this is bad. I definitely got a rash in my groin area spreading down my thighs, and I'm starting to seriously question continuing with this challenge. I know it's not a big deal, just really itchy, but it's definitely extremely gross. I can't believe that people actually live like this. By choice, I mean. I miss you, my dear, wonderful shower. I was a fool for years, never appreciating what had been available to me at the twist of a knob. Loss was my cruel teacher, and every day since I've been instructed on how good I had it, how good you were to me, and how little I appreciated it. Please forgive me, shower. I promise to appreciate and adore you, and to rinse your soap scum every day. I think I smell too bad even for the dog because he's definitely not been cuddling up to me the way he typically does at night. That's a pretty damning turn of events coming from an animal who literally can't stop himself from smelling dog butts the first chance he gets. Of course, he doesn't smell like a rose either because he's an absolute maniac around water and will utterly destroy the bathroom unless you physically put him in the shower with you, close the doors, and bathe him that way. So it turns out this 1 month no shower challenge was for both of us, but unlike me, I know for a fact he likes to smell stinky given many times I've had to chase him away from rolling around in God knows what at the park. This rash thing though definitely is going to have to be addressed, and luckily I know exactly what to do. See, my time in the military didn't just teach me about not showering, but what to do in these situations, and the answer is rubbing alcohol. It burns like all the 7 hells, but wiping down with rubbing alcohol destroys the surface layer infection which causes the rash. So tonight, I'm gonna set my groin on fire and kill this before it gets any worse. I really hope you appreciate what I do for you, YouTube. Day 30. The girlfriend came home 2 days ago and I finally had to tell her, though to be honest, I think she probably knew the moment she took her first whiff of me. I've been banned from sleeping in the bedroom and she made me clean all the bed linens before she'd sleep in our bed. I also had to Febreze it down completely. Then she took the Febreze from me and sprayed me with it liberally and told me I wasn't allowed to cuddle her until, and I quote, this stupid challenge is over and you go back to normal, and by the way, you're so lucky I wasn't here for any of this nonsense or you'd be living in a hotel. She didn't call my job stupid though, the way she typically does, and that's how I know she missed me. She's secretly a huge softie, a terrifying, scheming, evil mastermind of a softie. So the rash I had a week ago disappeared thanks to the rubbing alcohol treatment, which I'm pretty sure doesn't count as a shower. But let me tell you, it feels very much like showering your groin with a flamethrower. I did notice red blotches popping up under my armpits, which I suspect is another future rash in the making, but thankfully today I got to shower, so I fully expect those will be going away soon. All in all, I definitely don't recommend not showering for a full month. It's going to make you smell terrible and kind of affect your mood too, although I think that was just a side effect of me avoiding leaving the house as much as I could. When I was a kid, my mom used to tell me that I had enough dirt behind my ears to grow potatoes, and well mom, this time you might actually be right. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy the longest shower of my life and scrub from head to toe so I can reclaim my right to sleep in my own bed. A man's home is his kingdom after all, though in my case it's obvious that I'm just renting it from my girlfriend. The Carolina Reaper is the world's hottest pepper, clocking in at an astonishing 1.5 million Scoville heat units, which is a rating used to determine how spicy a food item is. While a regular jalapeno clocks in at a mere 100,000 to 350,000 SHUs, the pepper is purely man-made, as nature is incapable or evil enough to produce a pepper so fiery hot, and is the brainchild of a former pot grower who began to use his knowledge of botany to crossbreed peppers. Competitions around the world challenge people people to try to eat 3 of these miniature peppers with an atomic punch to see who can down the fastest and keep them down. But what is it like to actually eat one of these red-hot monsters? To find out, we tasked one of our writers with sitting down and eating one Carolina Reaper and recording his observations. T-minus 1 minute. Sitting in front of me are 2 Carolina Reapers, the world's hottest peppers. Allegedly, each one of these tiny peppers has a Scoville heat rating of 1.5 million, but the website these came from claims that some peppers can get as hot as 2 million. That's fantastic, and that's sarcasm. I don't even like spicy food, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm seriously rethinking my current employment status. These peppers actually smell kind of pleasant, almost fruity. From what I've read online, and I've done a lot of research, they have a slightly fruity taste as well. I guess that's right before the lava kicks off. The plan is simple. I eat the first pepper and write down what it feels like, tastes like, etc. I've done a lot of research on how peppers affect the body, so after my initial observations, I'll come back and add what was biologically happening to me. If anything goes wrong or I feel I didn't get enough from the first pepper, I'll try the second one. Here it goes. T-minus 0 seconds. They're right about the slightly fruity taste. I don't know if chewing fast or slow is best. To be fair to the experience, I'm trying to chew the pepper thoroughly. Definitely starting to burn though. Post commentary. Chilies and peppers evolved capsaicin as a defense against unwanted foraging by animals, such as mice and insects, which would destroy the plant's seeds. The capsaicin is thus released mostly from the membrane of the fruit as an animal's teeth tear it to pieces. T plus 10 seconds. Yep, it burns. It burns really bad. Post commentary. The capsaicin binds to the TRPV1 receptors inside your mouth, which are designed to detect heat and are activated by temperatures over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The latched-on capsaicin, however, causes the receptors to be confused, triggering their pain warnings with temperatures as low as 93 degrees Fahrenheit, which is below the average human body temperature. That means your own body heat triggers the burning response, which is what makes spicy food so unbearable. You literally can't get away from the burn. T plus 20 seconds. I tried to speak and I couldn't. Swallowed the mashed up pepper and my throat is on fire. Stomach starting to burn too. Post commentary. When you swallow a mashed up pepper, the capsaicin triggers TRPV1 pain receptors along the esophagus and the stomach. This might seem an odd place for these pain receptors, but it makes perfect sense if you've ever hastily swallowed something far too hot for your own good. The pain response is meant to protect you and teach you to be patient and wait for your hot cocoa to cool down, or to not eat the world's hottest pepper ever again. T plus 30 seconds. Sweating profusely. Girlfriend looking at me weird. My armpits are soaked and face and neck sweaty. Post commentary. The human body sweats to help it radiate excess heat. It's an evolutionary adaptation that makes us the top predator in the savannas of our ancient past. This type of sweating, however, is known as gustatory sweating and is triggered by a perceived increase in the warmth brought on by the capsaicin binding to your TRPV1 pain receptors. Peppers also have the ability to jumpstart your metabolism, and eating really spicy food can actually help you burn a few calories. The increased metabolism also drives further sweating. T plus 45 seconds. I'm not sure if I'm sweating or crying, maybe both. Girlfriend looks concerned. I'm drinking soda. I heard it helps with the burning, which is intense and everywhere. Seriously, I think I might be on fire inside. Post commentary. Capsaicin isn't easily neutralized by stomach acid, meaning it can continue burning for a long time before fading away naturally. This can make the sufferer feel as if a fire was burning inside them, and the malfunctioning TRPV1 receptors can actually start to convince the brain the body is actually suffering from dramatic overheating. Even though body temperature hasn't much changed, this prompts much more sweating to help regulate body temperature. T plus 1 minute 30 seconds. I finally remembered you're supposed to drink milk, so I scared the girlfriend by suddenly rushing to the fridge and gulping down enough milk to refill a cow. I don't think it's helping. I burped, and I swear it felt like fire. I might be turning into an actual dragon. Post commentary. Typically, milk, yogurt, or other dairy products is the preferred pain-relieving drink of choice. That's because milk contains a protein called casein, which actually knocks the capsaicinoid off the hijacked pain receptor, helping ease the symptoms. Non-fat milk is recommended because of its higher protein-to-fat percentage. Water is always a terrible choice, as is soda, as all that does is further spread capsaicin around the affected areas. T plus 3 minutes. My nose has been running non-stop, but I think I've stopped crying. Hard to tell through all the sweating. Girlfriend asked me if she should call poison control or a hospital. I told her to call a morgue instead. She didn't think that was funny. The pain is incredible and all over my mouth, throat, and stomach. I can't even begin to imagine what it'll be like coming out the other end. Except I probably can because it's going to be exactly like coming in this end. Post commentary. At this point, the pain is at its peak, and you might start to feel lightheaded from an endorphin rush as the body tries to do its best to block the pain. Certain sexual fetishes that rely on intense physical pain capitalize on this specific response to extreme pain, which is followed by an almost narcotic high-like release of endorphins into the blood. In this case, however, no such release followed, just more pain. T plus 10 minutes. I've been laying on the floor for 5 minutes now. My mouth feels like that time I bit into a freshly microwaved Hot Pocket as a kid and couldn't taste anything for a week afterwards. I might not be able to taste anything ever again in my life after this. I've dry heaved a few times, which was a terrible idea, as some of the mashed up pepper made its way back into the bottom of my throat and almost made me puke for real. Girlfriend won't talk to me. She's on the couch and angrily muttering the word stupid under her breath every few seconds. Nose has stopped running, but head feels like it might cook my own brain. At this point, I'd welcome that and the sweet release of death. T plus 30 minutes. The worst of the burning is over, but my stomach is starting to cramp pretty badly. I hardly ever eat spicy foods and I'm not fond of them at all. I think the cramping is my stomach trying to tear itself free of my esophagus and rip out of my body in a desperate attempt to escape the hell I just fed it. I don't blame you, stomach, even if it does feel like you're carving me up with a steak knife inside. T plus 1 hour 30 minutes. I left the floor about 45 minutes ago and laid down on the bed. Girlfriend came in and offered me milk and angrily told me that if I got the bed all sweaty, I'd have to do laundry. I'd like to stick my stomach in the washer right now and clean out all the bits and pieces of pepper left inside. Still seriously cramping and still definitely not looking forward to what happens on the way out. T plus 18 hours 30 minutes. I was right to be afraid of what would happen on the way out. If the pepper coming in was Mount St. Helens erupting, then it was Mount Vesuvius exploding on the way out. How do people enjoy this? Girlfriend still hardly talking to me, told me my job was stupid before leaving for work. Left a gallon of fresh milk in the fridge though. I went back into the dining room and realized that the second pepper is still there sitting on a plate. I can't believe I thought I would seriously need 2 of these. Looking at it now, it's only barely 2 inches long. How could something so tiny hold so much evil inside it? This isn't a pepper, it's the fruit equivalent of Hitler. This is the Hitler and Stalin of peppers. This tiny, weird-looking pepper isn't even a fruit at all. It's the shriveled up testicle of the Dark Lord Lucifer, full of all the fire and fury of hell itself. We here at the Infographics Show go to great lengths to answer some of your most burning questions, pardon the pun. And today we're happy to put one of our writers through eating the world's hottest pepper for your sake. If you've watched our channel for a while, then you've probably seen any number of videos, such as what to do if your city was a war zone, or how to defend the Earth from an alien invasion. In these and many other videos, we often advocate that you do one thing: flee the cities. In such a catastrophic scenario, cities will become death traps, and with cities importing all of the food and most of their water that they use, your survival could very well depend on learning to live off the land. So today we're tasking our favorite wilderness lab rat to hit them bricks and teach us all how to survive for 3 days, eating only what you can catch. Day 1. So I sort of have trust issues with the Infographics Show. Now, they've typically been upfront about challenges, but they've certainly snuck in a few on me. When I got sent to Hawaii because the fans requested it, I almost had a nervous breakdown because I kept expecting some bomb to drop, like I had to go live inside a volcano for a day or something equally insane. But no weirdness ever came, and it turns out to be just a pleasant little self-vacation. Well, a little bit ago, me and the girlfriend underwent a challenge together, and then last week, we got an offer to stay for a few days in a cabin up in the mountains near Big Bear, California. Infographics said that they figured they owed us this much, especially since the girlfriend had to deal with a pretty tough 3-day challenge. Consider it a sort of thank you, and we're sorry rolled into one, they said. By the way, yeah, we've seen your comments asking for a face reveal, and we're both really flattered, but take a look at other people's comments and you might see why we prefer to remain as anonymous as possible. We're already worried our poor narrator could get mobbed if someone hears his voice and thinks, hey, that's the guy from the challenges. Oh, and changing clothes? Well, obviously we used a key for that every morning. Even the infographics wouldn't make us wear the same stinky clothes for 3 days straight. Anyway, we took the offer and made the drive up to the mountains and sure enough, found a perfectly pleasant little place. Kind of romantic really. A deck with a gorgeous view, no neighbors for miles, and an outdoor hot tub that overlooks a freaking mountain. Within an hour of arriving though, my spider sense went off. Something wasn't quite right. Sure enough, I got a call from the show. "Oh, hey, while you're up there, we got a challenge for you." No, not both of you, just you. Apparently, I'm always on the clock and the girlfriend deserves her rest. Clearly, Infographics is playing favorites here, or maybe they're secretly terrified of her. So yeah, I should have seen this coming, but basically, I have to eat only what I can catch up here in the mountains for the next 3 days. Honestly, it should have been obvious the moment that I opened the door to the cabin and found some very basic survival supplies on the kitchen counter. But I sort of figured, I don't know, it's a cabin in the woods. Survival stuff makes sense, right? So the girlfriend had a pretty good laugh. Then she told me she was driving down to the store to pick up her supplies for the 3 days and wished me luck finding lunch. Alright, so at least they're not making me actually live rough out here. And I do still get the comforts of a cabin to come back to, but this isn't gonna be a vacation by any stretch of the imagination. I remember my survival training from the military pretty well, and did you know that animals really don't like getting eaten? They tend to make it incredibly difficult to catch and eat them. Really uncooperative. Luckily though, I've had to scrounge with barely any tools before, and I think only once in my entire 6 years was I in a situation where we ran out of MREs and actually had to scavenge. Using firearms was not an option because, you know, they're loud and make it easy for bad guys to find you. So I have a pretty good idea of the wildlife in the area, at least, and we're in a really remote area close to Big Bear in SoCal. I spotted several small lakes, and I know that on the other side of the mountains where I'm at is desert, and at the foot of the mountains is several smaller towns and cities. That's good because it means most animals are going to remain trapped between the peaks and the cities at the foot of the mountains, not crossing over to the other side of the mountains since there's only desert there. I'm thinking that most of my sustenance is going to have to come from fishing because hunting is incredibly difficult. Never mind when you don't have a firearm or even a bow and arrow. You can make a throwing stick with a weighted end which will knock the crap out of a smaller mammal such as a squirrel or a rabbit, but it takes pretty damn good aim. And I'm also pretty confident that I can whip up a few small snares for rabbits, squirrels, and groundhogs, all animals that are pretty abundant in SoCal. There's also deer, but let's face it, venison is tasty, but there's no chance of catching one without a true hunting tool. It's still late in the summer, so snake is definitely an option, as are several types of lizards that inhabit the area. I'm honestly not picky, and if you want to survive in the wild, you better not be either. I almost wish that this challenge was closer to the coast though. The ocean in SoCal is practically teeming with mussels. This isn't going to be easy, but I'm kind of excited. I haven't been in a situation like this for a while, though I guess my homeless challenge came close. It's time to go mano a mano with Mother Nature. Day 1. So the challenge started on the morning of what is technically day 2 of our stay in the cabin. I was already up and out of the cabin well before sunrise. I found on Google Maps that there's a small lake just 6 miles as the crow flies from the cabin, and during summertime fish tend to bite best right before sun up and just after sundown. During the hottest parts of the day they tend to retreat to deeper, colder water, so it's not likely that you'll get a bite then. I took a length of string with me, and the night before I spent whittling a few fishing hooks out of wood. The show had included a packet of balloons along with the supplies, which let me know that they knew what they were doing. Balloons are incredibly useful for emergency survival fishing. What I don't have is bait, but that's okay because Mother Nature is full of it if you know where to look. I left around 2:30 a.m. and it took me 2.5 hours to make 6 miles in pretty rough terrain. That wasn't good because it meant that I have to move quick if I wanted to catch anything. As soon as I got to the lake, I did a quick survey. I know these lakes are stocked with trout, carp, and bass for sure, but it's best to fish for each in different locations. Bass will typically hide in areas with vegetation where they can ambush prey, while trout prefer areas of clear water where they can keep an eye out on bigger bass trying to eat them. With that in mind, I did a quick scout and picked 2 different spots. With insects up and about, I knew trout would be coming in close to shore, and odds were good that a few bass would tag along. I lucked out and found a rotting log, and sure enough, after digging into it, I managed to find a virtual treasure trove of large grubs and some beetles. I used these for bait and set them on my wooden hooks. I rigged 6 hooks on string to 6 balloons, and each hook would hang at a different length than the others, targeting fish at different depths. I inflated the balloons 1/4 of the way so they'd act as floaters, keeping the bait suspended in the water and letting me know if I got a bite. Then finally I tied each line to a branch on a tree. So even if a good-sized bass bass snapped one up, it wouldn't be able to get away unless my wooden hook snapped, which was a real possibility. I set up my fishing lines around the perimeter of a small cove I found with deep, clear water. There was plenty of vegetation pushing up onto the shore itself, which means that this was both a place insects would frequent and accidentally fall into the water. The trout and bass would both know this, so I figured my odds were pretty good. Now it's important to note that this type of fishing is illegal in pretty much every state, but this is technically a survival situation. Plus, Infographics can pick up the tab if some ranger managed to find me out here in the ass end of nowhere. I set my lines and waited, and incredibly, 3 of them hit within half an hour. 2 of them were smaller trout, about 8 and 10 inches respectively, which means they were likely still juveniles. Well, sorry, but a man's gotta eat. The 3rd line I suspect hit a bass though because the hook got snapped in 2. It takes a really aggressive fish like a bass or a pike to snap a hook like that. It's made out of wood after all. Sadly, there are no pike in Southern California. They make for great fishing and good eating. I reset my 2 lines and snagged a 3rd trout. My gamble had paid off after all, though I guess you can see by now why this technique is illegal. In an hour, I'd already caught 3 fish. Now, in a real survival situation, I would have kept fishing as long as I could and simply smoked the meat I couldn't eat. When you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you don't take chances and you get what you can get when you can. This isn't a real survival situation, and worse come to worse, if I fail to catch more food tomorrow, I'd go hungry for a day or 2. I honestly rather not take more fish than I needed, and I was confident I could repeat my fishing trip tomorrow. On the way back, I stopped and picked up a few grub. They're about an inch long and really thick around and chock full of protein. You gotta bite the heads off from behind though, or their nasty little pincers can latch onto your lips and tongue, and that hurts like hell. So I came home and found the girlfriend already awake making herself eggs. She was kinda surprised to see me walk in with 3 fish and start preparing them. I guess she didn't think it would be that easy. Honestly, survival really isn't that easy, and if that lake wasn't nearby, I'd be in a world of trouble. Typically in a survival situation, you spend most of your day just hunting or scavenging, but sometimes you get lucky, like today. The girlfriend was fine with me gutting and filleting a fish, but she freaked when she saw me dump out a handful of grubs from my pocket, then practically fainted when I bit the head off one and popped it in my mouth. Hey, bugs aren't amazing to eat, but food is food and I was in full survival mode. Then I chased her around the house with the remaining grubs until she locked herself in the bathroom. I knew I had enough fish for solid eating for the day, so food was no longer a pressing concern. That let me focus on preparations for tomorrow and improving the tools I had for survival. I whittled more fishing hooks and made a weighted throwing stick by wedging a rock on the end of a large splintered stick and then wrapping it up with string. You can use vines or even long grass to do the same thing. And soon I had a bona fide hunting throwing stick. Though I've never been good with these, so my odds are probably not that great. I decided tomorrow I'd try my hand at catching rabbit, squirrel, or possibly groundhog. Basically, mammal was on the menu. I could have probably lived on fish for a few days, but for the sake of the challenge, I wanted to see how hard it would be to move to land and try to go for harder prey. Small mammals, especially rabbits, tend to follow small tracks through the woods. You can find well-worn paths that lead through the underbrush and give the rabbit a quick method of escape. Rabbits are creatures of habit and will typically use the same paths day after day for weeks and months on end. Luckily, as it's late summer, there should still be plenty of rabbits out and about. Otherwise, it might be best to look for an actual warren. To catch a rabbit, the best tool is a simple snare. You can find all kinds of complex traps to build in survival situations, but snares are simple, easy, and pretty damn effective. Well, if your rabbit actually travels down the path you set it on. That's where the snare's simplicity works in your favor, as you can quickly set up these lines in several locations and increase the odds of catching something. Ideally, you'd use metal wire to create the snare, as it'll help keep the circular shape needed. I only have heavy-duty string though, so I'll have to improvise. The way a snare works is by forcing the rabbit to try to move through it, at which point the rabbit will hopefully stick his head through the snare, and the force of him trying to escape it will cinch the snare closed. You want to make your loop large enough for the rabbit's head to enter the snare, but not so big that the snare might close around the rabbit's body rather than the head. You really want the snare to cinch tight around the rabbit's neck for a quick, humane death. With no metal wire, I used long, rigid blades of grass I found and interweaved them with the string. Not only will they help keep the circular shape of the snare, but they'll help camouflage the string as well. With plenty fish to eat, I spent the day scouting the land around the cabin and identified several locations that looked promising. Tomorrow, hopefully, I would eat meat. Day 2. The best time to hunt a rabbit is early in the morning or late in the afternoon, and the best way to hunt rabbits is with dogs, sadly. I'd have to rely on trapping one instead. I set out at 4 a.m. this time and set up 8 snares along what I hoped were different trails used by rabbits. To set each snare, I found a part of the path where the vegetation closed in and made a natural funnel, then further closed the funnel in with sticks I dug into the ground, sort of like miniature fences on each side. You have to be careful and not make it super obvious, because rabbits are incredibly skittish animals. But you should work the vegetation to make a narrow enough funnel that the rabbit will more likely than not hit your snare as it's running along. Then I simply hung the snare from an overhead branch. There would be nothing to do until about noon, and my stomach was definitely growling. I wasn't very confident with my snares, to be honest, because even if you hit the right path, you still have to get lucky enough for the rabbit to actually run through the snare itself. Odds are never in your favor when snaring or trapping with homemade items. So with the sun rising, I knew that lizards and reptiles would be waking up and moving to warm rocks to absorb the sun and get their cold blood warmed up. That's the perk of hunting a cold-blooded animal. You can be pretty sure of finding them early in the morning if you know where to look and there happens to be the right type of rocky outcroppings in your area. For me though, there were not, so lizard was off the menu. I found a few warming themselves on the sides of trees, but those things were tiny. My stomach was growling and I started thinking that I might have to resort to fishing. This late in the day though, odds were not good at catching anything there either. Worst come to worst, there was always bugs. Not great tasting, pretty gross, but full of protein, and when you're hungry, you can't be picky. That's when I came across a snake, easily 2.5 feet long. Now, years ago, I had all the snakes found in Africa and the Middle East practically memorized, but I'll be honest with you, I have no clue about American snakes. All I know is rattlers, and that's it. And this was no rattler. I had no idea if it was venomous or not, and I had to really think about what I was gonna do. Was it worth the risk? Yes, I decided, because if this was a real-world situation, I would take the risk. You do not look a gift horse in the mouth when you're in survival mode, because nature is incredibly fickle and cruel. It must have been around noon then, which meant the snake was fully warmed up and mobile, and that's a shame because it would have been much easier to catch early in the morning while it's still slow after the cold night. I chased it into a tree stump and managed to corner it, and then thought carefully about how to do this. It was coiling up, so grabbing it by the tail wasn't an option. And all I had with me was my weighted stick. I doubted I could hit this thing's small head with one throw, so I looked for alternatives. I found a large rock. Perfect. I grabbed the rock and, holding it over my head, simply smashed it on the snake. Not pretty, certainly not graceful, but that was one dead snake. I picked up my prize and just started heading back home, checking my snares on the way back, to find nothing, just as I thought. Honestly, I can't overstate just how much rabbits hate to be eaten. If the girlfriend nearly fainted when I ate grub in front of her, she about died when she saw me bring in a snake. She's not typically girly girl, she's probably one of the toughest people I know, to be honest. But while I was going through survival training and all kinds of unpleasantness in the military, she was going to fancy acting academies in New York. Let's just say that all the food she's ever eaten has been nicely wrapped up in plastic at the grocery store. Snake's easy to prepare, just slice it in half and scoop the guts out, then lay in sections over a fire. Turns out this thing was a gopher snake. Totally not dangerous to humans at all, but hey, no reason to take chances. At about 2.5 feet long, it wasn't exactly belly-filling for an entire day, but enough to live on. Later, I checked my snares and still nothing. Though one had been knocked aside, a little bastard probably ran right past it. I fixed it and left all the snares up overnight. Day 3. I did not catch a rabbit. Actually, the snares didn't work at all. I found 2 of them on the ground, which means that a larger animal probably trashed them. No blood though, so it wasn't like a rabbit got snared and then a coyote or bobcat ate my lunch. That's okay. I didn't really think I'd have much luck with the snares. You really have to get lucky with those things. Instead, I went fishing again today because I had little faith in snares, and I honestly didn't think I'd get so lucky again with finding another snake. Wildlife is a bit scarce up here, to be honest, though I did see several deer. Shame I didn't at least have a compound bow for this challenge. I managed to catch 2 fish, one of them a bass. That's good, because I much prefer the taste of bass to trout. On the way back home though, I spotted a fat, juicy squirrel just perfectly perched in the middle of a branch that stuck out in a way from all the other branches. It was just sort of sitting there, half paying attention to me, and I happened to have my throwing stick with me. I threw as hard as I could and missed by like 3 feet. Incredibly, that stupid squirrel just sat there almost like it was taunting me to try again. So I fetched my stick and tried again, this time actually slamming into the tree branch it was perched on. This got it scampering up into the body of the tree, and I knew I'd never catch it then. Also, the impact knocked the rock loose on the stick, and I'd have to fix my stick if I wanted to use it again. I told you, animals really try hard to not get eaten. I brought the fish back to the cabin and prepared them, though I had to convince the girlfriend I had no grubs with me before she let me through the front door. Later in the day I checked on the snares, but like I said earlier, never caught anything on them. I decided to just take them all down since this was my final day. If you're gonna hunt, you should always be respectful and responsible. All in all, I didn't do too bad, though I think my survival skills need some sharpening. I got really lucky with the snake on day 2, and was even luckier that there was a good lake for fishing nearby the cabin. It's no surprise that early men often set up camp near lakes and rivers. Without fish, we really wouldn't have survived, I think. Without the right tools, land animals are just incredibly hard to catch. As a big perk though, the girlfriend was totally grossed out by me gutting and fixing various animals, but she did say that she thought it was kinda sexy the way I just went out into the woods and provided food. So there you have it, guys. If you want girls to like you, prove to them that you can catch wild animals in an emergency, or just buy them food. It worked for me when we started dating. Hello, Infographics fans. We're back with another special challenge episode, where we explore the deepest questions science doesn't dare ask, and then make your favorite and most expendable writer answer them. Today we're tackling the issue of obesity once again, but now we want to know what role does food play in our instant gratification culture. To find out, we're putting our favorite guinea pig through 30 days of nothing but fast food. As usual, he'll update us on weekly progress, so strap in and stay tuned for Challenge Eat Only Fast Food for a Month, Day 1. I have to admit, I'm not looking forward to this one at all. I don't really like fast food. I mean, I used to when I was a kid, but when you start having to pay for your own food, you kinda hit a point where you think to yourself, why am I paying to eat garbage? Now it's all I'm going to have to eat for the next 30 days. And all I could say is I'm glad the pay is worth it. Naturally, the fitness freak girlfriend did not take this well at all, but I worked some of my charm on her to ease her through this one. And by worked some of my charm, what I actually mean is that after the 30 days are up, I'm going to owe her big time again. So beforehand, I did my research on what I could potentially expect. We've all seen Super Size Me, and after it came out, everyone hated fast food until it was realized that Morgan Spurlock fudged quite a bit of the quote experiment unquote for the sake of drama. I'm gonna keep it simple. I'll figure out how many calories I'm taking in and keep track of my weight, as well as mood and energy levels, etc. I'm less interested in the numbers and more on what the actual physiological effects are on me and my life. The effects of eating lots of fast food vary, but some of the scarier ones include diabetes. Apparently, that's because fast food is loaded with carbs that have almost no fiber, and when your body breaks those empty carbs down, they turn into glucose, which pumps up your blood sugar levels. To regulate, your body releases insulin. But if you do this too many times, your body can actually stop responding to the blood sugar, leading to insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. Nothing I've found said that 30 days of nothing but fast food is nearly enough to do this though. The other major side effect is, weight gain. The American Heart Association recommends eating only 100 to 150 calories of added sugar per day, or 6 to 9 teaspoons. But a 12-ounce soda has 8 teaspoons of sugar. So kiss the rest of your daily allowance goodbye. Then of course there's added sugar in the food itself in order to make it taste good. I heard a rumor that McDonald's soaks their potatoes in a sugar water solution to enhance their flavor, but that's just a rumor. What's not a rumor is that their fries are actually pretty amazing. There's also added trans fat in fast food, and every health website pretty much says that there's absolutely 0 levels of trans fats that are healthy for you. Luckily for me, fast food is loaded with trans fat, so hooray! Then there's concerns over sodium, but that only seems to be a real issue for people with weakened hearts and blood pressure conditions, which I do not have. Although the AHA recommends that you eat no more than 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day, and a single fast food meal contains as much as half your day's worth. So basically what I'm gathering from all this research is that we need to add more hours to the day so that then one meal won't have almost all of my daily allotment of sodium, calories, and sugar. You're welcome, fast food industry. I just ended your biggest marketing nightmare. Just add more hours to the day and your meals won't have an entire day's junk limits in one sitting. I should have been a madman. Okay, so as usual, I'll update weekly. Starting weight is 165 pounds, and I confess that I exercise regularly, so my results probably aren't going to be the same as a couch potato. In fact, my fitness Nazi girlfriend has promised that she's upping our workout routine viciously because she's starting her own 30-day challenge called I'm going to not let my boyfriend get fat and crush him physically to make sure it doesn't happen. Day 7. I've been doing some rough tabletop math. just to figure out how many calories I've been taking in based off what I can find on different restaurant websites. And I'm pretty sure I'm running at about 3,000 calories a day. Well over the 2,000 a day natural limit we're supposed to be taking in. I've been hitting up McDonald's and grabbing Big Macs with fries, so that's about 1,000 calories right there. And then grabbing In-N-Out for a double-double with fries, which is about 1,100 calories. By the way, if you don't have an In-N-Out where you live, why do you even live there? It's basically the only fast food restaurant that doesn't taste like fast food, and the only place where I actually feel the money I spend is worth the food I'm getting in return. Other places like McDonald's, I typically feel I might just as well have eaten the $10 I spent, vomited the tenner back up, and then eaten the vomited $10 bill. I've also been hitting up Del Taco though, until I realized that Chipotle very much still counts as fast food, but is infinitely better. I considered Taco Bell, but then I remembered that I don't actually hate my own existence, and I like eating things that on some level are considered food. Carl's Jr. has been good to me, and honestly, I'd say their quality is definitely in the upper tier of fast food, though far below In-N-Out. Then again, being upper tier quality in fast food is like being the smartest dumb guy. You're still an idiot. Speaking of dumb guy, I was getting the Swiss chicken sandwich at Carl's Jr. thinking to myself, hey, it's chicken. This is definitely healthier than a burger. And guess what? It's 780 calories, over 200 calories more than a Big Mac. Even that doesn't compare with the half-pound mile-high bacon thick burger though, which is a whopping 1,230 calories. Okay, so I've been getting in right around 3,000 calories a day this week, and I've been skipping breakfast because every fast food breakfast is awful. I hit the scale and weighed 167, but that's definitely within natural fluctuation, so I can't say I've actually gained that much weight already. There's also the fact that the girlfriend has been running me during our exercise time like an old drill instructor, a job I suspect she is secretly loving. First week done, and I gotta say, I feel pretty normal. Day 14. I've been trying to switch it up other than just hitting the same few places over and over again. I gotta tell you, fast food really tastes the same everywhere you go, and that's predominantly awful. Thank God for In-N-Out though, and Chipotle. At least those taste like real food. I'm definitely no food snob. I've eaten way too many cold MREs in my life to ever be one. But I think if we were all honest with ourselves, we'd admit that fast food tastes good for like the first 5 bites, and after that it tastes like depression, loneliness, and suicide. My mood is definitely affected. I feel sluggish both physically and mentally. Girlfriend got called up for an acting gig that took her away for most of the week, so she hasn't been around to slave drive me into exercise oblivion, and I kinda wish she had. I tried to switch things up and added Panda Express to the mix just to get away from Mexican food and burgers. 2 servings of orange chicken and fried rice are just over 1,500 calories. How in the world did I think this would be a healthier option? I've been going to a lot of fast food places, guys, and it turns out that burgers are overwhelmingly the most healthy option. I'm at 169 pounds this week, which is definitely past normal weight fluctuation. And if I remember right, it's the high point I got to when I did the only soda for a month challenge, and it's only halfway through. Well, this is definitely not going to be the month of washboard abs. Day 21. I am legitimately dreading mealtime. At first, it was kind of fun to eat fast food all the time, especially since I rarely get to. Then it became boring and repetitive. Spoiler alert, it all starts tasting the exact same. Then it very quickly became a mini hell. I literally feel like my blood has turned into barbecue sauce. I could probably flavor my own food just by cutting myself open. I now hate fries, and I've always loved French fries. Now I think we just need a new potato famine. I kinda wish I could go back in time to the famous Irish potato famine just so I could gloat over all those dead potatoes. Not so much the dead Irish though. This week I added Wiener Schnitzel to the mix, and then I immediately took Wiener Schnitzel out of the mix. Remember how I said that Carl's Jr. was the upper tier of fast food earlier? Well, Wiener doesn't even rank. It's just not food, period. Physically, I can't keep up with the girlfriend when we exercise anymore. She outruns me, she outboxes me. I'm on the verge of passing out while she's still warming up. I'm at 172 pounds, and that's not major weight gain, but the fast food just literally, I don't know, it weighs you down physically. It's like jamming chocolate and marshmallows into a car's engine. I feel absolutely terrible, and my mood has definitely been quite a bit darker. The girlfriend has definitely taken note of the mood change, and she's been sending me corny one-line jokes while she's still at work because she knows I love bad dad jokes. It's actually really sweet of her. Then she comes home and kicks my ass working out. Only 1 week left, and I'm seriously looking forward to this one being over. Day 30. Final weight is 174 pounds, or a 9-pound weight gain over 30 days. I have no doubts that if I hadn't been exercising as much as I do, I could have easily done some pretty high double digits. I know Morgan Spurlock fudged a lot of things in his Super Size Me doc, but honestly, a lot of the stuff he presented was spot on. Fast food kills your mood, absolutely ruins your sex drive, and destroys your energy levels. I used to breeze a 2-mile run, now I'm dying at a mile. Girlfriend celebrated the end of the challenge by going out and buying a bunch of healthy stuff to make for lunch and dinner for the next week. And I gotta tell you, after all that garbage I've been eating, seeing the rows of fresh vegetables and fruit in our fridge has kinda got me salivating. I can't say that I hate fast food now and will never eat it again. In fact, I think this challenge has helped me identify exactly which fast food I do like and which I'll never touch again, but I definitely have no desire to eat fast food for at least a year. My final verdict is this: if you're eating fast food pretty regularly and feel terrible about yourself or depressed all the time, try and stop or cut down. You'll be amazed at how much fast food is to blame for how you're feeling, or at least making bad feelings much, much worse. 4 weeks of 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day, especially such low nutrition calories, have absolutely wrecked me. And I can't imagine what it must do to people over the really long term. One day you're at home, minding your own business, when your mom asks you to come see something. She sounds very worried, and as you hurry downstairs and meet her in the kitchen, you can see that she's terrified. Pointing at the table, you peer under it and you see your sister sitting there on all fours. As she spots you, she starts barking like a dog. Then suddenly she projectile vomits green goo into your face and laughs, her head spinning 360 degrees. That's when you realize that you're really deep in it now, because your sister's been possessed by the ancient Assyrian demon Pazuzu, and now he's out for your blood. So your sister's been possessed by an ancient wind demon, and now it's coming for your soul next. How are you going to get out of this one? First, as usual, if you're going to fight your enemy, you need to know your enemy. Pazuzu is an ancient demon whose origins hail back to ancient Assyria and Babylon. Though, as most demons, he likely existed long before the rise of either of those two civilizations. It was the ancient Assyrians who first identified Pazuzu. This vile demon is actually demon nobility and is in fact king of the wind demons, a group of evil pseudo-deities considered amongst the most powerful and high-ranking in Hell's hierarchy. As if his noble title wasn't enough, Pazuzu is also the firstborn son of HANNIBAL, the god of all evil deeds and all evil forces. If you've ever worked with someone whose dad runs the company, then you know how annoying those kind of people can be, and Pazuzu is no exception, and doesn't hesitate to call on daddy when need be. As far as powers, Pazuzu's own abilities are pretty typical demon stuff. He can obviously possess people as well as project fears directly into people's minds. He also has some telekinetic ability, able to move small to moderate-sized objects around with his mind. Though nothing bigger than a sofa chair, for instance. He's also able to call up fierce winds, from hurricane gales to light breezes, and can ride those winds to quickly move throughout our world. One key feature of Pazuzu, though, is that he almost never takes physical form in our world. As with any demon, that would leave him vulnerable to the laws of physics. While once upon a time in human history, demons would manifest physically and terrorize humanity, with the invention of the automatic assault rifle, demons are far less likely to do this. While most demons have superior strength and speed to humans and use these strengths for millennia to terrorize and prey upon humans armed with swords and spears, the development of the assault rifle and other high-powered weaponry very quickly leveled the playing field. Nowadays, demons mostly stick to possession and attacking humans psychologically, so as to wear down their defenses and leave them vulnerable to suggestion or possession. Taking physical form brings on a great deal of unnecessary risks, and until demons start figuring out how to use firearms themselves, it's not going to be much of a risk going into this fight. Unfortunately for you, Pazuzu is more than capable of hurting you through others, without ever taking physical form himself. As far as vulnerabilities, Pazuzu shares the same weaknesses that any demon has. True faith is deadly to demons, and has the power to dispel them from the prime material plane of existence entirely. Luckily for them, true faith is relatively rare amongst their human victims. So if you think hiding behind a crucifix or saying the only prayer you've ever muttered in your life is going to save you, you'd better think again. Extremely religious artifacts, however, can afford even the most unreligious person great power over a demon though, and everything from splinters gathered from Jesus' cross to the blood of Christ himself have been used to banish demons from the earth before. Unluckily for you, you don't have access to any of these holy relics, and we're guessing you're probably lacking in the true faith department yourself. So just how are you going to beat Pazuzu? First, as usual, the first thing you want to do when preparing to combat a demon is to work on controlling your fear. Demons not only feed on fear, which strengthens all of their powers, but actually use it as a weapon to break down your mind and leave you susceptible to suggestion, perhaps even full-blown possession. Once a demon gets inside you, they're like bedbugs, practically impossible to get rid of. So get a grip on your fears and try to clear your mind, because Pazuzu is going to figure out what scares you and terrorize you with it until you break. Pazuzu, however, is a bit wilier than most demons, and if he sees that fear isn't working to break your will, he may just straight up offer you a bargain. Pazuzu's cunning lets him sniff out people's deepest desires, and if he suspects he won't be able to manipulate you directly through fear or break your will down enough to possess you, he might just offer you a bargain. Perhaps he might want you to act in his stead, causing terror and mayhem when he calls upon you to do so. Or perhaps he might just want to use your soul as a temporary or permanent repository. He might want to work out a timeshare-like agreement with you. You can get control of your body for most of the day, but he gets it between the hours of midnight and 3 a.m. every other weekend, plus 2 weeks during the summer. In exchange, Pazuzu may offer you anything you desire: riches, good looks, power, influence, never-ending chocolates. Listen, he's going to make you an offer and you might not want to refuse, but you have to. As tempting as a demon's offer can be, we can't stress enough how much of a bad idea it is to ever consider taking it. By now, if you've watched even just a few of the literally thousands of movies and TV shows featuring demons, then you should be well aware that bargains with demons always come with hidden strings. What might seem like a sweet deal today is going to come with some serious repercussions tomorrow. It's a lot like buying a used car or getting a student loan from a big bank. Seems great at first and you get what you need, and then you find out a few years later that the adjustable interest rate just tripled and you're basically going to be living in your parents' basement until you're 40. So whatever the deal is, heed our advice and don't take it. The moment you reject Pazuzu though, he's going to come at you with everything he's got, which is probably not going to be himself physically, but rather a whole host of individuals he's influenced or possessed. In this case, it's your sister, which he possessed earlier, and this sibling rivalry is about to get red hot because Pazuzu's presence grants supernatural strength and the ability to do really freaky, unnatural crap, like twisting your own head around 360 degrees. Now, you have to remember that your sister is still somewhere inside there, so even if she's trying to claw your face off while vomiting pea soup into your mouth, you're gonna want a non-lethal solution to stop her cold in her tracks and force Pazuzu to seek another host. For this, we highly recommend a ViperTech VTS 989 stun gun. Now, you might be thinking, why go for a stun gun when I can get a taser and shoot from a safe distance? Well, for starters is the fact that most tasers top out at around 50,000 volts, which is fine for stopping a murderer cold in his tracks, but with ViperTech's 300 million volts, you're gonna shock Pazuzu straight out of your sister and back to ancient Assyria. ViperTech's heavy-duty stun gun packs enough of a wallop to give a small dinosaur second thoughts about making you its lunch, and it's going to pretty much guarantee an instant exorcism courtesy of modern engineering. But unfortunately, you can't shock Pazuzu's incorporeal form no matter the wattage. And with the ability to terrorize you until your mind literally breaks, you're gonna really want to finish this fight and not leave Pazuzu lingering around until your will fails and he takes over your body. Your next weapon in this epic matchup is thus going to be a pregnant woman. Yes, you heard that correctly. You need to immediately find yourself a pregnant woman. In fact, the more pregnant the better. Remember the Octomom that rocked the reality TV show circuit a few years ago? You need to find a new Octomom who's literally bursting with babies, because she's going to be your human shield against Pazuzu. Now, we know that sounds a little, well, harsh, and we generally look down on using pregnant women as tools to fight supernatural evils with. But bear with us. See, pregnant women are the favorite prey of Lamashtu, a very powerful female demon who considers newborn babies and pregnant women delicacies to snack upon. Lamashtu and Pazuzu also happen to hate each other's guts, and while the ancient Assyrians didn't leave us with any clues as to the source of this intense hatred between the two, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. There is only one thing that can make a man and a woman hate each other with a burning passion that spans millennia, and that's marriage. Sometime in the distant past, in the ages before even man's first civilizations, we're guessing that Pazuzu and Lamashtu led a happy, blissful domestic life together. Like so many couples though, when the honeymoon ended, the reality of sharing every waking moment of your life with another individual set in. If you've ever had a friend with an annoying habit, well, imagine having to deal with that annoying habit every second of every single day, because you live together, for eternity. Now imagine the dozens of other annoying habits that friend probably has because you don't really know each other that intimately. And now you get to discover them one by one and deal with them every day, every month, every year of your life, from now until you die. Pazuzu and Lamashtu's relationship origins may be lost to time, but their legendary loathing of each other is not. The two hated each other so famously that ancient Assyrians and Babylonians would actually call on one of them to protect themselves from attacks by the other. They would be so eager to fight each other that they happily answered mortals' calls for help, wanting nothing in return but the chance to seriously wreck the other's day. So you're going to capitalize on this love gone sour and find yourself a seriously pregnant woman that's going to lure Lamashtu near, and then you're going to simply let her loose on Pazuzu. Next, we recommend you stay well out of the way because the ensuing fight between Pazuzu and Lamashtu is going to be legendary in the way that only fights between two former lovers can be. Congratulations, you've defeated Pazuzu and used the power of love to win the day. Well, sort of. We guess you've actually used the power of failed love to win the day, but hey, a victory is a victory, and on top of that, you get to keep your soul after all. Now go and get your sister to the hospital because we seriously can't overstate just how much of a wallop those 300 million volts were, and the absolute hell they just caused to her internal chemistry. Tin Hut, straighten up there, soldier, because today we're taking you to boot camp so you can learn what it's like to leave the civilian world behind and become a soldier in the US military. Well, actually, we went ahead and had our favorite lab rat and the third from the bottom in importance writer go ahead and relive his boot camp days, as we had him live out his life for 30 days like he was back in boot camp. What does boot camp do to a person? How does it change your behavior? Let's find out as you tag along with our boot camp for 30 days challenge. Day 1. When I first got this challenge assigned to me, I had such intense flashbacks that I shuddered. I've been out of the military now for a decade after a 6-year stint, and I can still remember my day 1 in boot camp like it was yesterday. It wasn't really that shocking a transition going from civilian life to boot camp. My whole family practically is military, and my dad used to be an airborne instructor. I'd trained with his classes as a teenager, and he almost even got permission to have me jump with him during my senior year, but I'd have to wait until I actually joined the military to get my wings. Turns out if anything had gone wrong, it would have been a bureaucratic nightmare, me being a teenager civilian and all that. But I still did PT with them in the morning, even trained on the jump platforms, and yeah, got yelled at just like I was any other recruit. Fun times, but my point is that it wasn't a big shock to transition to boot camp. Boot camp, however, is definitely unpleasant. Though I hear stories about how cake kids today have it. If you went through boot camp recently, can you please let us know in the comments if it was difficult having to eat your filet mignon without steak sauce while your drill instructors cut it up into neat little slices and fed it to you? I realized that I sound like the old timers, how much harder things were in my day. But seriously, from what I've heard of boot lately, it was definitely harder in my day. I guess we were actively at war back then though, and I know that for some of the kids who had no experience with the military, it was jarring to have them see soldiers missing arms and legs for the first time. The point of boot is to break you down, to turn you from a civilian into a soldier, a sailor, an airman, a marine. And that's a pretty drastic transition to make. All the yelling, the screaming, the insults, although I hear they don't do that anymore, and the PT or physical training is all meant to break down your defenses so you can be rebuilt. You're meant to learn discipline, teamwork, leadership, and get mentally and physically tough. Because, let me tell you, there's nothing harder in life than the battlefield. Like the old adage goes, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in combat. So, yeah, even though it makes no sense, the sleep deprivation, the screaming in your face, the constant PT until you're well past physical exhaustion, it's all for a reason. And I can't tell you the number of times once I was in the active military that I was in situations where I was operating well past my mental and physical limits, and awfully glad for the training that had prepared me for these situations. By the way, I hear that in boot camp now, you get 8 straight hours of sleep a night. Wow, do they fluff your pillows for you too before the DIs tuck you into bed with a warm cocoa? So unfortunately, I won't get sent to a real boot camp for 30 days. Instead, I have to live my life as if I were at boot. That means trying to recreate the experience as close as possible in my civilian life, which means a lot of sacrifices are going to have to be made. It's intriguing, really, because I know boot affects you psychologically, but this time I'll get to actually make those observations and write them down. I've taken some measures to make this experience as close as possible to the real thing, though obviously still pretty far from it. First, I've cleared my schedule of any social events. In Boot, you don't get any liberty, or at least I didn't, though today you guys probably got weekend water park trips and passes to the fair when you were feeling blue. During my 2 months at Boot, I think I got a grand total of 48 hours of liberty the entire time. So if I didn't get to dip out to the movies back then, I'm not going to now. Secondly, I'm going to leave the apartment I share with my girlfriend and move into my friend's place for the duration. She's a travel blogger and gone frequently to work for magazines, so I'll stay alone at her place. I got to contact family once a week if I was lucky, so I can't be in contact with the girlfriend this whole time except for 1 hour every week. That includes no texting. Third, I'll be recreating all the PT I used to do, and even doing extra PT as if my unit was being punished, which happens all the time. Fourth, no amenities for the duration except books. No TV, no internet, no video games, just reading books for entertainment, and that's it. I'll check in at the end of each week as usual. To be honest, this is not a challenge I'm looking forward to. At Real Boot Camp, you got camaraderie of 30 to 40 other guys, but here I'll pretty much be alone for the whole duration. This one's gonna be tough. Day 7. First week down, and man, I remember now all the annoying things I hated about boot camp, though I'm glad there's aspects I'm not having to relive. So my days start at 04:45, exactly like in Boot. I don't have a very pissed off drill sergeant dragging me out of bed by my foot though, so instead I found some audio recordings of drill instructors screaming and yelling, and each night I set the alarm that automatically triggers the stereo system to play a mix track I made at very loud volume. It's disturbingly close to the real thing, and I about had a heart attack the first morning. After waking up, I give myself 10 minutes to make my bed. Yep, hospital corners and everything. I never got the art of hospital corners down, and I used to get yelled at and punished for it constantly. Along with making my bed, I have to be outside and ready for PT by the end of 10 minutes. If I'm late, I punish myself with extra PT. Then I do a morning routine alternating between push-ups, jumping jacks, sit-ups, burpees, and mountain climbers, which are all the exercises I can remember. And then I go for a 2-mile run while listening to cadences on my earbuds. For those of you who don't know, cadences are those songs that military formations sing as they run, which makes running harder because you're singing while out of breath. But in a weird way, it makes it so much easier because you sort of become part of a machine. You hypnotize yourself into just running and the exhaustion seems far away. After PT, I give myself 20 minutes for the famous 3 S's: shit, shower, and shave. Those 20 minutes also include completely cleaning the bathroom so that it's spotless. I then inspect the bathroom, and if I find anything out of place or dirty, I punish myself. Yep, more PT. Honestly, at this point, I'm starting to feel like a masochist. By the way, if you're on your way to boot and you get assigned to clean the toilets or sinks, after you scrub them, rub the porcelain down with your bare hands. Yes, even the toilet. It's gross, but the oils in your skin will make the porcelain shine and make any stray pubic hairs stick to your hand. Just make sure you wash your hands thoroughly afterwards, without messing up a sink all over again, of course. Although, I don't know, maybe in boot camp today they hire maids to clean your toilets and make your bed for you. My absolute least favorite part comes next. Breakfast. Back in boot, we had to eat according to a system. You would form a line along with everyone else, maintaining the position of attention the entire time you were in line. Drill instructors would wander through the line and very swiftly punish anyone whose position of attention wasn't perfect. We shared lunchtime with our entire company though, so there would be hundreds of us, perfectly silent and waiting our turn as the line slowly shuffled forward. Sometimes you'd wait half an hour to finally get your food and sit. When you did get your food though, you had to fill in rows of tables with people starting from the front of the chow hall to the back, and nobody at your table could sit and eat until the entire table was full. Then you would all sit as one and begin eating. You had to eat fast, too, because you only had as long to eat until the table in the row across from you began to fill up. The moment that table was full and those guys sat down, your ass had better be getting up to trash your tray. All in all, you had about 3 to 4 minutes to eat as much as you could. I distinctly remember sneaking food out of the chow hall, and I never got caught once. So I give myself 4 minutes to eat, and I've tried to recreate a food menu for breakfast, lunch, and dinner as close to possible as what I remember eating. For breakfast, that means a lot of eggs and oatmeal. As soon as the alarm rings, I trash whatever I didn't eat. This first week I found out that I'm definitely rusty and have gone hungry quite a bit. It's amazing how fast you learn to eat when you need to. For the rest of my day, I have a strict time set for lunch and dinner, as well as lights out. I also had a friend who programs whip up an app for me as a favor, which randomly sets off an alarm throughout the day. The frequency and timing of the alarm are totally random, but I use it to simulate the countless times throughout the day at basic that you're getting yelled at and disciplined with PT. So every time the alarm goes off, I drop and alternate between push-ups, sit-ups, and burpees. Burpees suck, by the way. I don't watch TV, cruise the internet, or anything like that. Instead, I let myself read for entertainment, and of course I work on my writing. All in all, the experience is definitely not like the real thing, but I feel like I've recreated most of the highlights. The girlfriend is taking this much harder than I am though, especially because she was only allowed to talk to me for 1 hour today at the end of the week. She asked to visit, but that's not possible, so we can only talk on the phone. I think she really misses me. Oh, and she was not happy about me shaving my head because, yep, I did that too. Keeping a buzz cut is pretty integral to the experience, and I haven't shaved a head since I left basic, mostly because I'm seriously ugly when I'm bald. So very grateful I have great hair genes. Day 14. It turns out that without all the yelling, marching around, time on the firing range, classroom instruction, the boot camp is pretty damn boring. Not being allowed to watch TV, play video games, cruise the internet, or even just go for a drink with friends is extremely boring. I remember now that this was the part I hated most about boot. I didn't care about the yelling and screaming and constant PT, but the isolation and being cut off from the outside world was a killer. If it's hard on me though, it turns out it's way harder on the girlfriend than I ever thought. She has to leave frequently for different movies or shows that she works on, sometimes even for a month or two at a time. But we always have Skype, FaceTime, texting, phone calls. I even send her handwritten letters. Also, if she's gone for more than 2 weeks, I typically fly out to her or she'll fly to me. Now though, there's practically zero contact between us except for our 1 hour week on Sunday. I can tell she's really lonely and she even sounds depressed. This week I kicked up the morning and afternoon PT to 3-mile runs because 2 miles is for the first week just to condition you. I really super hate running. Always did, and the military loves to make you run. But I found out that listening to cadences actually makes it easier. I've been slipping back into that weird hypnotic state I used to operate in. Kinda wish I had a group to run with so we could actually sing cadences together. It would make it easier. The alarm app on my phone is driving me insane, although I guess that's the point. Sometimes it goes off 5 minutes after it just went off, so I have to drop down and do another 30 push-ups or burpees. I randomly rotate. But I guess that's sort of what happens when I was in boot. Somebody was always messing up, and the military loves to use group punishment to fix mistakes. I've also been waking up each night to do 1 hour fire watch, which I randomly rotate through. So for 1 hour, I walk through my friend's empty condo with a flashlight in my hand, and if anyone could see me, they'd probably think I'm the world's biggest weirdo. I am recreating a boot camp experience for the sake of an online entertainment show though, so I guess I am pretty weird. There's not much to report, except boredom. Luckily, I'm an avid reader, but I miss the outside world. Day 21. Last week I wrote the girlfriend a letter because I missed her, even though geographically speaking we're only about 8 miles apart. The mailman that delivered that letter must have assumed I was the laziest person in the world. She sent me one back and I immediately remembered how morale boosting it was to get mail in basic, and during my months of training after. If you know anyone in basic training or that's going soon, do them a favor and send them a letter. That goes double if you know anyone who's deployed overseas. Oh, and send the person overseas baby wipes. Seriously, baby wipes are a godsend when you're living in a hole in the desert. Just don't send anyone in basic baby wipes or anything else. One guy in my unit got sent a tin of cookies by his mother, and the drill instructors harassed him for days over it. And they ate his cookies right in front of him. Man, now that I think about it, being a drill would have been a lot of fun. This week, the running went up to 4 miles, once in the morning and once in the late afternoon. Honestly, at this point, I might be confusing my basic training with my training for the various schools I went to after basic. But I know for a fact that we did a lot of running either way. I've always stayed in good shape, but because I hate running, doing the 2 miles the first week was killing me. Now I'm kind of surprising myself with the way I'm able to cope with 4-mile runs. I mean, I'm still smoked at the end of it, but I'm not dying the way I thought I would be. This combined with the very fast eating, remember I get 4 minutes for each meal, has made me shed a lot of extra pounds. My abs are absolutely popping now, which makes sense since I basically run like an idiot all day long. I've even learned to eat faster, and I typically can finish my entire meal by the time the alarm goes off. It's not pretty, but I manage it. Food in basic is important, which is why they feed you very high-calorie stuff to help your body cope with all the PT. You're always left hungry though, and that's why if you did ever pull kitchen duty, oh man, that's a godsend. Yes, you have to clean thousands of dirty dishes and pots and pans, then scrub down an industrial-sized kitchen, but your reward is you get to eat whatever you want as slow as you want. Kitchen duty, or KP as we called it, was a godsend, and I would stuff my face every time I could. My morning breakfast routine reminded me of an incident from Basic, though which still haunts me to this day. One of the guys at my table was sick, really badly congested, and probably had the flu or a really bad cold. As we're shoveling food into our mouths, suddenly he stops and his body jerks, and before he can do anything, he sneezes completely involuntarily. More snot than I've ever seen in my life flew out of his nose and into his oatmeal. Poor kid was so terrified of the drill instructors and so damn hungry that he ate it. He ate oatmeal loaded with mucus. It was the single most disgusting thing I've ever seen, and I randomly remember it to this day. In non-vomity food news, this week I've changed my midday meal to MREs, which I snagged from a surplus store nearby. At this point in Basic, we started spending a lot of time in the field, and that meant no hot meals, just MREs. Honestly, I've never hated MREs the way some people do. In fact, I always kind of liked them. The jalapeno cheese is off the chain, and I remember that it and the cocoa powder was basically currency. You could literally buy things from people using them. 1 week and 2 days left, and honestly, I can't wait to get back to my normal life. See you guys at the end. Day 30. Today, I finally came home, and the moment I walked through the door, the girlfriend literally threw herself on me, very quickly followed by the dog. She then saw my shaved head and made a gagging sound, which I totally agreed with. My revisit to boot camp days is finally over, and I'm very happy about that. I honestly feel it would have been a lot easier to actually go back to boot camp instead of do this weird experiment alone in isolation. The camaraderie of the other recruits really makes the experience in isolation much more manageable. What I experienced was basically very disciplined hermitdom. Doing this, though, did hit on a lot of the core points of the boot camp experience. You really do start to feel completely isolated from the world. In fact, you feel like you aren't even a part of it anymore. That's how complete our quarantine from the real world was. When you deploy, you still get news, TV, internet, phone calls, emails, all kinds of ways to stay in touch. Unless you happen to go really far downrange, of course. But at boot, we got none of that. And I definitely nailed that isolation and loneliness. Stepping back into the real world is kind of gonna be weird, let alone eating food at a leisurely pace or even eating what I want. I was very strict about my meals and stuck to a plan that resembled what I remember from boot, but now I get to eat what I want again. Tomorrow I'm hitting in and out the moment they open, and it's gonna take a SWAT team to get me out. I've reflexively found myself saying sir and ma'am a lot now again. I occasionally got to interact with the outside world during my experience, like having to go to appointments or grocery shopping, and I was calling people sir and ma'am constantly. You can always tell when a kid is fresh from boot because every other word out of their mouth is sir or ma'am. There are a lot of things I couldn't simulate, like an FTX or field training exercise. That's typically a big part of the final weeks at boot camp when you go out into the field and live in the weeds for a few days. The constant stress of being yelled at and having aggressive drill instructors in your face is another factor I couldn't simulate, which I feel is pretty much the cornerstone experience of boot camp. The constant PT, though, is something I definitely did, and I had to tell you, it's really easier when you're part of a group. There's something to be said for the way the military makes you do PT with your unit. Being part of a machine, one cog out of many, makes even physically exhausting tasks manageable. I made a deliberate choice to leave the military after 6 years to find a more peaceful life, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss it intensely at times. Especially the part where you find yourself operating so far past your limits that you look back and can't even see them anymore, and your team is right there beside you. The first time you experience that moment, it's something you just don't forget, and you typically first get your own moment in boot. Depending on what your job ends up being in the military, you might find yourself there often, and it's terrifying, exhilarating, and the most alive you'll ever feel. It's also addicting, and eventually you'll hit that point where you'll have to choose whether you want a shot at living a normal life or not, if your luck doesn't run out first. There's a wonderful new neighbor that just moved in down the block, a middle-aged man who seems to always have a polite word to say to everyone as you come across his path. His front lawn is always perfectly manicured, and his small home seems to always be kept in impeccable order. He's charming and can hold a conversation on a variety of topics, and it's clear he's extremely intelligent. Then one night, he invites you over to dinner. Yeah, just you. In fact, he's insistent on this. Strangely though, he doesn't bother to ask you what your appetite is like, or what you like or dislike to eat. Actually, he doesn't even mention the menu at all. As you enter his home, he quickly locks the door behind you and ushers you into his very chic dining room. Even offers to pour you a nice glass of Chianti. Right about then is when it slowly starts to dawn on you why your kindly new neighbor, Mr. Lecter, was it, never bothered to mention the menu. Because it's you that's on the menu. So you've been taken hostage by a super intelligent, mass-murdering, cannibalistic serial killer that's hell-bent on making you his main course. How in the world are you going to get out of this one? As usual, in order to defeat your enemy, you must understand your enemy. Hannibal Lecter was born on January 20th, 1933, in an ancient castle in Lithuania, the name of the town being one that we didn't feel like torturing our narrator with trying to pronounce. Thanks, guys. Born into a wealthy order of Lithuanian aristocrats, Lecter comes from a long line of distinguished European royalty and very clearly carries the nobility of his birth in the way he speaks and moves. It's rumored that Lecter was also related to a ruthless 12th century man known as Giuliano Bevisangue, who was himself a descendant of the infamous Machiavelli line, and whose name literally means blood drinker. Though Lecter furiously pursued research into any possible links to Mr. Blood Drinker, he was unable to confirm the heritage, and we can't blame him because if we could claim a familial relationship to someone named Blood Drinker, we would legally change our name immediately. An extremely gifted child, Lecter was beloved by his father, who invested greatly into his education, teaching him English and German along with his native Lithuanian. When he was 6 years old, his mother gave birth to his sister, Mishka, and the two very quickly cemented a strong bond. Unfortunately, Lecter's childhood bliss would be shattered when on July 23, 1941, the Nazis overran his family castle as part of Operation Barbarossa, the Nazi plan to have the Soviets destroy them completely. Lecter was forced to flee into a lodge in the forest where his father was forced to live off the land, feeding on wild geese caught by his father, whom then taught Lecter to hunt. In hindsight, that might have been a bad idea, but identifying cannibalistic serial killing tendencies in young children is notoriously difficult to do. One day though, a Soviet tank stopped by the lodge and the crew demanded water. Suddenly, a German Stuka fighter bomber struck the tank, blowing it up and killing Lecter's entire family, except for himself and his little sister. Then a few days later, a group of Lithuanians who had joined the Nazis stumbled upon the lodge and held Lecter and his sister captive. When food ran out and the winter seemed like it would refuse to let up, the group killed and ate Mishka, which scarred young Hannibal Lecter for life. Later, he would say that this destroyed his faith in God and that he no longer believed there was any real justice in the world. When the captors left the lodge, Lecter was left to wander the forest alone, with a shackle around his neck. That shackle would end up scarring him for life, the skin around his neck rubbing raw and never truly healing. Eventually, a group of Soviet tankers found Lecter and brought him back to his family's castle, which had been turned into an orphanage. And there, Lecter stayed until he was adopted by his aunt. Falling in love with his aunt, Lecter would commit his first murder when a local butcher insulted her, and Lecter stabbed him to death, then sliced off his cheeks and ate them. His first act of cannibalism. Though the Lithuanian men who had eaten his sister claimed that he had also partaken in the feast, so the point is a bit murky. What is extremely clear, though, is that from his first murder, Lecter would grow up to become a prodigal murderer and cannibal until his capture in 1975. Though the court would find him insane, it ultimately spared him the death penalty, and he was instead sent to the Baltimore State Hospital for the criminally insane to serve out 9 consecutive life terms. He would eventually escape even his custom-made high-security cell, which he earned after ripping out a nurse's eye, dislocating her jaw, and biting off and eating her tongue. For his escape, Lecter would top his previous brutality though by severely wounding a police officer and then skinning his face off and wearing it as a mask as he fled to safety. Physically speaking, Hannibal Lecter is on the wrong side of middle age, but is by no means a weak old man. His sheer brutality is enough to see him rip people's tongues off with his teeth, and that kind of raw violence and the willingness to commit it is a strength all its own. The fact that such animal savagery is backed up by one of society's keenest intellects is all the more terrifying. So just how in the world are you going to defeat him? First, forget about trying to outsmart Lecter. We don't care how clever you think you are in the comments section or how sick your burns are. Lecter is on a totally different level and will outthink you 3 ways from Friday. In fact, trying to outwit Lecter has often been his victims' greatest mistakes. That and falling for another of Lecter's unique talents, hiding his violent predisposition under the guise of civility. We've all seen the movie where the victim realizes that the next-door neighbor is the serial killer, which means you, the audience, knows he's the killer, and the victim knows he's the killer, and the killer knows he's the killer, and that the victim knows he's the killer. And yet in every single movie, the killer will politely invite the victim into a situation that places them in danger, and the victim agrees. Why? Because of the social contract we all buy into that forces us to maintain the illusion of polite civility, even when we're about to have our face eaten by a cannibal. Lecter is a pro at using this unwitting social contract to lure his victims to their own demise. And you can bet that even as you're realizing that this wonderful new neighbor is going to eat your most delicate bits and pieces, he's still going to try to use this social pressure to lower your defenses and seal your doom. Instead, we're going to take a page out of Lecter's own book and tap into the more wild side of mankind. It's said that civilization is nothing more than a thin veneer over the true savage nature of man, and that it takes very little to pull that veneer back and unleash the animal within. Many sociologists fear what would happen to modern civilization should our daily conveniences fail en masse one day and stay down for a prolonged period of time. How long would civilization stay, well, civil if the power went out for a week, for a month, for a year? How about fresh water pumped directly into your tap? How long would the average person stay polite and conscientious of the law as resources run out? Our personal guess is that would be a matter of days, and the events like the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in August of 2005 bear witness to how quickly even our mightiest cities can fall into chaos and lawlessness. So to win this fight, you're gonna have to get to Katrina levels of uncivilized behavior. You're gonna have to make yourself an animal. Pretend PUBG's servers were down for an entire day, or that YouTube was failing to post your brilliant comeback on every single comment section fight you got into. Get into touch with what it would feel like to have the conveniences and indulgences of modern life stripped away. Let that rage build and push you over the edge. To beat Lecter, you're gonna have to get brutal, like gouge your eyes and rip your tongues out and eat them level of brutal. Sheer animal ferocity is going to win you this fight, because you can't outthink Lecter and you can't outmaneuver him. Sure, you think you can get up off the table and run away, maybe find a weapon to arm yourself with, but you're inside his house that he invited you into. Don't you think he's planned every possible scenario out already? You're sitting in a big, fat trap, and now its jaws are closing around you, and in minutes, Lecter is going to be grilling you up and storing the leftovers in Tupperware. But you can take advantage of Lecter's hubris, because the last thing he would expect is that you would be willing to forego our polite social contract and jump straight into an animalistic frenzy. See, Lecter doesn't just believe he's smarter than you, he believes he's more savage than you. So you need to prove him wrong. Leap up onto that table and howl at the moon. Grab the nearest sharp object and commit yourself to a fight to the death. Then, when you survive your deathmatch, you'll have plenty of time to get back in touch with your humanity from inside prison, because you did initiate the attack after all, and good luck convincing a jury that the kindly, charismatic Dr. Lecter was actually going to eat you. Welcome to another special challenge episode of the Infographics Show. Today we're taking on the obesity issue. While global stereotypes like to paint Americans as a bunch of fatties, in actuality obesity figures from around the world show that weight gain is a problem in most modern nations. The reasoning is pretty simple. A modern economy brings modern jobs, modern conveniences, and modern not-so-healthy food. Modern jobs means mostly blue-collar work for most people, which includes a lot of sitting around in the office, not getting much exercise. And when coupled with the modern conveniences of video games, on-demand video, and a billion cable channels, coupled with modern fast food or delivery right to your doorstep, this all spells disaster for expanding waistlines around the world. But what about soda? What role does it have in this modern weight epidemic? Let's find out today as we challenge your favorite guinea pig and our least important staff writer to drink only soda for a whole month. For science! Day 1. Drink only soda for an entire month. This one didn't go over well with the girlfriend at all. Like most Los Angeles actresses, she's a total health and fitness nut. And like most Los Angeles actress boyfriends, I have to partake in at least 50% of that nuttiness. I mean, I'm generally active and in decent shape anyways, but I'm not a total health freak, and I don't even know what kale tastes like, but I'm willing to bet it's terrible. Soda is, as far as I'm aware, not even allowed in our refrigerator. And even though I actually like drinking Coke, I tend to just order it at restaurants. Luckily, the girlfriend isn't a total Fourth Reich health Nazi, and she doesn't really mind, but when I told her I could only drink soda for an entire month, she got this very weird, dead look in her eyes. Then she very slowly narrowed them at me, but didn't say a word. It was terrifying. She just sort of left for work without saying anything and then texted me from the car saying, "Your job is stupid." So, as usual, I did my initial research, and it turns out drinking soda is pretty god-awful for you. So it's hard to blame her response. It destroys the enamel of your teeth, which makes it easier for your teeth to rot. It raises, then crashes your blood pressure, can lead to diabetes, and of course, is pretty much guaranteed to make you gain weight. Apparently, every 3,500 calories extra you consume per week can lead to 1 pound of weight gain, and calories definitely add up fast. I did some math and looked up the calories on average I eat per week. Thanks to California's laws, figuring out total calories of everything you eat is actually pretty easy. Turns out I'm taking in an average about 2,500 a day, mostly because of weekend meals. During the weekdays, I typically cook something pretty healthy for me and the girlfriend, but on weekends we cheat by eating out. We both exercise though, and my weight is pretty stable, so I'm guessing that the amount I exercise totals out with the average of 2,500 calories a day. But that is, of course, without drinking much soda at all, maybe 2 a week from eating out. Now I'm gonna have to drink only soda, not even any water, so that's for sure going to skyrocket my calories. They say you're supposed to drink about 8 12-ounce glasses of water a day to stay healthy, but that figure doesn't account for all the water you actually get from your food. So a more realistic estimate is more like 5 glasses of water a day. Assuming I did the soda equivalent to that, it would be 140 calories times 5, or an extra 700 calories per day, or 4,900 per week. Yikes! That's well over the 3,500 needed for a pound of fat. Of course, that's just calories though, which isn't the full picture because each soda, I plan on drinking Cokes by the way, includes a whopping 39 grams of sugar, or 78% of your daily allotment. That's going to majorly increase my weight gain potential, not to mention pave a pretty strong foundation for diabetes. I could just go with, say, Coke Zero, which is supposedly healthier, but A, it tastes like donkey sweat, and B, it seems more fair to go for the real stuff. So as usual, I'll update once a week and try to keep a total tally of how many sodas I drink per week, along with the total amount of calories I'm consuming and any weight gain effects. Day 1 weight is 163 pounds, svelte, sexy, and with just a little bit of love handles. Sue me. I'm not the actor in the house, and I don't need to set unrealistic physical expectations in front of the camera all the time. Love handles is what peak performance looks like, people. Deal with it. Anyways, here we go. See you in a week. Day 7. The refrigerator is stacked with red cans of Coke, all gleaming and shiny and frosty cold. I gotta admit, it's kind of beautiful in a way. I cannot stress how much the girlfriend really hates this challenge. Just for laughs, I built a Coke fortress around her vegetables, but apparently I was the only person who thought that was funny. Drinking only soda is weird. I catch myself going for some water out of thirst, and I have to remind myself, nope, get a Coke instead. I could cheat, but integrity is pretty important to me. Now, I actually really like Coke, so this challenge didn't seem all that bad, but I gotta admit that I'm getting a bit tired of the flavor. I bought lemon juice to squirt in each can in order to zing the taste up a bit, and it worked pretty well, but I think I'll try limes next just to keep the flavor from getting boring. Maybe I'll even switch to Pepsi, but if Coke Zero tastes like donkey sweat, Pepsi tastes like a donkey drinking the sweat of another donkey and then sweating the sweat out itself. This week, I've drunk 3,640 calories worth of Coke, which is just a bit more than 3 Cokes a day. I find that I'm not drinking as much Coke as I would water. I think I'm just naturally avoiding drinking as much Coke as possible. My weight's ticked up from 163 pounds to 165. Not bad and well within the natural pound or two fluctuation. I'll see how this next week pans out. Day 14. This week I drank 4,060 calories worth of Coke. Definitely a bit more than last week. The aluminum recycling is really stacking up. By the way, did you know aluminum is one of the few things worth recycling? Look it up. Anyways, my weight shot up to 168, which is definitely not an accident. It's pretty obvious soda is having a serious effect on my weight gain. Surprisingly, I'm not getting all that sick of the taste though. I mean, I do have to use lemon or lime occasionally, but it's still okay to me. Then again, I did used to eat pretty terrible MREs for months at a time in the military, so I think my palate's become pretty easy to please. On the home front, I cannot stress just how unhappy the girlfriend is with this challenge. She pinched a love handle yesterday when I got out of the shower and she just flatly said, "They're getting bigger, gross." She's also been sending me emails from work about the terrible health effects of soda and planning a crash diet for as soon as this month is up. I think every time she gets a break from filming, she's firing off a new email to warn me that I'm basically going to die because of this. Too bad for her, she's not my insurance beneficiary. Too bad for everyone that I don't have one. Crap, I should get that sorted. Day 21. So one of the effects of soda is sugar high followed by sugar crash. This is because sodas flood your circulatory system with a bunch of sugar that your body isn't ready for. In the wild, coming across a huge amount of sugar is basically not an issue our biology ever had to deal with. So now when you flood your body with concentrated sugar, your body freaks out. It immediately overproduces hormones to lower your blood sugar because it thinks that you're literally about to die, which makes your blood sugar levels drop to below normal levels, hence the crash. Turns out if you drink nothing but soda all the time, your body thinks it's under sugar attack all the time, and those crashes get really bad. I think I'm taking more naps each day now than I've ever taken before, and typically I'm off to nap every 4 to 5 hours. Luckily, I have the house to myself during the day, so it's not a big deal, but it's cutting into my productivity big time. I also kind of feel like my heart might explode, or my arteries, one or the other. I guess this is my blood pressure spiking, and I'm realizing now that I should have bought one of those blood pressure monitors if I even had any idea of how to use it. My breath is also worse. I guess that's the sugar feeding all the hungry little bacteria in your mouth, and I'm having to brush my teeth a few times each day. Although to be honest, I already was, because I don't even want to think about the plaque holocaust this soda is putting my teeth through. Turns out one of the side effects of drinking nothing but soda for a month is a very grumpy girlfriend. I know she hates it because she's concerned for my health, which is actually kinda sweet. She's already meal planned a crash diet to detox me from all this soda. I reminded her that detoxing, not a real thing, and only a trendy term that West Hollywood hipsters use to sell you overpriced health nonsense. And she took my soda out of my hand, put her finger over the hole, shook it up and, I'm not kidding about this, sprayed me with it. Then, cool as a fresh, all-organic cucumber, she just turned around and walked away. I think this soda experiment has literally broken my health nut girlfriend. Anyway, this week I drank 4,200 calories and my weight jumped up to 170, which is alarming. I realized it's not just the soda though, because it makes me so tired. I haven't been exercising nearly as much and have been skipping entire days, so all the calories from everything else I eat is adding up. Thankfully, there's only 1 week left. Day 30. I am not sad at all that this challenge is over. Drinking soda for a month straight sounds pretty alright at first, then it gets kinda meh, and then very quickly becomes a bit of a nightmare. I don't think we appreciate just how much non-soda we drink, even heavy soda drinkers. Sure, you might down a few sodas a day, but imagine drinking nothing, and I mean nothing, but soda for a month straight. Wake up in the middle of the night, thirsty? Soda. Eat something dry and need to wash it down? Soda. And by the way, washing food down with soda is pretty terrible. Thirsty after working out? Soda. Or at least try working out, because I've definitely noticed that I can't go as long or hard as I could a month ago. I don't know if it's the psychological weight of knowing that I'm basically destroying my body with all the sugar, or if it's actually making me sluggish, but I can't exercise as hard as I used to. Strength is basically fine, but anything that requires endurance, forget about it. I'm getting winded just thinking about hitting the track tomorrow on my first day back to normal. My weight is still at 173 pounds, which means that in 1 month I've gained 10 pounds. And that's while still mostly exercising. I can't imagine what my weight would be if I had drank nothing but soda and not exercised, but I honestly think I could have gained easily twice as many pounds. The constant soda makes me feel pretty terrible. I literally feel sometimes like my heart is going to beat out of my chest. And I swear my blood has become the consistency of syrup. During the course of this challenge, I've drank approximately 16,800 calories worth of soda, or 1 entire week's worth of normal caloric intake. And I know I've been pacing myself, typically drinking 3 to 4 sodas a day. The girlfriend couldn't be happier that this whole thing is over, and she's promised me a crash diet of uber-healthy pre-made meals that she's created herself until my weight gets back to normal. Challenge over. Summary: drinking nothing but soda for a month is pretty terrible for your body, kills your energy, makes you gain a bunch of weight, and really irritates your girlfriend. The public bathroom. Is there anything more reviled and disgusting, yet completely frustratingly necessary in our civilization than the communal pot? Study after study have shown that public restrooms are germ factories. And if you've seen some of our own episodes on the subject, then you probably haven't used a public restroom since. But what if that was your only option? What if your sacred porcelain throne was forever out of reach and your only recourse was to use a public bathroom instead? Every single day, every single time. We're once more delving into the deepest scientific mysteries known to man and forcing your favorite and our least important writer to use only public bathrooms for a week straight. Day 1. Thanks, YouTube. Really, I mean it. Thank you so much for feeding the Satanists who run the Infographics show even more ridiculous ways to make my life as inconvenient, disgusting, and painful as possible. What's next, YouTube? Challenge: I ate only live hornets for a month straight? I should probably keep my mouth shut and not give Infographics any ideas, but I'm pretty sure even they wouldn't go that far. Not gonna lie though, I had second and then third thoughts about that last statement. So here's the thing, my girlfriend used to hate these challenges and sometimes she still does. The no lying for a week pretty much torpedoed our social life, and she made me sleep on the sofa when I couldn't shower for a month straight. But lately she's kind of been enjoying these new challenges. I don't know if she sees it as a payback for all my other shenanigans, but I swear I see the little devil horns growing on her head when I tell her things like, "Hey babe, guess what? I can't use the bathroom in the house for the next week." I swear, she's in cahoots with the Infographics staff. Okay, so no house bathroom for a week. I had to sit down and think out the logistics of this one, because obviously this means I'll have to be trying to find a public bathroom every single time I have to use one. The dog gets to pee and poop outside and nobody bats an eye, but I'm pretty sure that if I tried the same thing, someone would call the police. Talk about double standards, it's the exact same stuff. So, in order to make this feasible, I plotted out all the local businesses and their hours of operation. Luckily, I happen to live literally right next door to a 7-Eleven, so popping over next door in the middle of the night for a whiz is no problem. I go in there all the time now for years, so I'm pretty familiar with the guys behind the counter. And I think it'll be no big deal to use the bathroom even in the middle of the night. There's also a Starbucks across the street, which is great because their bathroom is open in the seating area as opposed to the 7-Eleven bathroom, which is in the employees only area. That means I don't have to ask permission at Starbucks, and I've already decided on a cover story for using the bathroom everywhere else. My apartment is undergoing renovations. Luckily for me, I've always been on good terms with the guys who run the 7-Eleven next door, so I'm pretty sure I'll have reliable access to that toilet for emergencies. There is also a gas station across the street, but again, that one's the type where you have to ask for a key, and to be perfectly honest, I think I've been inside it like twice in the last 7 years I've lived here. I think my strategy is going to be to spread out the bathrooms I use so that I don't wear out my welcome anywhere, or at least so people don't think I'm the biggest weirdo on planet Earth. I think the gas station would be good for 2, maybe 3 visits tops though, just because I'm really not familiar with the staff there. There is a large grocery store also across the street, but theirs are also the types of bathrooms you have to ask to use. I go there pretty regularly, but after my wearing women's makeup for a week and the no lying for a week stunts, I'm not sure how welcome I am to be frequenting their bathrooms. They already probably think I'm the weirdest person in town, and I really don't want to add to my reputation. There is thankfully a Carl's Jr. also across the street though, which I can use at any time because they are a 24/7 restaurant and the bathrooms there are also public. Okay, so I have my battle plan and I've plotted out my number 2 locations for the next week. Honestly, doing all this work to figure out where I'm going to be dropping deuces for the next 7 days kind of made me realize that my life is very weird. I can just imagine trying to explain my job to someone. "Oh, how was work this week?" Well, I had to calculate where I was going to do my bathroom business for the last 7 days. You know, normal 9 to 5 stuff. See you guys in a few days. Day 4. Okay, well, I'm not entirely sure what kind of resources Infographics has at its disposal, but I'm really trying to not believe that they have the power to shut down an entire restaurant while simultaneously breaking the toilet in a completely separate venue. Here's the thing, remember how earlier this week I said I was going to use Carl's Jr. and the 7-Eleven for most of my around-the-clock toilet needs? Well, on day 2, the Carl's Jr., which has been happily doing business right across the street for 7 years that I've been living here, suddenly closed up. A sign on the door says that it's closed down for good, and won't you please visit the other location that's only 3 freaking miles away. Talk about a wrench in the plans. But wait, because as our good friend Billy Mays, may he rest in peace, would say, there's more. On day 3, the toilet at 7-Eleven broke. My primary and then my backup locations for round-the-clock toilet access are officially gone. And what's worse is that those were the only 24-hour spots that are open around here. The gas station across the street only leaves the pumps on at night, so no employee inside. I've always loved where we live at because even though it's in the middle of the city, it's in an area that's not too developed with businesses and is mostly residential. That means no traffic and no giant office buildings and all the noise that goes along with city life. Instead, we have parks, trees, grass, and places to play fetch with your dog. It also means that if you're dumb enough to have a job that requires you not to do your business at home for a full week, you're kind of SOL when it comes to late-night bathrooms to use. It's not like I can just go knock on my neighbor's door at 2 a.m. and ask to use the can. So I found a solution for my late night problems, and it's not perfect, and I'm not particularly happy about it, but, well, it works for me. I got the inspiration from my dog, and I can bet most of you already know where this is going. See, he gets to pee and poo basically anywhere he pleases as long as it's outside. And like the stupid humans that we are, we've come along behind him and pick up his poop with plastic bags, which really begs the question of who's the actual master in the relationship. No, I'm not going in plastic bags, but believe you me, it's not like the thought didn't cross my mind. Instead, I'm going all natural. There's a large empty lot a short walk across the street from my apartment complex where huge power lines run through. It's fenced off with a low fence and ringed on both sides by houses with their own walls or fences. There's a keep out sign posted there because of the big power pylons and some waterworks plumbing, but I usually ignore it and take the dog in there to throw the ball and let him run around off leash. This is my new bathroom, and it's perfect because the trees at the front that block the line of sight from the field to the road, and it's the perfect place for incognito poos. But I'm not gonna lie, I feel like a criminal sneaking off to drop a deuce in secret and out in public. Again, the dog does it literally every day, but I'm pretty sure it's a criminal offense if I got caught. As far as my regular public restroom use goes though, oh man, it's bad. What is it with people that when they get into a public restroom, they literally lose their damn minds? You can take a normal civilized human being who regularly uses a toilet at home and then stick them in a public restroom, and they can walk away leaving a catastrophe behind. It's like people literally don't understand how to use sinks and turn them on full blast so water goes everywhere, or like they've just had a hand transplant surgery and their pee goes literally everywhere. And don't get me started on the biggest mystery of all. Why in the blue blazes do people not flush their turds after dropping them? What could possibly compel a normal person to drop a deuce in a public toilet and then literally just walk away, like it's the normal thing to do? I get that most public toilets are automatic, which by the way I suspect are only automatic because of this exact problem, but I'm pretty sure your toilet at home isn't automatic. You know how to flush. Why do you have to be this way? But the biggest mystery is when there's no toilet paper in the bowl. That's right, somebody just did their business and then literally just walked away, just drop and go. No wipe, no flush, just plop and turbo on out of the bathroom. Day 7. I have to hand it to the Infographics show because they consistently make me grateful for the things I have in my life by denying me their use. I never failed to appreciate a shower lately after that month-long fiasco of no showers, and I practically tell my phone I love you every morning after a week of no phone use. My home toilet is no different. I don't have an excuse though. I've been deployed before when I was in the military and I'm no stranger to lacking facilities. I guess I've gone soft though because I definitely have not appreciated my toilet as much as I should have. And this week of using nothing but public restrooms has taught me the error of my overprivileged ways. What can I say about my experience? How can I possibly sum this up for you viewers at home? It's equal parts terrible and disgusting. Someone once said that you can judge how civilized a society is by the way they treat their prisoners, but they were dead wrong. Dead wrong. You can judge how civilized a society is by the state of its public restrooms, and the state of America's public restrooms are an absolute nightmare. If aliens came to Earth and wanted to know how enlightened they were, they would step into a public restroom and immediately rush out, laying waste to our entire planet with their death rays just to keep us from spreading into the galaxy. We are Neanderthals who after tens of thousands of years haven't yet figured out what proper bathroom etiquette is. Here's some simple rules based off my observations of public restrooms over the last week. First, flush. If your toilet isn't automatic, hit the flush lever. If it is automatic and it doesn't flush, hit the button. There's always one. Then calmly make your way to the sink and simply turn on the water to a moderate and reasonable pressure. Don't parkour across the stalls and blast the water like you're putting out a 7-story fire. Then, take a single paper towel and dry your hands. Don't rip up every paper towel out of the holder and start to shred it into confetti like you're throwing a bathroom-themed Brazilian carnival. Oh, and if you need to number 2, then for the sake of everyone around you, wipe before you leave. How some people haven't figured this one out yet is beyond me. You're cooped up at home watching your favorite videos on the Infographics show. You love the ones where that guy does crazy stunts and challenges. You can't believe the things he gets up to. You're watching the one where he spends 24 hours in the bathtub as his body gets more and more wrinkled and his body gets more sore from lying against the hard edge of the tub. Fortunately, his body doesn't suffer any real ill effects from the super long bath, aside from some oddly loose skin that'll fit back into place perfectly once the body dries out. You're bored without too much to do at home and you wonder, could you top this crazy stunt? You're not going to spend 2 or more days in the bath, so you instead think about what else you can take a bath in. What would it be like to take a 24-hour bath in soda? Would the sugary fizzy substance have a worse effect on your skin, or would it be safe? You're about to find out. You've got a large stockpile of your favorite cola at home and an empty bathtub. After pouring out most of your stash into the bathtub, your tub is filled near the top with a brown, bubbling liquid that doesn't look particularly inviting for bathing, but you're here in the name of science and you go in. When you first get in, you're surprised by a few things. The highly carbonated liquid has a bubbling, tingling sensation. This is going to make it hard to get comfortable because it's like a million little pokes every time a bubble bursts against your skin. It's not painful, but you can imagine this getting very old very quickly. The good news is the soda isn't going to stay carbonated forever, and when exposed to the open air, it'll eventually go flat. No one likes flat soda, but it'll make lying in this bath a lot more comfortable. You're glad you opened a few windows before this experiment because these bottles contain a lot of CO2, and you don't want to inhale all that in a closed space. The other thing that stands out is that the sugar content of the soda is very clear. You can feel a sticky sensation on your skin when you lift your hand out of the tub. And you imagine that when you get out of your extended soda bath, you're going to need another bath to get it all off. When you dip your hand back in, it feels like the sugar is getting washed off, but you know it's just picking up a new layer from the soda bath. You have to be careful of how you sit in the bath, because the more you sink into the tub, the more you're going to get that sticky feeling all over your body when you sit up. You've got a long time ahead of you in this bathtub, and staying comfortable is going to be a challenge. You start to wonder what you've gotten into. What do you really know about this substance you volunteered to sit in for a day? Coca-Cola is one of the most popular packaged beverages in the world, and most of its ingredients are familiar, those we know at least. It's one of the most closely guarded secrets in the world, and its main ingredients are carbonated water, sugar, either sucrose or high fructose corn syrup, phosphoric acid, and caramel color. Plus, natural flavorings. Those natural flavorings are where the big mystery comes in, as the secret flavorings are as tightly guarded as KFC's 11 herbs and spices. There's one flavoring you're pretty sure isn't in there anymore though, cocaine, which was originally included in small doses of extract from coca leaves when the formula was perfected in 1891. There are many other colas, but most have a similar formula with slightly different ingredients. As you sit in the bath and watch your skin get stickier and try to turn pruny, you're more worried about another ingredient you see on the label: phosphoric acid. The idea of sitting in a formula that contains acid for 24 hours is more than a little worrying. You're starting to get visions of dissolving in the bath in your head. The good news is that while phosphoric acid is a potent acid when in its pure form, it can cause burns on the skin or eye damage. It's harmless when diluted. When added to soda or jam, it's used to create a mild, tangy flavor in food. Back in the day of old-fashioned soda shops, sodas containing it were called phosphates. Phosphoric acid is also used to remove rust, but you're hoping it won't have the same effect on your skin. You've been in the bathtub for several hours now, and you're following the rules of the original video. You can only complete the challenge if you stay in the tub for the entire time without a break. The good news is you're fully equipped with technology and your phone and computer are nearby. You can watch videos, order food, and keep busy. But you can't help but sneak a look at your hands and legs every once in a while. This is much longer than the average bath. And you can definitely see your feet and hands starting to get that loose texture that comes with sitting in the bath too long. Does your skin look a little darker from the caramel color sinking into your skin? You're not sure, but you think you can see a slight difference. It'll be much clearer after another few hours. The guy in the original video didn't suffer any long-term physical problems from sitting in the tub for a full day. Besides a sore back and some loose skin he had to be careful not to pull on, but he made it pretty clear that he wouldn't push it much further. There are risks to being constantly immersed in liquid with no break, as soldiers often find out. The most common injury from overexposure to water on the skin is called trench foot, for soldiers who spend days on end walking through wet, marshy climates in combat. With no break and no opportunity to take the boots off and air out their feet, their shoes trap the water and cause swelling, poor blood supply, and a terrible odor from the feet. If treated, the feet will return to normal within a few days. But if the condition is allowed to progress, it can result in blisters, sores, fungal infection, and even gangrene. The good news is this is most common when people are walking constantly in wet shoes. All you have to do is lie there, and you don't have to worry about any of that. Normally, you'd be busy in the bathtub scrubbing yourself clean and using soap and shampoo, but taking a bath in soda is enough of an experiment. You don't want to add more substances that muddy the experiment. Besides, you think scrubbing in sugary water confuses the point of a bath. It's been almost 8 hours now and the water is almost completely flat. That makes it a little more comfortable, but the sticky feeling on your skin is getting more and more pronounced with each hour. It feels like you're coated in a thin, sticky slime of soda. The caramel color is definitely starting to seep into your skin. It's a potent color that's been used in the personal care industry for years as a way to dye hair, but being immersed in it for hours on end makes you wonder if you're going to end up with an uneven tan. You wonder if anyone else has ever done this experiment. You don't have anything else to do while you wait for your soda tub quarantine to be over, so you decide to look up other Coca-Cola baths. You find a few videos of guys claiming to be doing Coca-Cola baths, but most of them are obviously fake. Your skin is starting to get loose and feel a little raw, and you really want to know what a long-term stay in soda is going to do to organic matter. You might not be able to find the answer in a video of someone doing the same challenge, but you can find the next best thing: science experiments on food. Your first hit is a video of an egg suspended in Coca-Cola for 24 hours, and what you see is almost enough to make you jump out of the bath and end your experiment right now. The video shows what the egg looks like after a night in the cola, and it's disturbing. The eggshell is completely dissolved, leaving a thin, translucent membrane holding the white and the yolk. Is that what's going to happen to your skin? You hope not, but you're able to stay calm long enough to check whether this experiment is the real thing. Sure enough, it's not. The entire thing is a hoax by someone using a plastic egg toy to simulate the dissolved egg. There's no evidence that placing an egg in soda will dissolve its shell. Whew! You wipe the sweat off your forehead, but now you have sticky cola on your forehead. Ew. The next experiment you look at is more reassuring. It's a test on whether a marinade of Coca-Cola will dissolve a piece of meat. As you're made of meat, this seems relevant. It's a long-standing urban legend that leaving a steak in a Coca-Cola bath for 48 hours will dissolve the meat entirely, but it's just that, an urban legend. In fact, the meat can be left in for several days without even starting to break down. What it will do after only a day or so is start to tenderize the meat, making it a handy marinade that adds a tasty and sweet overtone to the meat at your next barbecue. Sounds like a recipe to note down once you're out of the soda bath. It's been a long day inside this cola bath, and you've managed to keep busy by reading up on similar experiments, ordering food, and moving around just enough to keep your body from getting too stiff in one position. You've been taking your arms out of the bath frequently to do things, so they're not that much more pruny than your usual appearance after a bath. They're covered in a film of sticky soda sugar that gets dried after a short time outside the bath and then gets wet and slick again when you plunge them back in. Your lower body is a different story, as it's been in the tub this whole time. Your skin has taken on a pale, flabby appearance, especially near your feet. Your skin is loose and easy to pull away from the body. You have to be careful when you examine it. You don't want to tear any away. The clock is ticking down toward the 24-hour mark, and there's one element of this experiment that's wearing you down: staying up for 24 hours. Whether in your apartment or in a bath of cola, not sleeping for 24 hours is going to cause fatigue. It becomes harder to stay focused and keep from drifting off, which is something you definitely don't want to happen. Slipping under in the bathtub would be a very unpleasant experience. Not only is there the risk of drowning, but you don't want to think about getting that soda out of your hair. You keep focused by moving around and watching a few more videos. Almost there. The alarm clock strikes. It's 24 hours. Time to free yourself of your soda bathtub prison. There's just one problem. You gotta get up. After sitting in a bathtub of a mildly corrosive substance for 24 hours, your body is stiff and painful, and your skin is very sensitive, especially in the area below your waist. You move cautiously, inching your way up and being careful not to pull any muscles or tear any skin. As soon as you stand up and pull the plug, watching the soda go down the drain, you start to feel better. It's time to wash off. But that comfortable feeling doesn't last long, as the normal water starts to wash all the sugar off your skin. Your skin is much more sensitive than normal, as the phosphoric acid in the soda has done to you what it does to all meat: tenderized it. You'll want to be careful while washing yourself off, keeping the temperature moderate and turning down the water pressure so it doesn't feel like millions of little water missiles are hitting you. The slimy coating of sugar is washing away, and your skin is starting to return to its normal feeling. Well, almost normal. Your skin will become tight again shortly, just as it does after any long bath, but it's gonna take a couple of baths for the staining of the caramel color all over your body to disappear. And you're definitely not going to scrub it off now, as sensitive as your skin is. You get out of the shower moving cautiously. Your skin is tender and itchy, and you're tempted to start scratching, but you know that could tear the skin and cause bleeding or infection. The best plan is to wear loose-fitting clothing and let your skin return to normal gradually. This was definitely a less pleasant and stickier experience than sitting in water for 24 hours, but it also won't cause massive physical problems if you're in overall good skin health. This experiment was a success, at least until you have to explain to your friends what happened to your skin. COVID has been a real problem for us here at the Infographics Show. As you probably noticed, we haven't put many challenge episodes out in the last 9 months or so, and well, that's because it's really hard to challenge our least important writer and your favorite lab rat to do anything because he can't be around people. Then we got the idea, what if we sent him somewhere with no people? So we sent him to go live 3 days out in the desert, where the only things he could infect with COVID were spiders, scorpions, and dangerous snakes. Alright fans, I gotta say, it's good to be back and doing challenges again. COVID has made life unbearably boring. And let me tell you, nothing tests your love quite like forced quarantine together. Luckily, the girlfriend and I are each other's best friends, but when I got the challenge to go out into the desert for 3 days, well, let's just say she was less concerned with my safety than she's been in the past. So, Infographics sent me out to the desert for 3 days. And seeing as I'm writing this, I obviously survived. How did it go down? Well, in some ways, easier than expected. In others, much more difficult. The premise was simple. I got dropped off at a spot somewhere out in the Nevada desert just over the border from California. My pickup location was exactly 60 miles from my drop-off location, and I had only a map and a compass to get to my pickup. I wasn't dropped off nearly naked like I was when I did my forest survival because the desert is much more lethal than the forest, so I got a few essentials. I got exactly 2 canteens of water, totaling 4 quarts. Seeing as doctors recommend you drink 3 quarts of water a day, you can already see a problem with that math. The name of the game would be conservation. I also got 1 single and very thin emergency blanket, along with a hunting knife because the California and Nevada desert have coyotes. Though, me personally, I'm far more worried about feral pigs. Any hunter in the world will tell you they're more scared of wild hogs or feral pigs than they are of even bears, because those things are absolutely vicious. Lastly, I had a signaling mirror in case things get really bad. Day 1, I got dropped off at my location at 6 p.m. and from that moment on, I had 72 hours to get to my pickup 60 miles away. Now right off the bat, let me make a disclaimer I made on my last survival video. Do not try this if you don't have survival training. I have years of experience in the world's deserts because apparently America doesn't like to pick fights with nice tropical nations anymore. And believe me, this is not for the unprepared. I got dropped off near sunset because when you're in the desert, you want to flip your sleep schedule. People often make the mistake of thinking you have to conserve water in the desert, but the truth is it's far more efficient to conserve sweat. That means traveling at night and taking shelter during the hot day. And if you're out in the desert in the wintertime, you should still be prepared for some very high temperatures. My small pack made traveling light, which was good, because I wanted to move fast enough to make good time while identifying good shelter to use during the day. My plan was to move for 8 hours, then spend 2 hours moving slower and finding shelter. I was supposed to be mirroring a hiker or off-roader who wasn't planning for a long trip, so I wasn't allowed to bring extra clothes or things like that. Instead, I wore jeans and a simple outdoors white long-sleeve shirt. When you think desert, you think heat. And rightly so, but at night it can get extremely cold, especially in Nevada, where the winter temperature can swing from as high as 90s to below freezing in 24 hours. The first night did not disappoint, and I started shivering pretty quickly, so I wrapped myself in the survival blanket. These blankets are very light and made out of reflective foil, but they're made to reflect the heat and hold it in, much like the way you'd wrap a potato in foil before throwing it in the oven. You might notice I wasn't given any food, and that was to reflect a real survival situation. But also, food is a low priority for you in desert survival. In fact, it might get you killed. That's because digestion is actually very water intensive and can seriously eat up your water budget. In normal survival situations, you might have heard it's better to do lots of small snacks throughout the day to keep your energy up over eating one big meal. And that's true to an extent. In the desert, you gotta plan in advance, and it's better to save up small snacks to have one single big meal every few days than to kickstart digestion many times throughout the day by ingesting individual snacks. Water is everything in desert survival. And that brings me to sweat. Most people think that humans are not very well adapted to surviving in the desert, but the opposite is actually true. Humans do quite well in the desert as long as they have access to water. Our omnivore diet allows us to eat a variety of things found in a desert, where restrictive diets can spell disaster, and our ability to sweat along with the lack of body hair is an extremely efficient cooling system. When water is limited though, sweat is your enemy. There are 2 times you don't want to sweat: in low temperatures and when water is sparse. In Arctic survival, if you sweat you die because hypothermia can set in. In the desert, there's less, but a still very real risk of hypothermia at night. But sweating means losing valuable water. So as I hiked along, I had to check myself to keep only a moderate pace and take frequent rest breaks to avoid sweating. Every single drop of sweat is wasted water, and a good survivalist will budget every drop. As I moved along, I kept an eye on the stars for direction. Compasses are great, but they're prone to magnetic interference in the environment. If you know how to navigate using the stars, you'll find you can maintain extremely accurate bearings. Simply pull out your compass every 30 minutes or so to double-check yourself. Speaking of stars, you can see every single one of them if you go far enough out into the desert. It's honestly incredible and well worth a day trip for any of you city slickers that have never seen the full majesty of the entire Milky Way on display. As morning approached, I started looking for shelter. Daytime shelter is extremely important in the desert, with the main goal being to keep yourself out of the sun as much as possible. The only problem was that this part of the desert was almost completely flat, which only really left me with one very bad option. I found a small wadi and started digging into the soft soil at the bottom, breaking up the harder parts of the ground with my knife. This was strenuous work given I only had my hands and a knife, and I was sweating, which was bad. But if you don't get shelter, it'd be even worse. I dug down a solid 1.5 feet into the ground right next to where the wadi started to bank up sharply. Then took my survival blanket and turned it shiny silver side outward, and using rocks set it up so it covered the hole, with one side on the ground next to me on the hole, and the other side about 2 feet above me on the steep bank of the wadi. Basically, I made a rough tent, with 2 large openings I could slide into and would work to keep the air circulating. The silver reflective side would reflect the sun's rays and keep me from overheating, but the real key with this type of shelter is to keep the survival blanket off your body, or else you're basically insulating yourself. That's why digging into the side of a wadi or a rise in the ground is critical. Crawling into my hole, I settled in for my first desert day sleep in about 8 years. I took a very long sip from my water. Another desert survival myth is that you should do small sips at a time. Don't, this just ends up being wasteful. Take big, long drinks when you really need them. Being my first day, I could feel light dehydration, but nothing too serious. I still had 1.5 canteens left. I'd almost certainly run out of water before the end of the 3rd day, but if I budgeted right, I shouldn't be running the risk of serious dehydration. Sleeping during the day in the desert is not easy, to say the least. But I long ago learned to snooze most places. I stayed put in my hole the entire day with the temperature easily climbing into the high 80s. Good thing global warming's a myth, huh? Also, 2 scorpions crawled into my sleeping hole, deciding that it was a good place to hide from the sun. I crushed both their heads, bit off the stingers, and threw them in my pack. If I got enough scorpions and other bugs, they'd make a good snack once I had a sizable enough meal that it was worth using up the water to eat it. That's another thing about survival, you have to be an opportunist. You don't know what tomorrow will bring, so if an opportunity for materials or food presents itself, take it. Today I got 2 scorpions. I might not find anything else to eat for the next 2 days. Or my pickup might get into an accident and leave me stranded for days more than I planned. Always be planning ahead and always be opportunistic. Another good reason to sleep as much as you can is because, well, laying in a hole is boring AF. And that's another military survival tip for you. Sleep as much as you can. Not just for energy, but also to avoid mind-numbing boredom. As the sun started to go down, I very happily crawled out of my hole. My stomach was rumbling, but I wasn't about to waste water on digestion. You can easily survive while hungry. Most people just don't like the uncomfortable feeling of slow starvation. By my estimate, I made around 22 miles the first night, which was really good progress. The cool temperature helped me control my sweating, allowing me to push myself harder. Also, I'm in good shape, traveling light, and the desert was really flat. I haven't pushed myself this hard in a while though, and I'll admit, COVID quarantine has made me kind of soft around the belly, as the girlfriend is fond of pointing out, as she pokes at me and makes the Pillsbury Doughboy giggle. I could feel blisters forming on my feet, but I'd have to tough it out. The second night was pretty uneventful, to be honest. The desert was so sparsely populated that wildlife isn't much of a threat, at least until you start looking for shelter, because that's basically what it too is doing. The crystal clear night sky is something amazing, and you can see every single star in the sky, and maybe I saw something more. Listen, I'm not one of those UFO types, and I think the idea of aliens flying across the galaxy just to flash some lights in our sky is pretty stupid, but I swear I saw a light for a while that seemed to be moving, well, unnaturally. Then it just faded away. Weird, but I reminded myself that Area 51 is also in Nevada, so who knows what I saw. Speaking of wilderness, here's a special announcement for all you cryptid fans. This spring, I'll be officially undertaking a hunt for Bigfoot, and because you guys have been asking for it, yes, it will feature real camera footage and not just animation. I'll be recording my trip and my findings for all your viewing pleasure. We saw all the comments you guys made in my forest survival video about possibly hearing Bigfoot, and the infographic show was like, hey, why don't you go find one? So I said sure, and we carefully researched a site in Oregon that's super remote and booming with reported Bigfoot activity. Will the girlfriend be making an appearance? Maybe. I still haven't convinced her yet. She's not really the camping type. But even if I don't get Bigfoot on camera, I'll at least be able to put to rest all those rumors in the comments section that I'm not a real person. Do you know how weird it is to have people say that you don't exist? Anyway, stay tuned for that challenge episode dropping early this summer, as long as Oregon's forests don't go up in flames like last summer. Alright, so night 2 I made really good progress thanks to the desert being so flat and featureless. The day had really taken its toll on me though, and by the time dawn came around I had only a half a canteen of water left. I knew I'd inevitably sweat during the day no matter how much I tried to stay out of the sun, so day 3 I'd likely be running with 0 water. Pushing myself as hard as I was, that was not good news. You can go without water for 3 days before running the risk of deadly dehydration, but that's if you're not really doing much physical activity. I still had over 20 miles to go and I could definitely feel the effects of dehydration from my water rationing. I got supremely lucky on the dawn of day 3 and found a small cave. Well, it was more like a rocky outcropping with a huge slab of rock jutting out from the side of a large bluff. It was deep enough that I'd be able to stay out of the sun, but the entire time I was worried about the bluff coming down on top of me because your mind really loves to act irrationally. During the day, I'd made it a point to take my shirt off and lick the inner armpit areas. Yes, this sounds disgusting, but it was important that I get some salt back into my system. Seeing as all I'd brought was water, I considered eating my 2 scorpions, but they were tiny. Maybe if I'd had 5 or 6 of them, they'd make a decent meal. Despite my rumbling stomach, it just wasn't worth it to burn water for 2 quick bites. During the day, I'd heard what's probably the most terrifying sound you can hear in the American Southwest: bees. Not just any bees though. These desert-dwelling bees were almost certainly the dreaded Africanized honeybees or killer bees. These bees are incredibly ornery and vicious about attacking anything that disturbs them. Them flying around in a massive swarm during the winter could only mean one thing though. Something had messed up wherever they had made their hive, meaning they'd be super angry. Luckily for me, the bees went on their happy, murdery way, leaving me completely alone. I got an early start on night 3, walking before the sun was fully down and drinking the very last of my water. Now survival was serious. If I missed my pickup for some reason, or if the person picking me up got into an accident and couldn't come, I could be out here alone for days. I'm never really worried in a survival situation until I've run out of water. That's when things get deadly serious. You might have heard that you can cut open cacti and drink the water inside, and this is wrong. Any moisture you find is going to be very alkaline and likely to make you sick, leading to vomiting or diarrhea, both things that are extremely costly in terms of water. You probably heard you can drink your own pee in an emergency, and I don't care what Bear Grylls tells you, don't. Seriously, there's a reason pee is a waste product because it's full of waste. Drinking your pee will just put all the junk your body filtered back inside of you, necessitating even more water to get it back out again. The best way to find water in the desert is to watch for large flocks of birds in the sky. Individual birds are likely specialized for desert survival, but flocks means it's a bird species that's likely transiting the area. That means they'll be looking for water too. Even better though is finding anything green. You might not find any surface water, but dig down a few inches and you'll likely hit water. You can do the same in dried up riverbeds, though you might have to dig a foot or more. Always remember that you're on a water budget though, and digging means sweating. If you find nothing after a few inches, maybe switch locations. Or just give it up and focus on moving, if your survival depends on you getting somewhere other than where you are. Most times in a survival situation, it's best to just stay put and make yourself as visible as possible. You probably also heard about solar stills. If you have the materials to build one, it's not a terrible idea to throw one together. Don't expect much out of it though. Even under the best of conditions, you'll get little more than a sip. If you can catch large bugs, popping them open and sucking out their innards can get you a bit of fluids. Just try not to actually eat them. You don't want to kickstart digestion. If you are somehow lucky enough to nab a small animal, don't eat it. Instead, drink the blood. A lot of desert animals survive with no water and instead live on the blood from their prey. Sadly, my third night presented no opportunities for water, and to make matters worse, the blisters on my feet were now fully formed. Your feet are incredibly important in a survival situation for obvious reasons. You want to always keep them dry and should air them out every time you stop for a rest. Blisters can be dangerous because they can lead to infection, so just try to keep them dry and clean. I had no way of cleaning them though, so I just had to soldier on. I've been keeping track of my progress on a topographical map, which is really great for keeping your precise location as long as you know how to read those types of maps. However, in a desert with very few significant topographic features, it's a lot harder. I realized I was significantly off course by the time the sun was rising and my pickup was supposed to be meeting me at 8 in the morning. I'd ended up too far north by a few miles. I thought about double timing it to get to the pickup on time, but in a survival situation, you always have to be thinking tactically. If I got to the pickup and my ride wasn't there, I might have to survive out here another day or two on my own. I couldn't risk exerting myself and losing even more energy and water. I can't stress this enough. Always think ahead in these situations. I finally made it to my pickup just before noon, and the sun did not disappoint, roasting me from above. Even with only moderate winter temperatures, the desert provides no cover and the sun can be brutal. You might be inclined to take off clothing to cool off, but this is the opposite of what you should do. Instead, cover yourself with light colors in order to avoid making sweating worse and to keep from getting sunburn. There's a reason you always see Middle East desert tribes covering from head to toe and even 120-degree temperatures. My desert survival was a nice break from COVID quarantine, and I ended up losing 8 pounds over 3 days. So if you're looking for a quick weight loss technique, maybe try getting lost in the desert and hiking 60 miles in 3 days. Just joking, seriously, don't. I'm hopeful that COVID will ease up and we can get back to doing challenges, but I'm really looking forward to the spring and my Bigfoot hunt. Hopefully you guys are too. Hello, Info fans! It's time for another challenge. Today we're revisiting our famous 72 Hours Homeless Challenge and giving our favorite lab rat a break. Instead of living on the street, he gets to live in his car. With all that extra luxury though, we're upping the stakes by making him live an entire week out of his car. When you really think about it, it's like a mini apartment on wheels. So stay tuned for yet another Infographics challenge. Day 1. My Homeless for 72 Hours challenge ended up being one of my most popular and controversial, judging by the comments. Surprisingly though, most of the comments were overwhelmingly positive, and we got a ton of emails from people thanking us for letting them know what it's like for homeless people, with everyone pledging to be more charitable going forward. Sometimes we do silly challenges, and sometimes we do things like this to bring attention to real issues. So my new challenge is to live out a lifestyle that's sadly all too familiar for many young people today. Live out of my car for a week. With rent prices getting higher and higher every year in every large city in the world, and buying a house being completely out of the question for all but a small segment of the population, many people are being forced to live out of their cars for weeks, months, or even years at a time. Now I get to find out what that life's like. The rules are simple: no entering my comfortable apartment or even a friend's place for an entire week. Also, no spending cash. That's right, I start out only with the clothes on my back and a full tank of gas. I don't have to survive in my car for a week. I have to earn money and find food. It's urban survival all over again. So I took my car and drove to the east side of LA, as far as I could go from me and the girlfriend's cute apartment by the beach and the very gentrified neighborhood we live in. These streets are rough, and the first thing I set myself to was finding a way to earn money for the day. I hadn't eaten anything for breakfast, and I figured I wasn't going to get anything until lunch, if I made any money. I immediately headed for the hardware stores and truck rental places, looking for a spot with day laborers waiting to get picked up for a job or two. I got some stares from the mostly Hispanic group, but eventually they warmed up to me thanks to me speaking some Spanish. As we waited for someone to come by looking for workers, we talked about life, family, and work. Sadly, I had to lie to keep my cover, and I really dislike being deceitful. It was well past noon, and I'd been waiting for at least 5 hours before finally someone came up looking for people to help move office equipment around. I got picked up and loaded into the back of a pickup truck, then driven a few miles away to what looked like a new office building. And at this point, I hadn't eaten or drank anything in about 16 hours, and I was feeling it for sure. But by excusing myself to the bathroom, I was able to hydrate in the sink at least. We moved heavy furniture and boxes of supplies around for a good 6 hours, honest to God, back-breaking labor. At the end of our little work day, already late in the evening, we got $40 each and let out the front door. Not even a ride back to where we got picked up. Doing the math, we earned about $6.66 or $5.34 under the legal minimum wage in California. Then I had a good 4-mile walk back to where my car was parked on top of that, but most of the guys had even further to go than that. The guys I was with told me I was lucky. Usually they get $40 for 12 to 16-hour workday, and the only reason we got what we got today was because the guy was late coming to pick up workers. He must have been feeling generous too because he paid the normal rate instead of prorating it. By the time I got back to my car, it was really late and I was exhausted from not eating and moving really heavy stuff around for 6 hours. I hit up a drive-thru and found a quiet spot to park my car, and then finally answered the million texts the girlfriend had very worriedly been sending me throughout the day. I made a rule I wouldn't text back until the evening each night though, and was holding firm to it, which she hated. Day 2. I already know from my previous stint living on the streets for 72 hours that for homeless people, the day starts early, at least if you want to earn anything. I hit up a drive-thru again for some breakfast and made my way back to the same spot I'd gotten picked up for work at before. The same group of guys was still there, and because I felt bad about potentially taking one of their jobs, I bought them breakfast, which ate up most of my money. But you know what? In 6 more days, I'd be warm and comfortable at home again, so going hungry for a little bit if I didn't score work that day was a minor inconvenience compared to the way the guys lit up on seeing me bring them Egg McMuffins and hash browns. It'd been bothering me the entire night before that I could potentially be taking someone else's work for the day who definitely needed it more than me. So I resolved that after this challenge I'd make things right. The group had a sense of camaraderie that only comes from men caught together in adverse conditions. It reminded me a lot of the fellowship between guys in my old unit in the military. There was the usual good-natured ribbing, the complaining, and a lot of looking out for each other. What surprised me the most was how quickly the guys accepted me, despite being white and a complete stranger 24 hours ago. This day we got lucky and several people showed up early looking for help. I got picked along with 4 other guys by 2 college kids to help them move out of their apartment. What really bothered me about this job though was when one of the kids asked me in private if I could keep an eye on the other guys with me. I knew why he did it. I'm white, so he figured I was less likely to steal something from them. Being in a mixed race relationship, I had to deal with racism from time to time, but this was the first time I experienced something quite like this. I needed the money, so I didn't say anything. But I can't help but wonder what in the world made him think, aside from the color of my skin, that I was any more trustworthy than my Hispanic workmates. I almost wanted to rob them blind just to teach them a lesson. Anyways, it was another long, hard day moving heavy crap around. First out of their apartment, then loading it into a truck, and then unpacking it at their new place. The 2 kids bought themselves lunch at one point, but didn't bother to ask if any of us wanted anything. When I commented on the fact to one of the older guys I was working with, he just shrugged his shoulders and said that's how it is. We worked from about 8 in the morning until about 7 at night and had no food the entire time. Thing is, this was perfectly normal for the guys I was working with. This challenge was starting to piss me off, and I think the girlfriend knew because she insisted on having a phone conversation that night. It was so nice to hear her voice, and yeah, I know it'd only been 48 hours, but what can I say? I'm one of those guys that doesn't need guys' night out or anything like that because she's my best friend. I can't imagine wanting to do anything without her. Day 3. On the night of day 2, I got woken up by cops who said that I couldn't park where I was at, which was outside some warehouse in an industrial area. As I would find out, one of the hardest parts of living out of your car is finding somewhere to park where people and police don't harass you or tell you to move your car. I get it, the cops are just doing their jobs, but city policy is clearly geared at keeping transients out of public sight. The college kids the day before paid us a whopping $50 for almost 12 hours of work, and as I was quickly finding out, what you make as a laborer is completely up to what people want to pay you. When you have no options, you just take what you can get. I went back to the guys again bright and early, bringing breakfast once more, though it basically ate up all the money I had, and talked to the older guy from the day before. He was sort of the leader in the group, I could tell, and I asked him about the pay and what he typically earns. He said on a good month he can make $1,000, but that's money that has to be split between himself, his wife, and his 3-year-old daughter. $1,000 in Los Angeles is insane. The average rent at a 1-bedroom apartment is well over that. Thing is, I knew from previous experience that you can make decent money panhandling if you find a good spot, and I asked him why he never considered doing that. He flat out rejected the idea, and he said to me, and I really hope I'm remembering his exact words correctly here, "If I do that, then I'm exactly what the people who say I'm a problem in this country think I am. I'm a worker. I came here to work, not to beg. One day someone will see that, and I'll get a real job." I've known a lot of brave guys in my time, people that I guess others would look up to and say, "Now that's a man." Let me tell you from firsthand experience, this was a man, and I instantly admired him for his conviction. I never asked my new friend if he was here legally or illegally, but I know this country could use a hell of a lot more people like him. The rest of the day was relatively uneventful. I was really moved by what my friend had said, and I refused when I got picked for jobs until everyone who was there before me got to work that day. But then, though, there was no more work, so I didn't earn anything that day. Having spent what I'd made on 2 or 3 shirts from a local Goodwill, so I didn't wear the same thing every day, and breakfast for the group of guys every morning, I was flat out of cash, so day 3, I didn't eat. Day 4. Got harassed again on the night of day 3 about where I was parking, twice this time. I ended up having to park in a really crappy alleyway. There was another van there which I'm sure was someone else living out of their car. I stopped by a gas station and was refused to use the restroom unless I bought something. All I really wanted to do was just freshen up in the sink. I had literally no money on me though, and it was humiliating to admit I couldn't even afford to buy a candy bar and get the key to the bathroom. The clerk and some of the guests looked pretty disgusted at me, and honestly, those were looks I was starting to get a lot. I'm familiar with the looks though from my 72 hours homeless challenge. People look at you like you gross them out, or they do the opposite and literally pretend like you don't exist. It's extremely dehumanizing, and I'll admit I used to walk by homeless people and pretend they didn't exist too, because noticing them would have been uncomfortable. After my challenge, I changed though, and as people kept treating me like crap, I couldn't help but think of the irony. In my normal life, I always carry 20 around and give it anytime someone asks me for some change. I also make sure to ask the person's name and then wish them well. Sure, getting a crisp 20 is great, I'm sure, but you wouldn't believe what humanizing someone and asking their name does for them when they're ignored or looked down on all day long. I finally found a bathroom that morning and freshened up as best I could, then hurried to the job spot a bit late. This time I didn't even have breakfast for myself, and when one of the guys found out I hadn't eaten anything since the day before yesterday, he immediately went and bought me a burrito from a street vendor, even though I know that was money he needed for himself. I'm a firm believer that who you are when the chips are all down is who you really are inside, and this group of guys looking for jobs outside a truck rental place that I'd normally ignore were turning out to be some of the highest integrity people I knew. It only made me madder to think about the day that I was asked to supervise because I was white and they weren't. We all got lucky and got to work that day, and well, not much to say about it except it was another 12-hour day, and again, we weren't given any food at lunch or given a break. At the end of the day, we all made $45, and once more, had to either walk or take a bus back to wherever we came from, not even a ride back to where we got picked up at. At least I got to eat that night. Day 5. A homeless guy broke my window on the night of day 4. I guess I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe the guy was being territorial, I don't know. He was very clearly out of his mind though and strung out on something because he yelled at me in my car and then threw a glass bottle, cracking the front windshield. Then he just calmly turned around and pushed a cart full of trash down the road. It was easy to get mad. Hell, I wanted to go after this guy, but then I stopped and thought about it. The guy was clearly out of it, probably completely unaware of what he was doing. Mental illness is endemic among homeless people. In fact, if you're mentally ill, you're exponentially more likely to end up homeless than if you're not. Add on top of that the drugs that the homeless people often take just to escape their miserable lives for a few hours, and well, you've got someone completely off their gourd who likely has no idea what they're doing. Can you really get mad at someone with no control of their actions? Sure, I can already hear the comments saying, well, you can control if you take drugs or not, which only shows that these people don't understand at all what it's like to need an escape from your daily hell, so bad that you'll turn to anything. Besides, I have insurance, it's literally not a big deal. My week living in the car had to be cut short on day 5, unfortunately. I'm prone to kidney stones and have been having them regularly since I was 20 years old, and I guess the dehydration, stress, and poor food the last week didn't help matters and may have encouraged a new stone to start its journey out of the kidneys and down my urinary tract. I woke up in the morning with extreme pain in my side and immediately recognized the symptoms of a kidney stone. The pain very quickly grew intolerable as I started to move around, and I knew I was in trouble. If you've never had a kidney stone, it's apparently one of the most painful things you can experience. I can attest to that. I barely managed to make it to an ER on my own, and I guess I was a little funky from not bathing regularly and working really hard over the last week, so the staff must have assumed I was homeless. They were pretty shocked when I showed them proof of very good medical insurance though, but I still had to wait an hour for an open bed in the back before getting any painkillers. Eventually I got put into bed and got my painkillers, which stopped the extreme pain. I totally forgotten to let the girlfriend know until they finally admitted me into the back, and she showed up in tears because she was so distraught. She plays at being a tough cookie, but she's soft as they come inside. So, what's my week taught me about living out of my car? Well, being homeless is tough, but most people understand that. What they probably don't understand is just how dehumanizing an experience it can be. Those day laborers and homeless people you walk by every day, they're real people, and odds are they're a lot better people than you imagine they are. A week later, I went back to find the guys at the truck rental place, and they were happy to see me. I admitted that I was doing this all for a job, and I split up into envelopes what I would have made for this episode and gave the money to them. I might have taken work from some of them over the week, so I had to make things right. I also put them in touch with a guy I know that hires and trains grips for film sets and pays a hell of a lot better wage than just $40 for a back-breaking 15-hour day. I can't help but think after this challenge about how there's all this talk about the American dream and how that dream is really well and truly busted when so many people are living out of their cars and others who are genuinely looking to be honest, hard workers have to resort to begging for jobs on the street. Coronavirus has really put a crimp in our plans to torture your favorite lab rat by making him do crazy, terrifying, uncomfortable, or disgusting things. All in the name of science, of course. But that's when we all got to thinking, if he can't go outside because of the virus, what if we put him in a place where there's no chance of catching the virus? Mostly because everyone there is already dead. And that's exactly what we did, as we challenged our least important staff writer to spend 24 hours locked in a real morgue. What we didn't count on was him accidentally stumbling on photographic proof of the supernatural. 0700 hours. This is the start of my official challenge, 24 hours locked in a morgue. Honestly, who's coming up with these ideas? Spend a day locked in with dead people. The Infographics show is really run by a bunch of sadists. So I'm in a small auxiliary morgue in one of the communities outside of Los Angeles. How long it took Infographics to find this place and get permission to do this is beyond me, but trust me, those guys and gals have been pretty motivated lately to get me back on the road and doing challenges. I guess everyone's had about enough of coronavirus. Speaking of the virus, sadly people still aren't taking it seriously and the death toll continues to mount. The place I'm at was an old morgue that went unused for a few decades until the more modern facilities became overwhelmed with coronavirus casualties. So this place is what you might call temporary storage, while the morticians get about disinfecting the body and prepping it for a funeral. And this place is too near capacity. It's the weekend though, and this is a pretty small community, so I was told I shouldn't be disturbed. Then the mortician's assistant said, "At least not by the living anyway," and sort of laughed in a way that hinted he was only half joking. I didn't find it funny at all. I tried to get the girlfriend to do this challenge with me, but she flat out refused to go anywhere near a dead body. Hard to blame her. I've seen death before, but sitting in a tiny building stuffed full of corpses is nobody's idea of a good time. Plus, the weather outside is really overcast, which kind of adds to the gloom of the place. There's a main office, a small waiting area of sorts, 2 private offices which are locked, and the storage examination room, which takes up most of the building. The room is extremely chilly, and the temperature is kept really low in order to help keep the bodies from rotting more than normal. The room is even colder than normal now because these bodies are having to be stored for longer than usual thanks to the overflow of COVID victims. I heard some cities are even using refrigerated trucks after running out of morgue space. So, okay, I have to stay in this building for 24 hours. Since the building is being used as overflow, nobody should be coming by to bother me, I was told. At least until I get let out tomorrow morning. The doors are locked, and the only way out now for me would be breaking a window, which you best believe I'm ready to do if a zombie situation starts kicking off. I've got some snacks, food to last me my stay, my laptop, and a sleeping bag. There's also a small TV the staff brought out from one of the offices for me. All in all, how hard could this be? 1,200 hours. Alright, it's been 5 hours stuck in this building and the weather outside turned from bad to worse. It was overcast at first and then just started raining, which is just perfect. Seriously, it rains so rarely out here in SoCal, and it just so happens to start raining on the day I spend in a creepy morgue. I swear, sometimes I think the universe, and not just Infographics show, is out to get me. I went into the storage examination room just out of sheer curiosity and immediately changed my mind. It's freezing in there right now, and the smell of chemicals and death is overwhelming. It's hard to describe the smell of a corpse. Kind of like old leather with some sickly sweet aroma but a pungent aftertaste. My curiosity was immediately satisfied, and I ducked back into the main office. 19 hours to go. 1,334 hours. Alright, I swear I'm hearing a slight clicking noise coming from somewhere in the building. I can only hear it sporadically, and I'm sure it's something totally normal, but given my circumstances, it's definitely making me a bit spooked. 1,500 hours. First 8 hours down, and I'm really looking forward to this ending. I can't explain how unsettling it is to be stuck in a building full of dead bodies literally just a few feet away from you. I tried eating lunch, but I just didn't have the appetite for it. The rain is coming sporadically, but the clouds are still heavy outside. I was really hoping for some sunshine, but this whole day has a very horror movie vibe to it that I'm not digging. Also, I kept hearing that clicking sound. It's rapid fire and it comes in short bursts. Sounds maybe like high heels on ceramic or something like that, but there's no ceramic floors here. The office area is carpeted and the actual exam room is cement. So I tried clicking on the floor with a pen, but it totally makes a different sound. I'm sure it's a rodent or something. There's bound to be mice or rats in a building that stores human bodies, right? At least I hope so. 1704 hours. Clicking noise again, this time much more obvious. It used to be that I'd only really hear it when the audio on the TV died down, but now I can sometimes hear it even over the TV. I did a sweep of the building, which included going into that creepy exam room, but found nothing. 1900 hours. It's been 12 hours now. I've managed to eat some, but it's incredible how little appetite you have when you're a few feet away from a bunch of corpses. I've heard that corpses can burp or moan or even move as gases escape the body, but these bodies have been here for too long for any of that. Something I am incredibly grateful for. Listen, put me face to face with something alive any day, but don't mess around with the dead. Me and Infographics Show are still negotiating me doing a ghost hunting challenge episode for you guys. I'm super not keen on anything dead, it just really squeaks me out. I haven't gone in to look at any of the dead bodies. I know all of you are probably wondering when I'd get around to that. You think it's the first thing you'd do if you were in my shoes, right? Well, I did too, until I was actually physically there. Now, the last thing I want is to see what's inside those storage cabinets or whatever they call them. I just kind of want to pretend those corpses don't even exist. But, well, I think my brain has a kind of defect, because it has a weird macabre sort of curiosity, and once I get that itch, I just can't stop thinking about it until I scratch it. I've been explicitly told not to do this by the staff, but the staff aren't here and there's no cameras, so I braved the freezing cold and found an empty cabinet. Listen, I knew it was a bad idea. I mean, how horror movie cliche could things get? But like I said, when I got that curious itch, I gotta satisfy it. Once I got in trouble in a Titanic exhibit in Las Vegas for climbing past the guardrails and touching a part of the hull that had been brought up from the depths. I just wanted to feel that connection to history. I mean, how many people have physically touched the Titanic? Other than me and a bunch of really dead people. I checked to make sure the door wouldn't close on me, and even wedged a few pens into the open door to make sure it couldn't close, and then after a pretty long, pretty hard think, I climbed onto the slab and wheeled myself inside. I wish I could tell you it was an amazing experience. It wasn't. Matter of fact, it was immediately creepy and I very quickly got back out again. I'm not claustrophobic, but knowing that one day I'd be in this same box, only dead, very quickly made me want to leave. Honestly, would not recommend trying this one at home, kids. 2100 hours. I haven't heard that clicking in a while, so I was probably right. It was probably just a mouse or a rat, maybe even raccoons. It's been raining throughout the day, so I wouldn't be surprised if small animals were trying to find shelter in this old building. It's well past dark outside, and it's sort of starting to dawn on me I have to go to sleep here soon. Sure, being up and watching TV during the daytime in a morgue is one thing, but when it gets dark and you realize you're gonna have to spend the night there, well, that's another thing entirely. I tried to eat, but once more the presence of all these bodies makes it impossible to have an appetite, and the food tastes like ash. Also, I can't get the smell of chemicals and death out of my nostrils after climbing into that cabinet. I mean, in hindsight, I doubt they cleaned them very well after being used, if at all. That was definitely monumentally stupid. 2141 hours. The clicking's back. This time I swear it was coming from one direction and then from another, and definitely from the examination room area. You know, the place with the corpses? While this makes my mouse and rat hypothesis more likely, I guess it makes a reanimated corpse hypothesis just as likely. Comforting thought. 2300 hours. I've been trying to stay up on purpose because I really don't want to sleep in here, but I can feel myself getting sleepier and sleepier. I can't stress how little I am enjoying this challenge. Put me in the wild, out on the streets, facing down another bear, literally anything but being around dead people. And the clicking, it just keeps happening. Sometimes faintly, other times much more pronounced. It happens every 15 or 20 minutes or so, and if I walk into the exam room while it's happening, it stops. I kept the lights on in there and in the office area I'm at, but this is 1970s lighting, and honestly, I feel like it just makes things creepier. I'm gonna try to sleep for a bit, and I've set up my sleeping bag in a far corner of the room where I can see the rest of the building pretty well. Hopefully this is not my final entry from the land of the living. 0 to 28 hours. I am not going back to sleep, and I am seriously considering breaking a window to get out. I slept for a while, but I got woken up about a half an hour ago suddenly. I'm not sure why. I vaguely remember having a dream of being inside this building and somebody I couldn't quite see was trying to get my attention. Can't explain it, weird dream stuff, but this person was distorted and looked like a blur, and when they spoke it was all muffled. Then they grabbed me and shook me and I woke up. Very creepy stuff. Just a few seconds after waking up I heard the clicking noise again. It was much louder without the TV on, and here's the thing, I had kept the TV on purpose so the noise of real living people would make me feel better as I slept. I even checked to make sure it had no auto turn off function enabled, and yet when I woke up the TV was off. Also, my laptop was turned so that when I opened it back up the screen was facing away from me. I very clearly remember just shutting the laptop closed, while obviously facing me because I had just been writing to you guys on it. But when I woke up and opened it, it was facing away. This is all really starting to be too much. I really don't do well with ghost crap. I'm still terrified of the poltergeist movies. 0510 hours. I haven't been able to sleep, or maybe I just don't want to. I've stayed up watching TV and turned all the lights in the building back on. I'm officially on high alert. It's all thanks to that damn clicking sound. I got a hunch about a half an hour ago when I heard it again and I went into the exam room, started tapping on things with my fingernail. Tried the floor. Nope, not the right pitch. I tried an examination table. Again, not quite right. I tried one of those medical storage chests. Nope, not it. Then I tried one of the cabinets the bodies are kept in, and it sounded almost right. I opened it a little bit, catching a glimpse of very purple toes in the process, and tapped on the metal lid from the inside. Perfect match. Listen, this thing still might be a mouse or a rat or maybe a big roach, but I am officially done with this challenge. The only thing keeping me from prying open a window and trying to crawl out is the fact that I know in less than 2 hours I'll be let out, and I really don't want to cause trouble for the show. But I am beyond done with this challenge. This is my final entry, and I'm spending most of my time here with my back to the wall and TV lined up so I can keep an eye on the exam room doors and all those corpses on the other side. Post-challenge update. So a few days after this very stupid challenge, I was talking to a friend about everything that went on in that morgue, and he was very curious about the laptop being turned around. He suggested I check the laptop's camera roll, because apparently spirits sometimes can activate digital cameras and make themselves known that way. The laptop I was using is pretty old because I never take my nice laptop out in the field with me on these challenges. I never used the camera on that thing, and the last time I did must have been a few years ago. But, well, I did find pictures, just like my friend said I might, and they don't make me feel any better about my experience. So, okay, here's picture 1. Sorry about the bad quality. Like I said, it's an old laptop and low light didn't help matters. You can clearly see the glow of the TV, which must have still been on at that point. Now here's picture 2. TV is still on, but did you catch that? Here, look at picture 1 and picture 2 back to back. See how the perspective of the photo very clearly shifts? Something obviously moved the laptop in between photos. Now, for the reason I will never do a ghost hunt challenge video for the Infographics show ever in my life. Picture number 3. You can see how the image is fuzzy, like the camera doesn't quite know what to focus on. Or maybe because those big boots appeared suddenly as the photo was being taken. You can even tell the laptop moved pretty dramatically right before the photo was taken. Listen, I can tell you that I wasn't wearing boots that night, and there was only me in that morgue for the entire stay. But I understand if you don't believe me. As for me, I'm officially done with anything related to dead people or ghosts for Infographics. They do not pay me enough for this. Some exotic vacation locales offer tourists an incredible opportunity, the chance to feed baby sharks by hand in small natural lagoons. The sharks involved are typically very young white-tip reef sharks, black-tip reef sharks, nurse sharks, and the famous hammerheads. The baby sharks are lured in with small pieces of fish, and then the tourists are welcome to toss the juvenile predators other pieces of bait fish from the safety of a dock or a small boat. Sometimes, though, a particularly adventurous or foolhardy tourist will jump in the water and literally try to feed the sharks by hand. This can result in injury to the fingers or even bites at the feet and legs. While a single baby shark doesn't pose a particularly dangerous threat, what if you were swarmed by 100 of them? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Infographics Show. Today we're taking a look at what would happen if you were attacked by 100 baby sharks. Shark love is a very violent affair. When a male shark is interested in mating, he finds a female and swims alongside her, signaling his desire by biting at her pectoral fins. While these bites aren't hard enough to cause serious damage, they can still draw blood, given the vast quantity of very sharp teeth each shark sports. Once the female submits to mating, the male will bite down on her gills, head, or fins in order to keep her steady in the water. If you thought your first time was difficult, imagine trying to make the beast with two backs while having no hands to hold on to anything with. Because of the violence involved in mating, females are typically up to 50% larger than males and have skin that's up to 3 times as thick. Still, a female can leave a mating session very battered and bloody from the male's love bites. So it's a good thing sharks have some serious healing superpowers that can turn those open wounds to fading scars in just weeks. Once fertilized, shark eggs can take anywhere from a few months to a year to develop, though scientists suspect that the rare frilled shark could take an astonishing 3.5 years to develop its eggs. If you thought dealing with a pregnant wife or girlfriend for 9 months was rough, imagine almost 4 years of mood swings, nausea, and strange food cravings. Once developed, though, sharks can bear their young in 3 ways: by laying eggs, live birth, or a hybrid of the two. Only about 30% of sharks lay eggs, such as horn and cat sharks. Most sharks, though, give birth to live young, much the same way we humans do. These include blue, bull, and hammerhead sharks. Other sharks, though, hatch from eggs inside the mother's body in a hybrid of the two techniques, and the baby sharks eat a store of unfertilized eggs in the womb until ready for birth. These sharks include great white, tiger, and whale sharks. Sand tiger sharks, though, are a breed apart, and these fearsome predators actually cannibalize each other while inside the womb, typically leaving only 1 or 2 survivors, which finally reach birth. Sand tiger sharks give survival of the fittest a completely new meaning. Once born, though, every shark of any species is on its own. Unlike most animals, shark mothers give absolutely no care to their young, and they really don't need to. Tens of millions of years of evolution have honed the shark into a perfect predator, and baby sharks are born with all of their larger brethren's hunting ferocity and prowess. While their eyesight is indeed poor, sharks have an incredible sense of smell, and many have a powerful electroreceptive sense that enables them to sense the electric energy given off by a prey animal's muscles. This leaves prey with few places to hide, and young sharks often feed on small fish, squid, and octopus. The lack of parental support means that everything about a baby shark needs to be ready and fully developed for a lifetime of killing the moment it leaves the womb. Sharks, though, take a very long time to mature, with the dreaded great white shark not reaching full sexual maturity until it's 26 years old. And the Greenland shark, which is thought to be Earth's longest living vertebrate, won't fully mature until an incredible 150 years of age. This means that a Greenland shark reaching sexual maturity this year was born in 1868, the year that the Japanese shogunate, or hereditary military dictator, was officially abolished. Imagine being stuck living with your parents for a century and a half, or waiting over 100 years just to have sex. That's nothing, though, for a shark that can live for an estimated 400 years, which, if you're keeping count, that means that a shark dying today would have been born the same year that astronomer Johannes Kepler established the last of his 3 planetary laws. So just how dangerous really are baby sharks, and what would happen if you were attacked by 100 of them? Teeth are the first points to consider, pun fully intended. While, for instance, a great white shark's teeth are serrated and triangular, designed to slice through flesh, baby shark teeth are often conical, designed to puncture deep into flesh and hold prey in place. Keeping with the great white, its baby teeth can be up to a 1/4 inch in length, which may not seem like much until you realize that you'd be getting hit by a mouthful of up to 50 teeth. The problem with being swarmed by 100 tiny, hungry mouths is not necessarily going to be massive damage to your body, but rather the repeated punctures of 50 tiny teeth over and over again. Some places, such as your skull, ribs, outer thighs, and buttocks, will be able to tolerate the assault just fine. These areas have tough bone or fatty deposits without major veins or arteries that the baby shark teeth can reach. Other places, though, such as the inner wrist, ankle, side of the neck, and inner thigh, feature arteries that run very close to the surface of the skin, and these will be well within biting distance of 100 tiny mouths. The femoral artery along the inside of the thigh would be of serious concern, as it's one of the largest arteries in the body body, and a puncture there would lead you to very quickly bleeding out. For men, there's the added concern of your dangly bits. Soft and fleshy as they are, they would be a prime target for the small sharks to munch on. And well, we don't want to consider the type of damage that could happen down there. Baby sharks don't pose much of a realistic threat to the average human, and it's not until they grow into their adult sizes that we have much to fear from them. Yet a swarm of 100 hungry baby sharks would make short work of you. Not so much by eating you, as they would be physically incapable of tearing chunks of flesh from your body, but just from the massive blood loss that their very sharp teeth would inflict. So if you're ever on an exotic vacation and offered a chance to feed baby sharks, we suggest you stay on the boat. Oh, and to our male viewers, we bet you'll never think of that baby shark song the same way again, will you? We read your comments, we got your emails, and we're happy to announce the return of the challenge guy. To break the ice, we started off things slow, but don't worry, because we promise things are going to get real weird real fast. Challenge start. Hey guys, it's happening! More challenge episodes. Sorry for the hiatus, but with the war in Ukraine raging, I've been pretty busy covering that for the show. Sadly, it is still raging, but you guys sent enough emails and made enough comments that we decided it was time for a grand return. Alright, first challenge, wear the same outfit for 21 days. Easy enough, and it's a men's outfit too, let's be clear about that. The rules are simple. I pick one outfit, and I can only wear that for 3 weeks. I'm allowed to wash it and have 3 versions of it because I'm notorious for spilling food on myself, but I have to wear it and only it all the time, and I do mean all the time. So, what to wear? This is a decision that's going to have a significant impact on my quality of life for the next 3 weeks, so not one I made lightly. I looked around the world of YouTube for some suggestions and ideas, and oh boy, there's some significant misinformation out there. I saw a lot of people talking about how clothes don't really matter. It's your personality, etc. that matters. And yes, it does, and it's very important to be a nice, kind person, and it's also important to have people around you who value you for who you are and not what you wear. But anyone who tells you that clothes don't matter is fooling you and themselves. Clothes matter. A lot. My parents were never really wealthy growing up, which meant frequent visits to thrift shops. Needless to say, I was not on the cutting edge of fashion and got picked on a lot sometimes. Today I have a successful career and I can afford to buy nice things for myself and the people I care about, and spoiler alert, I love shopping and fashion. Well, I just like looking good. Pretty easy to do when most guys dress like slobs, to be honest. Even before I was successful though, when I first left home I started buying up my wardrobe piece by piece. Having nice drip isn't cheap, but I'd save up to buy one piece at a time and looked for fashionable but cheap options. Things like simple, solid colored tees. A good fitting t-shirt can go with just about anything. I have literally worn $12 t-shirts with $120 slacks and $600 shoes to special events. Remember, wardrobe is a long-term investment, and here's the part where everyone is fooling themselves saying that clothes don't matter. People make assumptions about you before you even open your mouth based on the way you dress. Believe it or not, your favorite challenge guy had a brief, very brief goth phase when he was young. We don't talk about that part of my life, and all visual records have been expunged. But the point is, people treated me wildly different when I showed up wearing all black with half a dozen chains hanging off me and spiked bracelets versus a nice pair of slacks and good shoes. Clothes can improve the way people perceive you and even how they treat you. When we were first dating, the girlfriend told me that one of the things that really turned her on about me was how I had a sense of presence when I entered a room. That's not just because at the time I was a level 70 Tauren Paladin in World of Warcraft, and everyone doubtlessly recognized that fact, but also because of the confidence I project with how I dress and carry myself. So clothes matter a lot, but so does confidence and grace, being polite to everyone, even people who don't deserve it. If you're watching this video and wondering how you can be more attractive, first, try confidence, then try updating your wardrobe to more mature modern looks. So that being said, how can I wear one outfit that's pretty much right for everything I'll face in the next 3 weeks, which includes a movie premiere for one of my best friends? I'll need something that can pass in both a casual and semi-formal setting simultaneously. The choice was actually pretty simple: black t-shirt and either jeans or slacks. First, black goes with just about everything and just about everywhere. And as you'll see, with the addition of a light jacket, black is your ticket to even the fanciest event. But the question was, what bottoms? I tried a few different options. I really dug the pink slacks, which, by the way, if you're a guy and watching this, don't be afraid to wear pink. However, pastel slacks are not going to give you lots of strong options, for keeping your fit looking fresh, as we'll see later, so that was a pass. Next was a pair of white jeans, which the girlfriend immediately said no to because I like to spill things on myself. She makes an excellent point, so goodbye white jeans. Number 3 was a true American classic, like muscle cars, apple pie, and bringing freedom to people far away who aren't specifically interested in it. It's a bit casual for some of the things I'd have to go to, but as you'll see, a good pair of blue jeans goes with literally everything and gives you a world of possibilities, so black t-shirt and blue jeans it was. Next, here's the thing about t-shirts. You have to make sure they fit you well, which might take some experimentation. There's nothing worse than an overly baggy t-shirt or one that's loose in all the wrong places. A good t-shirt can be the foundation of a very classy, modern look. So if your wardrobe is lacking, then it's time to throw out your graphic tees and start updating. Graphic tees are just kind of for kids. Though if you've got an urban style, they can look good. But if you want to look more mature, ditch them and get yourself some solid colors to pair with good pants. You saw yourself how a simple t-shirt with nice slacks can immediately level your look up. Alright, so now that we got t-shirt and pants, how can we tweak the look to keep it fresh? The answer is, of course, shoes and jackets. Since I live in sunny SoCal, I'm pretty limited on when I can wear jackets or blazers. But with the weather turning, I can get away with it at night. And here's the great thing about such a simple getup. Check out all the different tops it can go with. The first is a simple leather jacket. There's literally nothing more classic than this. Every guy should own at least one leather jacket, by the way. It's worth the investment. Next up is a white blazer. Just take a gander at that look. This is a look that'll have you rubbing shoulders with Wall Street and pharma bros in no time at all. This is a look that says, I'm casual, but also I'm probably responsible for spiking insulin prices by 300%. A light knit top is an immediate way to class up a simple look. The girlfriend calls this one the hot, laid-back professor look, and it's one of her favorites. This is a look that lets everyone know you're cool enough to hold class in the quad. Last, we've got a purple blazer. The purple color adds a nice classy touch to the outfit. This is what I planned on wearing to my friend's premiere. It's the perfect relaxed formal touch that doesn't try too hard, which makes people automatically assume you must be important because everyone else is trying so desperately hard to look important. Alright, we got tops, but now the pièce de la résistance, the thing that will keep a simple outfit looking fresh, even if it's the exact same thing you've been wearing for 3 weeks straight. It's time to talk about shoes. Disclaimer, I love shoes. I have a lot of shoes. I have a very big problem with shoes, as the girlfriend often reminds me. We can't go by the mall or any nice shops without me taking a detour to the shoe department. When I go to visit family this summer for a week, I bought 2 pairs of shoes and I had them flown home. I just like having options, and shoes should always match the outfit. The more options, the better in my mind. I have cheap $20 shoes that look really nice, and I've dropped a frankly criminal amount of money on handcrafted leather shoes. Shoes are an immediate level up for any look, and guys, listen to this part closely. Girls, look at your shoes. Notice I keep saying shoes and not sneakers. There's a difference, as we'll soon see. Much like a wardrobe though, shoes are an investment and well worth it. One of the first things I bought when I was financially independent from my parents was a nice pair of shoes. Why are shoes so awesome and important? Because they can take even a simple outfit like blue jeans and a black t-shirt and pump it up several notches. And that's why I chose this look, by the way. It goes with just about everything. Here's proof. I even threw on my workout sneakers just so you guys could see how good it looks with even just a simple pair of clean sneaks. But even fancy shoes go with it and immediately classes up the entire look. Again, this is why shoes are important. They're as essential to your look as makeup is for women. Matter of fact, consider them and beards basically just another type of makeup for men. So, how did my 3 weeks go? Did anyone notice? Did anyone care? Did I get thrown out of any fancy events for being underdressed? Will global warming make jackets and winter fashion impossible in sunny SoCal? First, knowing exactly what you're gonna wear saved a lot of time in my morning routine. You hear this from other YouTubers as well, but the truth is, it's not that big a deal. I watched one girl's video who claimed it saved her as much as an hour in the morning. I'm sorry, are you handcrafting your outfits every morning? I don't know if she was physically weaving her own textiles, cutting patterns, holding fashion shows for inspiration, and then hand sewing each outfit in the morning, but it really shouldn't take you an hour to figure out what you're gonna wear for the day. But it was nice to basically not have to think, just grab jeans and a t-shirt and off you go. The biggest decision was what shoes to wear or top to take if it was chilly, but since this outfit goes with literally everything, I had plenty of options each day. The part that sucked was that this is the Infographics show, so you know we gotta be extra. The challenge was wear the same outfit for 21 days, and that included working out. So your boy was on the treadmill in jeans and a t-shirt, while the girlfriend was doing her best to distance herself and pretend we hadn't driven to the gym together. Let me tell you, doing cardio already sucks, but doing it in my jeans is pretty much the very tippy top of suck mountain. Luckily, I was able to change into a spare pair of jeans when I got home. I don't think the girlfriend would have taken it too well if the challenge was to wear only one pair of clothes for all 21 days. Surprisingly, people were slow to notice I'd been wearing the same thing for 3 weeks. It wasn't until well into the second week that one of my friends did a double take and asked me if I'd been wearing the same thing the last few days. She was shocked when I told her it had actually been almost 2 weeks already. See, girls can be shoe blind sometimes, because I kept changing my shoes. It had taken a bit of time for her to notice. I'm not lying when I tell you that girls look at what shoes you're wearing. I think overall, because I'd chosen such a classic look, it took people a while to notice. I also think it's because guys overall are terrible dressers, so nobody's really expecting much. My closest friends were pretty quick to notice because they know I like to change up my outfits frequently and dress well. Honestly, this was kind of a fun challenge, if anything because I really enjoy helping other guys look better, and I'm hoping some of you got some inspiration out of this. I remember when I was a kid I saw Just Friends with Ryan Reynolds, and it inspired me to want a nice wardrobe like his character in the movie. And here's the thing, I know some of this can come off with a bit of let them eat cake vibe, but I wasn't always as successful as I am today, and even back when I was living paycheck to paycheck, I made sure to invest little by little in how I looked. Some things like nice slacks, a nice jacket, or good shoes can be a pretty hefty investment, but that's exactly what it is, an investment in yourself. Believe me, people will treat you very differently based on how you look and present yourself. Maybe you're struggling to make an impression on people. Maybe you're suffering from low self-esteem. Try changing up your wardrobe. New clothes can make you feel like a new man or woman. And here's the best piece of advice I could ever give you. Don't go shopping alone until you got a good sense of style. Instead, find someone that's the type of person you want to attract and ask them to come with you and give recommendations. Who could possibly give you better advice on how to look good than the type of person you're attracted to? Oh, and stay tuned, because I just found out I'm doing this challenge again, only in typical infographic style fashion. I'll be doing it with women's clothing. OMAD, 1 meal a day, the latest health craze that challenges you to eat like the ancestors. The rules are simple, eat one single meal a day as big as you want. But does OMAD work? Is it safe? Is it even healthy? We could have talked to doctors, but why do that when you've got your very own lab rat? Challenge start. I really hate it when the show screws with my food. I love eating. It's basically my favorite hobby. Want to go grab some sushi? Hit me up, dog, I'm there. Italian? Why not? Mediterranean? 2, please. So when I heard my next challenge was a food-related one, I was concerned. But this one doesn't sound so bad. As I'd soon find out, I'd be very, very wrong about that. It's called OMAD, 1 meal a day, and the premise is that because our ancient ancestors probably only enjoyed 1 meal a day, it's healthier than our modern diets. Our ancient ancestors also didn't put men on the moon and hadn't quite figured out that wiping after a good squat was also a good idea, but sure, let's take their advice on diets. At least it's not as stupid as paleo. The rules are that I can't eat anything else but 1 meal a day. But I can eat as much as I want in that meal. I did some research and found out that there's a ton of OMAD videos from gym bros on YouTube, but I found a few by actual doctors. Further research revealed that if I didn't want to put on a bunch of weight, I should eat earlier in the day rather than late at night, because you burn more of the calories from what you eat at the start of the day than when you're just lying there comatose. That makes pretty basic sense, so I decided that lunch would be my feasting time. I'm also not really eating whatever I want, as I've seen advertised. First, you're into this for weight loss. The eating whatever you want is probably what got you into trouble in the first place. Dieting isn't going to work if you train your body to eat cake all the time, because cake was the problem in the first place. Sure, you might lose the weight, but then you'll put it right back on because you never learned to use moderation when stuffing your face with cake. That's the secret to an effective diet. It's not about cutting calories, it's about making small incremental lifestyle changes that you can actually live with. So if you're looking to lose weight, maybe only cut 200 calories instead of 600 or more until you get used to that, then cut a little bit more. Better to go slow and steady than burn out because you actively hate existence on your diet. So I'll be consuming some pretty calorie-heavy foods, but not necessarily junk. I'm talking steak and potatoes, pasta, Spanish tortilla, some of my favorite stuff. But what really has me excited is that normally I watch what I eat at every meal, but on this diet, I'm actually encouraged to binge all at once. Of course, I'll be banned from putting anything else in my mouth until 1 p.m. the next day, and that's gonna take some serious willpower because I love snacking. Snacking is life. Let's fast forward and see what effect OMAD had on my diet and lifestyle. See ya in 30 days. One eternity later. I've been journaling my thoughts on OMAD throughout this experience and now trying to form an aggregate conclusion. First, the basics. I wasn't sure if I lose weight or gain weight, but was shocked to discover I basically stayed the same, losing only 1 total pound. Now, I started this already in a good place weight-wise, so I wasn't focused on tailoring the diet to be specifically about losing weight. The fact that I came out just a tiny bit slimmer, though, shows that OMAD probably works for losing weight, and you probably don't have to make big tweaks to what you enjoy eating to do so. What did I eat? Pasta, steak, potatoes, fried chicken, shepherd's pie. Honestly, my diet didn't change from what I regularly eat. I just had much bigger portions than I normally would. Also, I cooked most of what I ate myself, so it's healthier than, say, Popeye's fried chicken. We did eat out a few times, like on date night with a girlfriend, so toss in sushi and a lot of seafood as well. OMAD kinda screwed with my eating out, to be honest. First, the girlfriend is usually either at a shoot or on set somewhere until the evening, so our eating out is dinner. That was really hard when you've been starving all day and you have to wait even longer to eat. We got sushi one night and I think the staff was worried that I'd eat everything in their inventory. I love sushi, but it's never really been very filling for me, so I already order a lot of it. This time though, I ran up nearly a $100 bill all on my own with the sushi that just I ordered. I'm pretty sure I'm half Mercury by now. And speaking of bills, we got a few fancy places around LA that we like to eat at, and boy, did things get expensive. I'm glad the show was covering the bill because I ran up a whopper of a bill at one of our favorite seaside places. It's called Moonshadows Malibu, and it's, well, in Malibu. A really nice place with a balcony that overlooks the ocean as the waves break below you. You get really good food too, but like most fancy places, they give you moderately sized portions, and they're not cheap either. I ordered a seafood pasta dish that was $42, and I had 4 of them. I don't know if it's illegal to order that much food for just one person at a fancy place, but I was getting looks from the staff, and at one point the manager came by our table. He didn't say anything, he just came by and checked to see if everything was all right. I think he was scoping us out to see if I was doing some sort of terrible YouTube prank or something. No, dude, I just really like your pasta, and I'm $168 hungry. We had a similar incident at a steakhouse where this time I ran up a $210 bill all on my own. When I placed my order for 4 steaks, the waiter looked confused and asked if we were expecting more people. I told him no, this was a work thing, and refused to elaborate. He just looked confused over at the girlfriend, who smiled politely until he left to put in our order. If anything, the staff didn't complain about the tip, and oh my god, I just realized I forgot to expense the tips. You can imagine, they were significant. Alright, other than freaking out fine dining establishments, what effects did OMAD have on my life? Honestly, I would not recommend this diet, like at all. It's really cathartic to pig out and know you can eat as much as you want, but it's kind of hell to have to wait 24 hours to eat again. And if those plans are disrupted for hours because, I don't know, maybe your girlfriend wants to have dinner with her friends and one of them does literally nothing but talk about herself the entire evening, completely monopolizing the conversation, and she's so busy talking that she asks the waiter 3 times to please come back later because she hasn't decided what she wants to eat yet, yeah, that can wear on your nerves. Listen, don't be that person. Don't be the guy or the gal that isn't ready when the waiter comes by to take your order. On the grand scale of evil, there's number 1, Nazis, number 2, Putin, and number 3, people who make the entire table wait because they aren't ready to order when the waiter comes. I didn't say anything at the time, though I was making mental plans on how I could follow her to the bathroom, and if there might be a window big enough in there for me to push her corpse through so I could stuff it in the dumpster out back. The grumpiness is real. And it wasn't just the times I was literally starving to death and certain people were too busy self-promoting to place an order. When you're waiting that long for food, you kinda get a little cranky around the 18-hour mark, especially when you wake up to your significant other making homemade waffles for herself and you still have to wait until 1 p.m. to eat. I did find myself more sluggish than normal too. Immediately after the meal, forget about it. If the house was on fire, I'd have thrown the dog out the window and then just laid on the couch to burn. I was like a fat little turtle that had rolled onto its shell and couldn't flip itself over. And all that sucrose hitting the system at once did not feel good at all. I typically ended up napping for an hour after each meal, and even after I woke up, I felt absolutely awful. It wasn't until later in the evening that I started to feel like a human being again. Also, eating one huge meal a day will make you absolutely blow out your toilet. I cut turds so long I could have probably fished one out and used it as a club. I know you likely didn't want to know that, but this is a serious scientific investigation, and it is data that science must know. If you can't handle it, you're in the wrong field. I think it also affected my sleep schedule though, because I would get most of my energy in the late afternoon and early evening, pushing my bedtime back by about 2 hours. The girlfriend likes to go to sleep around 10 p.m., and I'll usually sleep at midnight. Ever since I left the military, I have trouble sleeping and naturally want to stay up all night. But the girlfriend will usually make me lay with her until she's asleep because she wants to feel me close until she drifts off. Then I get up and stay up for another hour and a half or so. But this time I ended up going to sleep about 2 a.m. thanks to having a bunch of energy later in the day. I guess my body had to take the time to process all that food and turn it into energy, completely disrupting my physiology. I might be a unique case given my long-term sleep problems, but maybe if you're going to try this diet, try it earlier in the day and see how that works for you. I really doubt the ancients ate like this, to be honest with you. I know they were hunter-gatherers and meals weren't exactly guaranteed, but it really didn't feel natural. I felt like a big fat snake starving myself until I gorged on one huge meal. I just don't see how ancient man could have led such an active lifestyle with only one big meal. I think something more natural would be to get frequent smaller snacks with a larger meal, berries and fruits that they picked or whatever. This month really got me thinking about food though. Have you ever thought about how much food you eat in a day? It's an absurd amount. And it's not just us, all mammals eat absolutely criminal amounts of food every single day. Compare that to reptiles who eat like one fish every 6 years and are good to go. I get that warm blood is basically what's made us kings of the earth and our big brains require a ton of calories, but it just seems really inefficient from a survival standpoint. But at the end of the day, I guess we did arm wrestle the dinosaurs into extinction. At least that's what my North Korean history books say, so I guess it's worth it. Check out another food challenge with I ate insects for a week, or click this other video instead.